Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. On the rock, above which a huge dark sphere is visible, there are three young men, one of them apologizing to everyone for his weakness. Covering his face with his hand, the blonde declares that the hero should have been Chris, not him. A girl with a rod in her hand says that Brother Evan shouldn't say that. Sadly lowering her eyes, she declares that they did everything they could. The guy sitting on a boulder looks very sad. The girl states that, naturally, if the genius Chris had started learning to wield a sword a little earlier, he would definitely have become a 10-star hero. And in this case, the two guys would have been able to prevent the end of the world. Chris is depicted with many arms. The young man thinks that thanks to his crazy talent, which allows him to instantly learn anything, he was able to achieve great success in many areas and received the nickname the Great Extra. The guy lifts a heavy bale. He remembers that his path to the top began when he was 20 years old, and he ran away from a noble home, starting to work in dirty alleyways with a dream of achieving success in life. The guy looks to his left. A knight sits on a winged dragon. The hero recalls that then there was an invasion of the bloody monarch from the Arcane Empire, as a result of which the so-called era of destruction began. People are standing in front of a bulletin board. On it there is a message about the recruitment of a squad for campaigns with the hero. Chris smiles. He realizes that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The guy imagines great riches, he expects to perform great feats, and after everything is over, enjoy endless wealth and fame. With swords sticking out of the ground, Chris remembers that it ended in defeat, and the forces of light were crushed by the army of the bloody monarch. The guy looks sadly into the distance. One of his comrades says that if it were possible, it would be possible to go back in time so that Chris became the hero. He thinks that this does not suit him at all, and he does not want to go through all this hell again. Inside the dark sphere, a bright source of light can be seen. Chris thinks that one life full of suffering is more than enough for him, and besides, it is completely pointless to talk about all this now. Young people, under whom the city is visible, look up. The guy understands that this world will soon be destroyed anyway. Looking sadly up, Chris realizes that this is the end and there is no next life. The guy closes his eyes. He thinks that if he managed to be reborn, it would be nice to get into a rich noble family. Behind the elegant windows you can see the light. We see someone's hand. The hero realizes that he has been transported into the body of a young master from Arcane Empire. Birds fly over the luxurious structure, which belongs to the Dark Arcana clan. Chris thinks that, in keeping with the rather ominous name, it is one of the 12 clans at the very top of the Arcane Empire's management hierarchy. Someone is mowing a flower bed. The hero managed to find out that he was transported 15 years into the past. Strange creatures give very intricate shapes to plants. Chris now knows that he has returned to a time when the age of destruction was still 5 years away. The guy stands with his arms folded over his chest. He believed that he had seen everything he could in his previous life, but he did not expect to see demon beasts tending to the garden. Looking at himself in the mirror, Chris thinks that he perfectly understands who he has incarnated into. An untied tie dangles around the neck of the young man. The hero thinks that now his name is Christian Van Baron Kazar. Chris is sitting at the table with a girl with fox ears. He says that the prefix Van means that Christian belongs to a side branch of the magical family. His interlocutor replies that everything is exactly so, and she had no doubt that the brilliant young man would guess everything. In front of us are several coats of arms. The hero says that the Counts of Kazar are a side branch of the Baron family, which in turn is part of the Dark Arcana clan. He asks if this means that Kazar is not a relatively authoritative family. The girl replies that this is not the case, as it is still part of the Dark Arcana clan. Above the head of Christian Van Baron Kazar are his relatives. The girl with fox ears declares that these people, on top of everything, are insanely rich, so there is no one in Arcane Empire who does not know the Kazar family. The young man is sitting with a glass of wine in his hand. The girl reports that this family has 2 heirs, and the eldest, Christian, is a notorious scoundrel. The named character humiliates the waiter. The girl says that even his family members turned away from this bastard, and that all this was until very recently. Chris asks if Christian was able to collect his thoughts and get on the path of correction. Drops of sweat run down the guy's cheeks. The girl reports that this man was killed by his own relatives. The reborn hero hits the mirror with his fist. He curses mentally, thinking that he wanted to turn into just an ordinary rich boy. The hero replays events from the past in his head. He does not understand why he had to get here, and into the body of a scoundrel who is doomed to die. The hero leans his fist on the mirror, trying to figure out what to do. In front of us are 2 owners of the same body. A young man thinks that 3 days have passed since he woke up in the body of a guy whose name is almost the same as his last life, and this person should die in 2 years, while the fact that he was executed by members of the Kazar family only means that he was a completely incorrigible scoundrel. The young man looks down sadly. He understands that if he can behave quietly and inconspicuously, then perhaps he will avoid death. The hero clutches his head. He thinks that since he has already become a member of a rich family, he can just keep a low profile for some time, enjoying the luxury that surrounds him. Drops of sweat roll down the guy's cheeks. He understands that something does not stick in his logic. The hero remembers a huge monster and a pile of corpses. He thinks that the coming Ragnarok, that is, the end of the world, was the reason that the bloody monarch unleashed a war to sacrifice humanity and prevent the apocalypse, and by the time it became clear, the Magic Empire, the ranks of which he was a member in his past life, had already been destroyed, and all this means that in order to survive, he must prevent this very end of the world. A man with a sword can be seen above the hordes of monsters. Chris thinks that the Blood Monarch who started the war is a very serious problem, but it is also important that this character is followed by countless demons from Magic Empire. In front of us is Blood Monarch, who has a horned helmet on his head. The guy understands that in order to prevent Ragnarok, he must surpass this person, and there is only one way to achieve this. The hero holds a crown in his hands. He thinks that he must become the Emperor of Demons and climb to the very top of Magic Empire. The guy imagines an hourglass, realizing that he has only 5 years before the beginning of the era of destruction. The hero touches his face with his fingers. He thinks about whether he should at least try to fix everything. The guy realizes that if he does not stick his head out, he will die anyway, and if he succeeds, then he will own not only this mansion, but the entire Magic Empire. The brunette slams his hand on the table. He shouts loudly that he ordered Christian to stay in his room and think about his behavior. A man with a snow-white bow around his neck asks if the young man is not ashamed to show himself when very little time has passed since the last incident. Looking angrily at the young man, he declares that if he allows himself to get into another story, he will personally cut off his head. The hero realizes that he is under incredible pressure from Count Khazar. He apologizes to his father for all the bad deeds he has done. The count looks at his offspring in bewilderment, and Christian realizes that in order to carry out his plan, he must get rid of his reputation as a notorious scoundrel. The hero is on his knees in front of his parent. He sincerely apologizes for everything he did and promises that it will never happen again. The father asks if the guy is bullying him, and why he should believe him. Christian looks at the man guiltily, trying to understand what he did the last time his father behaves like this. Humbly bowing his head, the guy declares that it is his own fault that he has lost the count's trust, after which he reports that 3 days ago he lost part of his memories and does not remember a lot. On his knees, the young man says that when he plunged into his memories to reconstruct recent events, he realized with bitterness how disgusting he had behaved. The man disgruntled says that he has heard apologies from his son countless times. The young man replies that he understands perfectly well that simple words of regret are clearly not enough here, and promises to prove everything with concrete actions. Looking at the count, the young man asks to be sent to the Cave of Punishments. He declares that he will spend a month there, and then shows his father how much he has changed. Behind the stones you can see the gate. The hero understands that this is the Cave of Punishment, a place where high-ranking demons who have committed crimes are kept, and where not only the light, but also all 5 senses are turned off. A bald man clutches his head. The guy thinks that just a few days in this prison can break anyone, but this cave is the best for him now, as he needs a place where no one will watch him. The count, looking at his son kneeling in front of him, asks if he is really going to spend a whole month in the Cave of Punishment. He calls the guy a moral freak and declares that he will not stand even half a day there. Father and son look at each other. Christian says he understands how difficult it is, but he says he needs just such conditions, because the father will believe him only when he keeps his word. A drunken Christian can barely stand on his feet. The count asks if his son remembers how many times he let him down after making promises. A man stands next to the table. He declares that he will give his offspring one last chance. The count's eyes glow menacingly. He declares that if nothing changes in his son's behavior in a month, he will expel him from the family. The hero's hands are on his knees. He understands that the threat voiced by his father means death. Enemies are visible behind the guy's back. Christian thinks that if he loses the protection of his family, there will be a huge number of people who want him dead. The young man says that everything is clear to him. Looking at his father, he declares that if he does change the way his father wants, he will have one request for the man. The count, looking angrily at the hero, states that he thinks as if he has already spent a month in a cave, and calls his son an arrogant idiot. Then he states that if the guy still manages to keep his promise, he will fulfill any of his requests. The count walks away from his son, declaring that for some reason he has no doubt that he will not have to fulfill anyone's request. Christian is sitting in a chair. Cox, the butler of the Khazar family, reports that the Cave of Punishment is ready. The hero puts a small crystal on the table and says that he understands everything. In front of us is a corridor furnished with magnificent columns. Christian and Cox walk past the servants who are discussing the guy. One of them says that this spoiled scoundrel decided to voluntarily go to the Cave of Punishment. There is an assumption that the bastard is clearly up to something. The guy listens to the conversations. One of the servants asks his interlocutor if he remembers how Christian insulted the heiress of the Poison Clan. In front of us is a torn sheet of paper. The hero hears that the count had to apologize personally. A piece of jewelry glitters on the guy's collar. He hears that his family has long been at odds with the Poison Clan, and this incident has completely destroyed the count's reputation. Christian runs after Cox. He hears that he is being insulted again. When asked when he will finally grow up, the answer is that he is a completely hopeless person, and it is unlikely that he will survive in the Cave of Punishment for long. The hero smiles when he hears the forecast that he will stay there for 2 days at best. A young man with red eyes is standing outside the door. One of the servants says that Christian will not survive even 1 day in the cave. Christian and Cox stand in front of a huge gate. The servant informs them that they have arrived. The hero looks up thoughtfully. The guy looks thoughtful. He understands that the guards of the cave are Death Knights, and it seems to him that nothing else can be expected from the empire in which he finds himself. Rubbing the back of his head, the guy walks forward. He thinks that all this probably doesn't matter, as long as no one disturbs him inside the cave. Christian hears him being called brother. The hero looks around in surprise. A young man with red eyes looks intently at the guy, who realizes that in front of him is his exemplary brother turned Van Baron Khazar. We see a red blade. Turn directs it to the hero's face. The brothers look at each other. The tip of the sword is at the hero's chin. Christian asks what his brother wants, and states that he does not seem to have come to see him off on the road. The boy angrily asks if his brother understands what is a real shame for their family. The young man's red eyes glitter. He states that he has no idea what Christian is up to this time. However, if he discredits the name of the family again, he will personally finish him off. Turn says that he warns his brother for the last time. The hero looks at the young man in surprise, realizing that the person in whose body he found himself most likely died at the hands of this character. An adult Turn holds a staff in his hands. The hero remembers that he met this man during the Age of Destruction, and then he was a very famous demon famous for the magic of the curse. Cox raises his hands in fright. Christian looking at his brother, thinking about how this cute kid must have trained hard to become the one he knew. The hero pushes his sword away from his face and scowls to Turn to let him pass. The guy thinks that for someone who has gone through all the horrors of the Age of Destruction, this knot does not pose any threat. Turn asks in surprise. The hero replies that he understood every word, so the young man can go home. Christian walks past his brother, who begins to talk about how this was the last warning, but quickly falls silent. Turn stares open-mouthed at the slammed gate. Cox, next to whom the guards are visible, looks at the boy. Turn clenches his fists in anger. He asks what the hell it is, and why he's being treated this way. The hero goes forward. He looks around. Before us is the eye of a young man. Christian realizes that he does not see or hear anything. He moves his fingers, realizing that he can only feel with his fingertips. The hero, raising his hand, thinks that those in the cave are limited to these sensations so that they can feel the objects that are brought to them here, because otherwise the prisoners would die of hunger. The guy understands that an ordinary person would quickly break down in such a place. Christian looks up, thinking that he went through much more serious trials when he was a treasure hunter. The guy puts his hand to his chest, thinking that, to be honest, turning off his senses is exactly what he needs now, as it will allow him to look deeper into himself. In front of us is a butterfly. Christian thinks that this is the only way he will be able to put in order the body that he inherited after rebirth. Although, of course, this will take time and some luck. The hero remembers how he took care of the wounded, and understands that he will definitely need the skills of a medic gained during one very serious test, after which he was called the Divine Hand. The hero tries to fit in a small box. He thinks that the techniques of body modification that he learned in the circus became the basis for the art of bone reconstruction. We see a lot of shiny stones. Christian thinks that he also has crystals impregnated with different types of mana, and they will allow him to accomplish what he has in mind. The guy is holding a crystal in his hands. He could not even hope that he would get them, since they are too expensive. But he quickly realized that being a member of a rich family is very good, since in it the requests of even a complete scoundrel are fulfilled after the first demand. The guy remembers his friend from his past life, whose name was Evan, as well as how much the two of them had to work to get such items. A white crystal is visible above the guy's head. The hero thinks that he will start with this stone, which will remove toxins from the body. Christian understands that this is a boring, but incredibly important stage. Sparks are visible next to the young man's hand. He thinks that even a small mistake in this process can turn a person into a ruin. The sphere hanging in front of the guy emits electrical discharges. Christian smiles, thinking that for him it is all a piece of cake. The hero's father, sitting at the table, asks how his son is doing. The butler replies that Christian obediently went to the Cave of Punishments. Then Cox says that he is a little worried, as the guy may break down there and not even be able to call for help. The Count looks thoughtfully over his folded hands. He realizes that perhaps he should not have sent his son to the cave. He remembers his son and thinks he was a promising child. Christian is on his knees. His father cannot understand why the guy suddenly slid into the abyss. A hand sticks out of the water. The Count suggests that perhaps his exceptional talent has made his son too daring and arrogant. The man remembers the young man weeping in front of him, thinking that if Christian continued to behave as before, then, whatever the reason, it might be better if he became crippled or even died. An evil fire lights up in the man's eyes. The Count remembers his son's face when he promised to show him everything by his actions. The man puts his hand to his mouth. He thinks that his son has deceived him many times, so he does not expect the guy to change in any way. The Count asks the butler if he noticed anything unusual when Christian entered the cave. Cox seems to be remembering something. Standing in front of his master, he tries to say something. The Count demands that the man not hide anything from him. Cox reports that the young master has taken magic stones into the Cave of Punishment. The Count clenches his fist. He learns that there was a hallucination-inducing dream stone among them, and the servant states that since no one knows what the side effects of this stone might be, they must immediately open the Cave of Punishments. Gloomy, the Count refuses this request. He declares that it would be better if his son died. The head of the family is standing in front of the gate. It is reported that the case takes place a month later. The man imagines his son writhing in agony and thinks that the guy must have been dead for a long time. Behind the open gate, you can see Christian. The Count looks at him in shock. The young man, smiling, declares that he is glad to see his father and has been looking forward to meeting him. Christian walks between two guards. He asks why his parent is so surprised. We see the young man's legs. He reminds us that he made a promise to his father that this time he would change. Father and son look at each other. The Count realizes that he saw such eyes on his son when he was still a child. The young man smiles happily. Standing in front of his son, the man says that he has passed the test. Christian asks if this can be considered a compliment. The man, folding his arms in displeasure, declares that the guy should not be so smug, and warns that he still does not trust him. Christian replies that in this case he will try even harder. The hero thinks that his father is too strict. Christian holds a sword in his hands. He thinks that perhaps his father thinks that he barely passed this test. But this is not at all true, and in the cave of punishment he did not get bored for a second. First he optimized his body in order to master the art of using a sword, and thanks to the white magic stone, he now feels that every cell of his body seems to be filled with new life. A blue stone glows in the young man's hand. He thinks that Dreamstone turned out to be truly priceless. The young man recalls his conversation with Cox, who asked if the hero was going to take this stone with him to the cave of punishment. Christian thinks that Dreamstone is considered a narcotic magic stone, and the butler scolded him. But the risk was fully justified and the stone helped him a lot. We see the dial and multicolored vortices. Christian thinks that thanks to the hallucinations, he was able to significantly reduce the time it takes to fully transform and even created 2 cores. Christian looks at his glowing hand. He says that he has found the 1-star spell light. The young man thinks that nothing else could be expected from such a genius as him. The hero touches his stomach. He thinks that he has naturally hidden the core of light with the core of darkness so that no one can see it, since if the demons find out about its presence, it will cause a huge scandal. A bluish stone is visible in front of the young man's face. It emits violet energy. Christian, smiling, says that giving him Dreamstone is some kind of nonsense. Behind the young man's back, an ill-wisher is seen with a dagger in his hand. The hero thinks that someone, apparently, hoped that he would break under the influence of hallucinations. Looking at his father, Christian says that since he has kept his promise, the Count must fulfill his request. The man frowns and tells his son to voice what he wants. A red crest is visible behind the 2 crossed wands, and Christian asks the Earl to allow him to use the training ground where the Black Swamp Knights train. The Count frowns that this is not a place where such a scoundrel can easily enter. A monumental structure can be seen above the warriors' heads. The man says that it is one of the 3 knightly orders that maintain the Dark Curse, and only elite knights can enter its base to demonstrate their skill. The Count asks if his son understands this. Humbly looking at his father, Christian declares that he only asked for training on the training ground, and that watching the fearless Black Swamp Knights can inspire him. The young man assures that he has no intention of joining the ranks of this order. The Count looks down silently. Turning halfway to his son, he says that he will agree to comply with the request. But if he disgraces himself in front of the Black Swamp Knights, he will suffer the harshest punishment. Christian replies that he understands everything, and that he has one more small request. The Count looks at his son in surprise. We have a huge training ground in front of us. The knights in dark suits look at someone in surprise. The hero examines his hand. The fighters gathered near the guy are discussing him. One of them declares that he is a young master who everyone thinks is an idiot. The second asks what this ghoul is doing here. The hero, as the son of the Count, is unpleasant to hear all this. But he understands that in the Empire of Magicians, strength is valued above status, so he must come to terms with the fact that he is treated like this. The guy thinks that he actually has another reason for getting to this place. We see a man whose costume depicts the drawing with a branching tree. The Count declares that he will give his son the key to the archives if he brings him a letter of recommendation from the deputy commander of Melon. It turns out that the second request of the young man was to be allowed into the library. In front of us is a huge book depository. The young man knows that in the archive belonging to Count Khazar there are books on dark magic, and if he is going to master this art, he must get into this institution at any cost. Christian, looking at his father, declares that everything is clear to him, and then asks why he sets such conditions for him, since the Count's son is also a member of the family. The young man remembers how he was caught by Cox. The father reminds his son that the guy tried to sell books on high-level magic for a pittance on the black market. Christian wonders what kind of bastard the original owner of his current body was, and realizes that he was a real scumbag. The hero walks forward with a sword in his hand. He thinks that he should receive a letter of recommendation from the deputy commander as soon as possible. Christian notices his brother, who declares that this is no place for such dishonest scum. The hero looks away from the young man, thinking that he is beginning to irritate him. A smile appears on the guy's face. Putting the sword on his shoulder, he thinks that perhaps this is exactly what he needs now. Turn bravely goes out to meet his brother. He declares that he has given the final warning, and Christian must leave if he does not want to part with the life he has so painstakingly saved in the cave of punishment. The hero, sighing, asks his brother if he can answer for his words, because he received permission to come here from his father. Turn looks at his brother in amazement, not believing his words. We see someone's legs. The girl with lush breasts declares that she respects the Count's decision, but Mr. Christian does not inspire confidence in her. The hero looks over his shoulder and recognizes the deputy commander Melon. He realizes that 4-star magic power is being used against him and thus trying to intimidate him from the very beginning, while the guy thinks that he is used to such pressure. Bowing his head, he greets the deputy commander. The girl looks at the hero in surprise, realizing that he was not afraid of her magical power. There are boxes next to the dueling ground. Christian says that now that he has heard Melon's words, he realizes that he has no other choice, and he will prove that he has the right to use this training ground. Turn asks again, surprised. The hero reaches out and declares that he will defeat one of the mages in a duel. Turn says that this is a pretty good joke. Christian, smiling, replies that he is not joking at all. Crossed fists are seen in front of the magic formation. The hero says that he nevertheless wants to limit the use of magical power, as his body is not in the best condition now after the riotous life he led. The guy states that he would prefer a fight with his bare fists. Melon looks at the guy thoughtfully. Thinking that she can't allow the Count's heir to be crippled, she asks the hero if he really thinks he has any chance in a fist fight. Christian replies that he should try to check it, after which he asks if there is a worthy opponent here. The hero snaps his fingers. Gesturing behind his back, he says that he thinks Turn is a good fit. Looking angrily at his brother, the boy asks how he dares to behave in such a way. Melon, putting his hand on his belt, declares that there is no need for this, and she will find a more suitable opponent, after which he asks the hero if he knows that the young master Turn is already at the level of 2 stars. A boy protecting his face with a sword, Christian thinks that for a 13-year-old boy to reach the level of 2 stars is an outstanding achievement. He imagines his brother climbing the stairs, realizing that even 20-year-olds cannot reach such a level without talent, while the hero realizes that he himself is not an ordinary fighter either. Christian, raising his right hand, states that if he wants to show what he can do, he must fight a stronger opponent, and Turn is better suited for this than anyone else. The brothers look at each other. The hero asks what the boy thinks about his proposal and if he is afraid to fight his older brother. Turn says that he agrees to a duel. The knights surround the opponents, one of them shouting loudly for Mr. Turn to crush this bastard while there is such an opportunity. Christian, stretching his hands, asks the deputy commander how the winner will be determined. The guy assumes that the duel will continue until the surrender of one of the opponents. Melon, frowning at the hero, thinks that this bastard is cocky and does not know his place. She says that it will be too boring, and the fight will continue until one of the fighters loses the ability to fight. The girl thinks that if it has come to this, it would be nice if Mr. Turn tore off one of the limbs of the impudent bastard. Looking mockingly at his brother, the hero says that he has heard the rules and it seems that he is about to get a good beating. The boy calls his brother a bastard and promises to make sure that he never opens his filthy mouth again. Christian strikes an unexpected blow and hits the young man in the jaw. Looking at the bewildered expression on his opponent's face, the hero asks why he is delaying so much if the fight has already begun. Turn looks at his brother. Demanding that the bastard shut up, he strikes. Christian thinks that what he is doing is inherently a scam, because as a magician he has not even reached the level of 1 star, and in a duel using magic, he would not have a single chance. Turn misses. The boy immediately misses a powerful blow. The hero thinks that in his previous life he has had countless fist fights, and if we take into account that in the Cave of Punishment he acquired a core of light, then he is already at the level of the 3rd star. One of the cadets, looking at his comrade, asks what is happening in front of his eyes. Turn is bent over, holding on to his stomach. Putting his hand to his mouth, Christian asks if his younger brother is crying and if he needs to be comforted. Breathing heavily, the boy asks what kind of trick Christian just pulled out. The hero, clearing his ear with his little finger, thinks that he feels great moral satisfaction looking at his brother's face. He states that he did not use any tricks and suggests that Turn may just be too weak. The boy's eyes become round with surprise and indignation. Trying to straighten up, he asks again. Christian, sticking out his tongue, declares that his brother is too small, so he can't hear him. Turn curls her fingers. He rushes at his brother, promising to kill him on this very spot, who, smiling, says that the boy is very fast. The younger brother misses his opponent's face again. The hero stops a fist flying at him, emitting jets of black energy. Turn notices that his magic is not working. Christian stabs the boy in the chin, thinking that instincts decide everything in a fist fight. Turn's mouth is gushing blood. He falls backwards to the ground. The cadets, with their mouths wide open, look at what is happening. Turn lies in front of his opponent. One of the viewers suggests that the boy lost concentration for a moment. The answer is that it simply cannot be, and Turn most likely just did not use magical power so as not to harm this bastard. Melon is visibly shocked. Christian, standing over the knocked-out brother, asks if he has proven his qualifications. The girl, folding her arms on her chest, declares that this is more than enough. The hero thanks her. Christian, grinning, thinks that he has achieved what he wanted, and now he will master the art of sword fighting, magic, and everything else that will be available to him. There is a door in front of us. Christian looks at his hand thoughtfully. He thinks he has reached the level of 1 star in magic, and has been going to this for longer than expected because he is still unfamiliar with the process of controlling magic, and because there is so much left of the previous owner of his body. The young man rings the bell, thinking that he will have to level up before he can use the power of light along with magic. A creature approaches the guy, whose legs emit a bright blue glow. Banshee Marie, the hero's personal servant, asks if her master has summoned her. Christian thinks that using a high-pitched evil spirit like Banshee as a maid is somehow too wasteful, but he realizes that the tyrannical nature of his predecessor may have led to no one agreeing to take the job. The guy looks very dissatisfied. He thinks that one day he will definitely change his image. Then he asks Marie to bring him some juice. He informs her that after drinking it, he will go to training. Bowing, the girl asks if the hero wants to get human blood as a drink. He replies that ordinary strawberry juice will be enough. Marie states that the blood tastes delicious. Christian asks that she bring what he asked for. Banshee asks if the guy is referring to human blood. He shouts loudly that he wants strawberry juice. Someone calls out to the hero from behind. The butler runs up to him. The man asks if the guy is really going to practice at such an early time. He states that he is worried that Christian is overloading his body too much. The hero frowns at Cox, who states that he is also very happy and proud of the guy's determination, and despite the others pointing fingers at him, he has always believed in the young master. The hero is confused by something in the servant's words. The interlocutors look at each other. Christian threateningly says that he does not remember asking the butler to believe in him, and that it is not part of his job description at all. Cox, bowing low, apologizes, and admits that he has crossed the boundaries. He wishes the young master a good practice. The butler walks away from the young man. The hero, looking after him, thinks that there is something suspicious in this character. Christian walks past the cadets. Smiling, he looks to his left. The hero understands that those around him are no longer as aggressive as before. The bag falls to the ground. The hero thinks that the cadets' wariness has disappeared. It seems to him that the time has come to win their hearts. The fighter with the eagle's head looks back at the young man behind him. He approaches the tent. The cadet turns to the deputy commander. Melon, with her arms folded over her chest, sitting at the table, she learns that young Master Christian has come to the training ground again today. The girl looks very dissatisfied. She tries to understand what the hero is up to, and what the hell she saw during his duel with her brother. The girl remembers the punch that Christian missed his face and thinks that the moves that Turn showed were, without a doubt, very impressive. In front of us are the hands of two brothers. Melon could not even imagine that the hero would be able to take advantage of a very short moment and dissipate demonic energy. It begins to seem to her that Christian somehow foresaw the course of the battle. Imagination draws two characters to the girl. She thinks that if her sight does not deceive her, Christian has a talent that is even greater than that of Ashid de Baron, the rightful heir to the ruling family. But the guy remains just a bastard who has lost his magical energy due to a riotous lifestyle. Looking thoughtfully to his left, Melon thinks that Christian will no longer be able to make up for what he missed due to his passions and stupidity. The girl comes out of the tent, stating that she heard some noise. She asks what is going on. One of the cadets tells her that there was a small misunderstanding between the young master and one of the knights. Christian with a sword in his hand stands over a young man lying on the ground. A cadet girl asks a nearby comrade what happened, who asks if Kanan is really a one-star mage. Melon looks at the young man in shock. She can't believe that this bastard has also reached the level of 1-star. Christian, putting a wooden sword on his shoulder, states that he wanted to see the amazing fighting skills that the Black Swamp Knights have. However, it turns out that they are not as impressive as the rumors suggest. The guy asks if anyone else wants to become his opponent. The cadets look frightened at the hero, who declares that he does not believe that there is a gang of cowardly knights in front of him. We see someone's leg. A big man comes forward and claims his name is Thorn. Smiling, Christian thinks that his opponents have swallowed the bait. He invites the opponent to attack. Thorn rushes to attack. The hero did not think that the knights would voluntarily hand over their secret techniques to the scoundrel they believe him to be, so he has to get them in such an unusual way. Christian deflects the opponent's blow. He stares in front of him, thinking that the grip and smooth movement of his legs indicate that Thorn is using a mud sword technique that he has only heard of before. The hero holds the sword with both hands. He tries to repeat what he has just seen. The young man hits his opponent's neck. Melon looks at him in shock. Christian smiles. The hero sits on his enemy. The cadets animatedly discuss what happened. One of them assumes that this bastard has always been so strong. The second remembers that as far as he remembers, Christian's core of darkness was destroyed, and he does not understand how he was able to reach the level of 1-star. Melon realizes that she was not wrong in her conclusions last time. Christian, looking back at the girl over his shoulder, states that he is very disappointed and perhaps expected too much from the knights who train at this training ground. He says that if they are so weak, then perhaps the deputy commander has some responsibility for this. The cadets standing behind Melon propose to stop this circus. One of them calls the hero a psycho. The girl states that the guy was most likely too happy because of the unexpected victory, became proud and began to overestimate his abilities. The hero, bending a little, invites the girl to teach him a good lesson, and at the same time demonstrate the true level of skill that the Black Swamp Knights possess. Melon snatches a sword from one of his subordinates. Next to the young man, a bright mark from the blow is visible. A deep furrow is formed in the ground. Melon, looking at the hero menacingly, calls him a bastard and declares that 1 second will be enough for her to deal with him. Christian, raising his left hand, asks if Melon is really going to fight against him with full force. He states that the use of magic is limited to the first level, dark magic is prohibited, and they fight with wooden swords. The hero asks if the girl is satisfied with such conditions. Melon, holding out his sword in front of him, asks again about the first level. The opponents stand opposite each other. The deputy commander declares that even with these restrictions, she will break both of the young man's legs. Looking down in bewilderment, the guy declares that, in this way, he puts his feet on the line, after which he wonders what his opponent's bet will be. She declares that she is ready to bet anything. The girl rushes forward. She promises that Christian will not leave here on her own feet today. The hero blocks the blow inflicted on him by the deputy commander of the order. The girl's weapon can be seen right above his head. The guy beats off his opponent's wooden sword. The cadets look on in amazement, one of them saying that the bastard has been fighting against their commander for quite some time. His comrade assumes that this is only because the girl is not using her main weapon. Melon's face is bewildered. She realizes that, oddly enough, her attacks do not reach the opponent, whom she considers much weaker than herself. She remembers how the guy stabbed his brother in the jaw, and realizes that the situation is very similar to the one that was in that fight. Christian, smiling, states that things don't seem to be going the way Melon planned. The deputy commander angrily demands that the guy shut up. The girl is holding a sword in her hand. A purple vortex swirls behind her. In front of the hero you can see the trace of a powerful blow. Christian understands that it is time to act and rushes forward. He puts his knee forward. A young man hits his head on the nose of his rival. Melon holds his face. Blood is flowing down her arm. Christian realizes that his trick has worked. Chains are wrapped around the huge sword. The young man thinks that Melon is a swordsman, and since the use of dark magic is prohibited, she, as he expected, for a moment opened a gap in her defenses, which she could not cover with her sword. The girl looks at the bloody hand in amazement. The hero thinks that if Melon was a martial arts master, nothing like this would have happened. The deputy commander, clenching her fist, laughs happily. She says that she could not even imagine that she would be hit with her head in the face. The girl declares that she underestimated the guy, and from now on she will fight with full concentration. Christian looks at her with his left hand raised. He states that he thinks the fight is over. Melon looks at the young man in amazement, who states that when he hit her headbutt, he scratched the girl with his fingernail. We see a clawed paw dripping with purple liquid. Christian declares that if his nail had been covered in venom, he would have poisoned the girl. Smiling, Melon states that he admits defeat, and the guy can tell her what he wants, but in response, she asks him to give him the opportunity to have another fight. The guy happily declares that the rematch will cost Melon another wish. She replies that she agrees to anything. The hero approaches his rival. Looking straight into her face, he asks if she can kneel before him. The cadets look at the young men talking, trying to understand what they are discussing. Melon whispers to the hero that he must understand that he is asking for the impossible, since she has sworn allegiance to the Baron's family, which rules the clan of dark magicians. Christian says that he understands perfectly well that the girl was sent here, however, when he becomes the heir to the senior family of the clan. The contradiction that Melon mentioned disappear. The deputy commander looks at the young man in shock. The girl remembers several young people and states that all 5 officially recognized heirs are members of the ruling family. Smiling, Christian states that, however, no rule prohibits a member of a side branch from becoming an heir, and that in any case he accepts the challenge that Melon has thrown at him. Putting a wooden sword on his shoulder, the guy asks if he will suit the girl if they fight in a month. He promises that next time he will not put forward any conditions and restrictions. The interlocutors stand opposite each other. Melon states that in this case, the young master will not have a single chance to defeat her. The guy replies that he would not make any predictions about this. Young people look into each other's eyes. Christian states that under certain conditions, even an egg can crack a stone. Bowing politely, the guy says that in this case he is waiting for a meeting that will take place in a month. He thinks that by that time the girl will have to understand who she should serve. The hero shows a letter of recommendation from the deputy commander of Melon. Standing in front of his father, he states that demons lack even basic skills, so training needs to be taken much more seriously. The young blonde, smiling, reports that the young master is a real genius, and even with his low rank, he easily defeated those who have fundamental training, including himself. The count with a thoughtful expression on his face recalls his conversation with the blonde. To his master's surprised question whether he really lost to his son, the fighter answers in the affirmative, after which he declares that it was a great fight. The count looks in surprise at his son standing in front of him. Christian asks why his father looks at him with such eyes. He replies that the guy just imagined it. The man hands the young man the key and declares that he keeps his promise. The hero moves away from the closed doors. Happily waving the key, he thinks that he has succeeded, and he has received the key to the archive, as well as made a lasting impression on Melon. The girl holds a sword in front of her. The hero thinks that this demon comes from the main family of the Dark Mage clan, and during the era of destruction she actively acted as a high-ranking 6-star demon. Christian thinks that if he wants to establish full control over the Dark Mages, he must win her over to his side at all costs. The young man touches his forehead with his fist. He thinks that, of course, he has not yet fully conquered her heart, but a month of preparation should be enough for him, because he is a real genius. Christian is moving forward. He remembers how his father looked at him, and mentally asks the Count of Khazar what that expression was. The guy understands that even demons have a sense of affection for their family members. Christian remembers the old man in magnificent robes, thinking that perhaps the Count is a much better person than his father from a past life. The young man opens the door, promising himself that he will not disappoint Count Khazar. The hero immediately corrects himself, calling the man father. The sun is shining brightly through the library window. The hero walks past the bookshelves. He sees textbooks on blood magic, the art of summoning and cursing, that is, publications that were considered forbidden on the side of the light. A young man takes a book from the shelf. He sees the eye of his maid in front of him. Marie seems ready to kiss the guy. He asks what she's doing here. The banshee laughs strangely. Books are visible above the girl's head. She says that her main job is the librarian of this archive. Coquettishly lifting her shoulders, she asks if the guy wants to monopolize her as his personal servant. The hero demands that Marie shut up. Christian is just furious. He hears the girl accuse him of being rude, after which he declares that her heart is ready to burst out of her chest. There is a vase of flowers in front of the bookcase. The hero shouts loudly for Marie to shut up. She continues to giggle strangely. Christian looks thoughtfully at his maid. Marie says that he chose a book that focuses on seal of binding, a level for black magic. The guy's hand is on the book. The girl says that, most likely, the young man will not be able to understand what is written there at his current level. The young man turns up his nose and declares that he, as a genius, will understand everything perfectly. Marie looks at him sadly. With 2 thumbs up, she says that her young master is not only very handsome, but also very smart, and she is incredibly impressed. Christian reports that Marie looks very stupid now, and asks if there is any particular reason why her master chose this book. Smiling, the guy confirms this guess. He declares that he must catch the rat. The hero runs with the cadets. He thinks that the first candidate for the rat's his turn, who hates him the most, as he considers him a trash. In second place, the young man puts the butler, who for some reason has free access to the Cave of Punishments, despite the fact that he is not a member of the family. Christian thinks that for a magician, strength is usually more important than status. But Cox continues to court him, trying to please him in every possible way. The hero on the run thinks that it could also be someone else he doesn't know about yet, but in any case, it's crystal clear to him that someone wants to break him, and that's why he was planted a stone of illusion as he headed to the Cave of Punishment. The hero stops. He thinks that if he becomes a scum again, his ill-wisher will make himself felt. The guy angrily shouts that this training is killing him. He walks away from the cadets, declaring that they can continue to have fun here, and he himself, perhaps, will end here. The young people frown after the departing hero. One of them asks what is wrong with him. We see food scattered. The father angrily jumps up from his chair and shouts at his son, who declares that if the servants had brought normal food, none of this would have happened. With an irritated wave of his hand, Christian asks the servant what he is looking at and demands that he immediately carry away the food he has brought. The count looks at his offspring in disappointment. He states that he was a complete idiot when he believed that the guy came to his senses. He leaves the table. Christian, scratching his cheek, thinks that he feels sorry for his father, and mentally asks the man to understand him, as all this is done for the well-being of the Khazar family. The young man spreads his arms to the sides. He thinks that for several days he has been doing everything possible to spread rumors throughout the estate that he has taken up his old ways again. He mocked the maids when they cleaned and threw money left and right. Wine is poured into the glass. The hero angrily asks Marie why she does not allow him to drink alcohol. The banshee reasonably remarks that this is exactly what the young man is doing now. He irritably states that the girl has extracted all the alcohol from the drink. A bottle is visible above Marie's head. She banishes alcohol from it. The banshee says that her master has not yet reached the age of majority, so he cannot drink alcohol. He replies that the garbage is allowed to do anything. Marie asks in amazement if the guy has really decided to take up the old thing again. Imitating a heart with her fingers, she declares that even if this is the case, she will always be there for him. Above the young man's finger, a skewed magic formation is visible. He reminds the girl that he is going to catch a rat. Marie, covering her mouth with her hands, states that she does not believe that Christian has already mastered seal of binding. The guy reminds the girl that he is a genius, after which he reveals that he has modified this skill so that it can be used by a person with a low level. Christian lies on his bed surrounded by books. He thinks he wasted no time, and in his spare time he studied various types of magic. Covering her mouth with her fist, Marie says that her young master is indeed a real genius. In front of the young man is his younger brother. Christian thinks he should immediately pretend to be drunk. Hiccuping, he asks why Turn came here. The boy, angrily looking at his brother, asks if he is really such a person. He states with resentment that it seemed to him that Christian had reformed. The hero understands that the young man is sincerely worried about him. A smile appears on his face. He understands that his brother can be crossed off the list of suspects. The hero informs the boy that they seem to have a rat in their house. Turn, looking at his brother in shock, asks what he means. Scratching his head, Christian says that someone wants him to break down again, and he himself is going to play along with this person for a while. Turn asks if this means that his brother has been faking lately. The guy brings a glass of wine to his brother's nose and says that his alcohol is not even real. The boy angrily asks who this rat is. Christian, twisting a glass of wine in his hand, says that he does not know for sure yet. He lets go of the glass, which immediately breaks. The hero says that in any case, the rat should soon swallow the bait. A servant runs into the room. He asks the young master what happened. Christian declares that this is not the wine he wanted and demands to inform the butler to bring another bottle. A mustachioed man, folding his hands in front of his face, reports that Cox is very busy right now, pretending to be drunk. The hero says that in this case he will go to the butler himself. Turn cannot believe that his brother has such acting skills. The hero puts the bottle on the table with a crash. Cox, looking at the guy, asks what brought him here. The young man pours the drink on the man's head. After emptying the bottle, he states that this is not the wine he asked for at all, and asks why Cox doesn't pay attention to it. Jumping up from the table, the man declares that he did not ignore anyone, and promises to immediately order a drink that will suit the guy's taste. Christian replies that this does not suit him. Pointing his finger at the drenched servant, he demands that he himself go and bring wine. The man's hands are shaking. He says that he has to finish some work. Patting the butler on the cheek, Christian states that he won't be able to work like this. The guy says that Cox should go change clothes, and he may grab wine on the way. The man's lower jaw trembles. He promises to return immediately. The hero looks after the fleeing servant. Cox looks very gloomy. Christian thinks he has to pay tribute to the patience of this man, who is able to endure any insult. The hero draws attention to the documents covered with wine. He looks through them. The guy smiles, realizing that he has found what he needs. Christian imagines a butler sitting next to a chest full of gold. He thinks that if it is a rat, then this must inevitably affect the administrative side of his activities, while the young man understands that the documents he found are not enough, and he needs ironclad evidence. The hero puts the papers on the table. Cox approaches him with a bottle in his hand. He says that he brought the wine that the young man asked for. Christian thanks the butler and asks if he is offended by him. The man replies that he does not hold any grudges. Continuing to pretend to be drunk, Christian says it's good. Giggling, he states that Cox is his favorite butler who is willing to tolerate him in any form. The servant thanking his master. Cox tells the young man who opens the bottle that he has to tell him something, and Christian asks what exactly he is talking about. Unpleasant young people are seen behind the hero's back. Cox tells him that his friends want to meet him secretly in a familiar place. Christian asks in surprise. Raising his hands, the butler says that he doesn't really want the guy to mess with them again, but he's not in a position to judge the young man's friends. Christian, holding a bottle in his hand, says that he will probably meet with his comrades. Cox says that he is ready to carry out any order from his master. The young man smiles. It seems to him that everything is going even better than he expected. There are plates of food on the table. In front of the hero sit his comrades. One of them declares that, as he heard, Christian has changed a lot lately. The second says that it simply cannot be, since the hero was the most desperate among all. The hero draws attention to a sad girl in a headscarf. He mentally calls his comrades complete bastards, since they forced him to serve a very young child. The scoundrels raise their glasses and offer a drink. Christian brings the wine to his lips. One of the young men asks what he is waiting for, and states that the guy should have drunk a long time ago. The glass flies into the face of the plump blonde. Wiping the liquid from his face, the scoundrel asks in fright what the hell the hero is doing. Christian asks how these ghouls dare to treat sacred alcohol like this. He states that, judging by the reaction, the fat man knows what was mixed into it. The young man bends his index finger. He touches the maid's forehead. The girl loses consciousness right next to him. One of his comrades asks if Christian really knows how to use dark magic. The hero, jumping on the table, declares that the bastards should now worry more about their own fate. The guy grabs the blonde by the hair. He hits the faces of the scoundrels right on the table. The fat man, whose head is pressed to the table, asks why Christian is doing all this and asks him to calm down. A sharp knife appears in the young man's hand. He declares that if the scum do not understand why they are being beaten here now, then he will simply finish them off. There are broken plates on the floor. Tied up and beaten scoundrels sit on the floor. A skinny brunette begs the hero to spare them. With his arms folded over his chest, Christian stands in front of his former comrades, one of them declaring that he was only following orders to poison the drink and blame everything on the little servant. The fat man says that whoever forced them to do this blackmailed them, that they were smuggling drugs, and they had no choice. A knife sticks out in the floor in front of a skinny brunette. Christian asks who exactly gave this order. The villain begins to mumble something incomprehensible. The hero, putting a knife to his neck, asks if the guy really wants to lose his head. The bastard immediately replies that Cox gave them the order. Christian looks thoughtfully at his former comrade, who begs for mercy and promises to do everything the hero tells him. Christian, putting his foot on the knife, demands that the guy swear that he will carry out the order. He readily takes the oath. The hero says that the villain said it too quietly. He shouts that he swears to do everything that is required of him. Raising his hand over the trembling villains, Christian declares that now everything has been pronounced clearly and distinctly. He orders that the scum listen to him carefully. The guy's former comrades are screaming loudly. Tied-up scoundrels are lying on the floor. Cox runs up to the count and informs him that they have a serious problem. The man asks what happened. The butler states that Christian committed the murder. The count looks at his servant in amazement. Folding his hands in front of him, Cox states that the guy killed the maid who served him last night, after which he threw the corpse into the river. He states that they are unlikely to be able to hush up this case. The hero's father looks down in shock. The servant asks what they should do. The count demands that Christian be taken to a demonic trial. The man declares that he is using his right to use the simplified office procedure. Smiling faintly, the butler lowers his gaze. Christian stands in front of a small podium. He calmly declares that he is not guilty. The count, looking at his son, asks how he dares to lie if there is a witness who can confirm everything. The young man declares that this is impossible, since what is attributed to him never even happened. His former comrades are visible above the guy's head. Christian states that there seems to have been a small misunderstanding. A maid appears in the doorway. The hero declares that he is actually accused of killing this girl. The skinny brunette and the fat man look at what is happening in amazement. The girl informs the count that the young gentleman took her home after she passed out, and then gave her money to pay her rent. The young people look at the girl standing below. She states that the criminals are upstairs, and they were the ones who poisoned the hero's drink. Smiling, Christian looks up. Someone asks what is going on here. We see the guy's hands. Christian thinks everything is going right, and it's time for a spectacular climax. The eyes of the scoundrels turn white. The plump blonde declares that the hero is completely right, and they falsely accused him of the crime. His comrade reports that Cox's butler ordered them to frame the young master. The vampire, with his mouth wide open, asks what kind of nonsense this is. He shouts that all this is very unfair, and Christian and his friends try to frame him. Looking at the hero, the butler says that this horrible prank has gone too far. The guy thinks that these are exactly the words he expected to hear from the bastard. Christian asks his father, who is standing in front of the podium, If he, as a victim in this case, can ask for something, the Count asks what exactly it is about. Smiling, the young man declares that he wants to personally interrogate the butler. The man looks at his offspring in shock. The Count scowls that his son can interrogate the servant. Cox tries to shout out to his master, who states that if Christian behaves inappropriately or is rude, his authority will be immediately revoked. Putting his hands on the podium, the guy promises that the interrogation will end very quickly. Looking sternly at the butler, the young man states that as a representative of the great ruler of the Magic Empire and as a member of the Dark Mage clan ruling the eastern region of the Southern Magic Kingdom, as well as a representative of the Count of Khazar, he proceeds with the interrogation. The protagonist, standing behind the podium where his father had recently stood, asks if Cox swears to tell only the truth. Answering questions, the butler answers in the affirmative. Christian states that, as a representative of the Demon Emperor, he once again asks if Cox will answer truthfully to the questions posed. Putting his right hand to his chest, the butler swears a second time. Purple symbols appear on his forehead. The vampire clutches his head. He looks at his hands in amazement. There is an audience on the balcony. Someone asks if the guy really used seal of binding just now. The second viewer expresses bewilderment at how such an inexperienced young man can use dark magic of the 4th level. Behind the purple chains, a magic formation is visible. The hero thinks that the modified skill seal of binding can be used even by low-level magicians. However, on one condition it requires 2 oaths to activate. The guy thinks that he has deceived the butler in the most brazen way. Cox trembles as he stands behind the stand. He asks what the hero just did to him. Holding out his right hand, the young man declares that the servant has sworn to tell only the truth, and then asks why Cox hired these 2 men to frame him. A short circuit occurs in the vampire's head. The villain screams heartbreakingly. The butler salivates from his mouth. He admits that he did what he is accused of because he was ordered to do so. The servant states that he was blackmailed by threatening to expose his financial fraud. The Count looks at the vampire in amazement, who says that this is why since the boy's childhood he has shown him in the most unsightly light. The hero, smiling, declares that he already knows that the butler has long been embezzling the Count's money, as evidenced by the documents that he found on his desk. Christian approaches the vampire. He asks who gave him the order. The butler begs the young man not to touch him and promises to tell everything. Purple symbols are visible above the bastard's head. The hero orders to answer immediately. The Earl is amazed to hear his servant report that the orders came from Ashid. One of the spectators covers her face with a fan. The vampire says that the customer was Ashid de Baron, the second heir to the clan of dark magicians. The butler looks to his right in horror. He says that he will be killed, and he must immediately run away from here. The hero grabs a sword. In one motion, he blows off the vampire's head. The Count looks at what is happening in shock. The head flies down. Christian, who holds a bloody sword in his hand, claims to have carried out the sentence using the authority he received from the Count. The Count, looking sternly at his son, asks why he made such a decision. The young man replies that if they had left the butler alive, the older family would have tampered with evidence to hush up the incident. The butler's bloody hand lies on the floor. Christian declares that you cannot pander to your detractors. And now everyone who saw the execution will understand that it is better not to joke with the Khazar family. Turn stares down, eyes bulging. Smiling, the hero states that Asha tried to frame him. The Count silently looks at his son. A spatial gap appears above the man's arm. The father orders his son to follow him. They find themselves in a spacious room. The young man asks where they are now. The Count explains that this is a secret training ground where no one will see them. The man looks back at his son standing behind him and asks if the statement he made means that the guy is going to prevent Ashid from ascending to the throne. The Count states that the support of the heir is directly related to the power of the family. It seems to him that the guy made the right decision, but it was still hasty. The man says that, nevertheless, after the latest events, he will begin to support the young lady, and not the second heir, who turned out to be a bloodthirsty maniac. The hero, looking to his left, declares that his father should act differently. Smiling, the young man declares that he wants to become the heir himself. The Count angrily shouts that this is absurd. Christian, rubbing the back of his head, states that if the claimant has abilities, even a representative of a side branch can become an heir. There are shields and swords against the wall of the training hall. The Count explains that his son has just mentioned a formal rule that never applies. Christian reasonably asks why I should try to frame him in this case. Father and son stand opposite each other. The Count declares that in childhood Christian was more talented than Ashid. But then he fell very low. The young man declares that he will soon compensate for everything and catch up with his competitor in development. We see a dark sphere. Christian asks his father to give him a recommendation to participate in a sacred dark rite that will take place in 2 months. The man states that only demons who have 2 stars or more can take part in this event, and the guy has barely reached the level of 1 star. The hero, spreading his hands to the sides, declares that in 2 months he will definitely receive a 2nd star. The Count asks in amazement. Smiling radiantly, Christian asks his father to help him. The magnificent room is lit by many lights. Someone says that the young master has changed completely. The maid reports that the Count has been personally training his offspring lately. The green creature with whom she communicates states that even the older knights are afraid of this training. He offers to see how long the guy can endure such torment. Christian strikes. A sword is visible next to his head. The hero says that you need to use the mud sword technique for control, and attack with black side swordsmanship. Looking over his father's shoulder, he asks if he remembered correctly. The Earl is amazed to realize that his son learned about black side swordsmanship only today, and immediately mastered it. Christian asks how these skills should be applied separately, or together. Judging by the expression on his face, the Count was shocked to the core. The young man holding the sword states that he seems to know a slightly more effective way. We see a mushroom. The young man strikes and cuts off the shoots of this plant. The father is shocked to tell his son that he has now used the mud sword technique, but he does not understand how he managed to cope with a humanoid mushroom that is strong enough to withstand the use of this technique. The young man, holding out his blade, declares that this technique belongs to the mud sword style. The Count stares in amazement at the sword emitting purple jets. The guy explains that this technique is only used by the blade of the black sickle sword. The man is amazed. He realizes that his son is talking about a technique that cannot be used by a one-star fighter. He states out loud that it is a powerful dual technique. However, if you use it, it will be difficult to use curse magic. Raising his left hand, the young man declares that he does not think so, and it is all quite simple. The Count's lower jaw falls far down. Christian is lying on the ground, reportedly taking place 2 weeks later. Sweat trickles down the guy's face. He thinks running is very tiring, but he can't miss these workouts as he needs stamina to rank up. Someone appears next to the young man. The question is whether he is already tired. Melon, smiling, reminds the guy that the duel is coming soon, and she is really looking forward to this day. Christian thinks that there is a huge pressure on him from all sides. Sitting on the ground, the guy declares that he is making every effort to meet the expectations of the girl. She states that the young man has achieved good success, but he still has only 1 star. She says that if she is disappointed, she will never bend the knee to the young master. Tired, hunched over, Christian declares that everything may be true, but even if he loses, he will still gain something from this duel, so he will win anyway. Melon, raising her right hand, says that the guy is definitely not tired of talking. She asks him to show a good fight and make it memorable for her. The hero, looking at the girl, thinks that now she has the 4th upper level. We see a rather illustrative graph. Christian thinks that even within the first level there is a division into upper, middle and lower sublevels, and he is still incredibly far from his rival, while the guy understands that he is a rich young master who has a lot of opportunities. The young man smiles happily. Christian, who wears a gorgeous green cloak on his shoulders, asks Marie if she has prepared a bag as he had previously requested, and Marie replies that she naturally did. Banshee, who wears a fancy dress, declares that this is the first time she has gone out with the young master in public, so she has prepared herself in the best possible way. Christian, covering his face with his hand, states that he did not invite Marie with him. The girl states that the guy does not have to fear for her, and she will not faint because of the hot weather. Folding her hands in front of her face, Marie declares that she is serving her master with great pleasure. The guy asks in bewilderment why the banshee should faint. Christian recalls his conversation with his father, when he asked if he could replace Marie with a member of the human race, and he replied that it was impossible, since the guy had a contract with Marie, and an upper-level banshee could not be run without a contract. The guy indignantly shouts that maybe in this case it makes sense to just break the contract. The Count, sighing heavily, declares that the condition for terminating the contract is a deep kiss with Marie, and the guy is unlikely to go for it. The man reminds that when this contract was concluded, the guy was very drunk, and only because of this he agreed to this condition. The hero, clutching his head, curses the previous owner of his body, a completely worthless scoundrel. Raising his right hand, he tells the girl that she will not go with him, because it is impossible. He informs that he is going to a place where there will be many people. The girl, clenching her fists in resentment, declares that she has been waiting for a long time to go out in public. The guy says that she must understand that her spiritual energy can harm a large number of people. Tears flow from the girl's eyes. She says that she is tired of this mansion, in which she has been staying for many decades. Christian looks at her sympathetically. Clutching his head, the guy shouts that he will take it with him, but she must not show herself in public. Banshee, happily throwing up her hands, thanks the hero and calls him an excellent young master. The guy asks her to stop chatting and just follow him. Suitcases are visible above the maid's head. She asks where she is going with her master. The young man replies that there is a place where he can get something useful. Marie happily says that her master already has a huge amount of money. The guy turns around in irritation and shouts that he is well aware of his wealth, and he does not need money. Questions hang in the air. The banshee says that if it's not money, then maybe it's gold or lands. Christian says she's wrong. Marie, looking sadly at the young man, asks what he wants to get in this case. He replies that something that he once did very well. Turn sits in the carriage. The boy declares that his brother is late. Christian asks what he is doing here. Turn, looking at his brother, says that he is going to look after him so that he does not do any more stupid things. The hero states that there is no need to worry about this. The guy has a wad of money in his hands. He informs the boy that he is only going to play a little in the casino. Turn asks again in surprise. Christian, whose shoes we see, states that demons should drink alcohol and gamble, as the emperor himself encourages these activities as a legitimate pastime. The boy, looking at his brother looking into the carriage, says that then he will go with him. The hero asks in bewilderment. Running a finger under his nose, Christian says that the boy seems to be worried about his older brother, who asks in surprise why he would do this. He assures that he only wants to make sure that Christian does not defame his family once again. In front of us are the wheels of a carriage. The hero asks if this task will be too difficult for an exemplary boy. Turn says that gambling seems to be somehow related to cards, after which he promises to knock the arrogance off his older brother. The carriage passes by a magnificent garden. The hero pretends that he is very afraid of his brother. Christian smiles predatorily. He thinks that a naive fool will be the perfect victim today. Two brothers and a banshee approach the opulent building. Turn, looking up in shock, declares that she can't believe that such places even exist. Marie says that her heart is about to burst out of her chest. The hero hands his brother a tiger mask and tells him to stop behaving like a redneck and put on a mask, since this institution can only be entered if you hide your identity. Raising his index finger, the hero asks that Marie be out of sight from now on. In addition, he tells her to get closer to him so that he can say something to her. The young man whispers in the ear of his maid to do something, who, giggling, promises to fulfill her master's request. Turn, standing behind his brother, asks where the banshee went. The hero replies that the boy does not need to know, and suggests that he just enter the casino. One of the visitors to the establishment frowns at the hero and his companion. They pass by the players. We see a spacious hall with tables for games. A man with pointed ears, smiling, states that he seems to be seeing characters that can bring good profits. His bearded comrade states that the prey itself has entered the lion's den. Christian asks his brother standing next to him if he wants to bet on which of them will win more in an hour. The hero states that if Turn overtakes him, he will treat him as the eldest for a whole month. The boy asks if this is a joke. Christian replies that he is serious. But if Turn loses, he will have to call his brother the noble King Emperor. The boy looks at the hero in bewilderment. Christian, smiling, hands his brother a bag of money, who asks what it all means. The hero suggests that the young man either take the money or go back to the carriage if he is afraid of something. Turn snatches the pouch from his hand and shouts that it won't scare him. He moves away from the hero, declaring that he will go first. The croupier lays out the cards. A bearded man puts his hand on the hero's shoulder and declares that the young gentleman has won. He says that the guy is very good, and if he continues the game, he will earn a fortune today. Christian, leaning over the table, laughing, declares that he seems to be very lucky. In front of us are stacks of chips. The hero understands that an old trick is used against him when they let him win, in order to push him to a knowingly losing game with high stakes. The young man looks to his left. He thinks that for such establishments such a strategy is classic. Turn clutches his head. He screams that this can't be, and he had very good cards. Christian realizes that one fool has already been hooked. Smiling, he looks at his brother, and asks why he doesn't go home if he's so unlucky today. Turn asks in surprise if Christian is not losing. The hero reports that he has lost only 500 rupees. He hears that his brother has already lost 1,000. The players sitting at the table whisper. Christian, looking around thoughtfully, realizes that everyone present in the casino has already marked his brother as an easy prey, and very soon he will begin to be deceived in the most brazen and obvious way. Turn takes another pouch from his brother, who asks if the boy really wants to continue playing. The boy yells that of course he does, and demands to give him money. The hero, smiling, tells the boy that he tried to dissuade him. Mentally, the young man suggests that his brother should not restrain himself and serve as a good bait. Turn looks at the cards. One of the players, smiling, looks at the boy. Christian sees a customer slamming his fist on the table, and the guy realizes that this is what he needs. Marie whispers in her master's ear that she has discovered the people he asked to find. Looking up, Christian praises the banshee for its excellent work. The hero points his thumb behind his back, where Turn screams that he lost another 10,000 rupees. In front of us is a low building. Marie says that the characters the young man is interested in are inside. The hero asks the banshee to open the door. Christian and his companion enter the room. The hero takes off his mask. Two guards recognize him. The young man declares that there seems to be no one here who does not know him personally. The guards greet the young master and ask what brought him here this time. The hero, smiling, asks to bring the owner of the establishment to him. Grantel, the head of the Grantel Trading Company, asks if the hero was really looking for him. Christian, raising his left hand, declares that he wants to talk quietly. The fat man asks what it will be about. The hero thinks that this person is known to everyone as a merchant, but in his past life he was the owner of this casino. Christian asks the agitated man if he really has the audacity to ask what happened after his henchman robbed his dear younger brother. Grantel is about to cry. He asks the guy not to say that he means a fool in a tiger mask. Folding his arms over his chest, Christian declares that the man is absolutely right, and under this mask was Turn, the heir to the house of Khazar. Grantel frighteningly shouts that he is just the manager of the casino, and the players who beat the boy have nothing to do with him. The hero threateningly asks if the merchant wants to die a terrible death. He, with his mouth wide open, lets out a deafening scream. The man falls to his knees and humiliatingly asks for forgiveness. He declares that if he had known that a nobleman from the count's family had come to his casino, he would never have done anything like this. The hero asks if Grantel wants to get forgiveness for free. A bright light hits the windows. The fat man shouts that he is ready to compensate for the costs, and asks how much the young man wants. He replies that 1,000,000 rupees will be enough. The man asks again in amazement. Sweating, Grantel looks at the guy and declares that he doesn't have that kind of money. Christian says that in this case, 200,000 will be enough. Grantel asks again. He understands that this is a fortune, but life is somehow dearer to him. Smiling, Christian says he wants one more thing. Grantel asks what exactly it is about. Swords lie in front of the hero. Marie says that her master spent 200,000 rupees to buy combat equipment. She admires the hero's well-thought-out plan. Christian, smoothing his hair, declares that nothing else could be expected from a genius. A black sword hangs from the boy's belt. We see this weapon wrapped in red chains, and then handed over to the character with the head of a ram. Marie says that the sword that the young man acquired is apparently the Grunna, a sacred blade obtained by a hero who sold his soul and is especially revered by demons. Raising his index finger, the Banshee says that the blade is unfortunately rusty. Christian replies that he is fine with everything and has another great plan. He asks the girl to shut up and just take what he gives her. Marie offers her hands. The hero says that, as far as he knows, she has long wanted to receive this gift. Banshee holds a pendant in the form of a cross. Opening her mouth, she looks at her master, who states that it seemed to him that she could never get rid of regrets if she did not receive it, so he gives it to Marie so that she can calm down and move on. The hero warns that the girl should not take this gift as something more. Marie, looking at the guy, states that this is the first gift she has received in her life and even after death, after which she sincerely thanks the young man. Raising his right hand, Christian says that the Banshee can think whatever he wants, and now is the time to go home. Marie is over the moon. She declares that as a sign of gratitude, she will make even more delicious blood juice for the hero from now on. The young man and his companion are walking along the pavement. Christian reminds that he does not drink such filth. Marie replies that she always adds a little blood to the strawberry juice that the young master orders. The hero asks the girl to say that it was a terrible joke. Christian waves his hand. He asks the girl to wait, after which he states that he seems to have forgotten about something. In front of Turn, there is 1 rupee on the table. The hero says that nothing terrible happened, and he will remember what he forgot later. Inside the magnificent castle, Turn is loudly calling out to his brother. The hero wakes up. Grantel is seen above the young people's heads. The boy asks why the hero left him in the casino. Christian realizes that he forgot about this when he left with Marie. Turn accuses his brother of almost being sold into debt slavery because of him, and this would definitely have happened if he had not been accidentally recognized. Christian, who has a pillow under his belly, admits that he was wrong. He realizes that his brother was most likely saved by Grantel. Raising his left hand, the young man asks why Turn does not call him the right name. He reminds him that he lost the bet, so he must fulfill his promise to call him nothing less than the noble King Emperor. The boy looks at his brother in shock. His hands are trembling. Shaking with disgust, the guy tries to pronounce the fictional title that has just sounded. The hero picks his nose. Turn angrily shouts the words demanded of him. Sticking out his pinky finger to the side, the hero declares that the boy is doing great, and from that moment on, he must behave well and show respect for his great older brother. Turn feels humiliated. The boy, looking back at his older brother, declares that one day he will definitely regret what he did to him. Christian is sitting on the bed with his head in his hand. He thinks that this cute child was supposed to grow up and kill him, and that was the plan of the bastard he killed with his own hands. In front of the majestic building stands a young man. This is Ashid, the son of Langham, the current patriarch of the Dark Mage clan, and one of the main contenders for the throne. The hero thinks that he does not feel much emotion towards this man, since he is not a real Christian, but if he wants to become the heir, he will not be able to avoid confrontation with this character. The guy looks thoughtfully to the left of you. He promises to pay for the insults of the previous owner of his body. The young man sits on the bed, thinking that in order to achieve his goal, he must first win over Melon. The hero draws attention to a sword entwined with a chain. Christian crouches in front of the weapon. We see several characters trying to cope with the blade. The hero thinks that many magicians tried to subdue the sacred sword Grunna, but it is still gathering dust, since no one has managed to do it. Christian takes the weapon by the chain and states that they will now see how the sword reacts to him. A source of bright glow appears under the guy's hand. The young man looks at his upper limb in bewilderment. We see a blue sphere. Christian thinks that, as expected, Grunna reacts negatively to magical power. He realizes that this is quite natural, as the weapon was made to carry the sacred power of light. The young man takes a tool in his hand. He declares that he still has an ordinary weapon in front of him, and if he understands how it rejects magical power, he will be able to subdue it. The hammer is lowered onto the blade. Jets of yellow energy appear around the instrument. Christian continues to strike. The hammers lie inside the case. The hero says that Grunna must be in pain now. The guy continues to work with the hammer. He advises the sword to surrender. The young man, smiling maliciously, declares that he is ready to swing hammers all night. Grunna trembles. The count asks his son if he is ready. It is reported that the case takes place a few days later in a secret training ground. Christian, looking at a woman whose face is covered by a veil, asks who she is. The guy recognizes her silhouette and realizes that he seems to have seen her before. The woman turns to the guy. He finally recognizes her and greets the commander of the Black Shadow Knights. Mary, the commander of the Black Shadow Knights, tells her nephew that they really haven't seen each other in a long time. The hero represents a woman in combat robes. He knows that she is the daughter of the Marquis of Langham, the head of the Dark Mage clan, and the sister of his father. She supports the head of her clan and is responsible for leading secret missions and internal security structures. The hero looks in surprise at the woman, who is a very influential figure within the Dark Mage clan, and does not understand what she could need here. The count, raising his left hand, reports that Lady Mary came here because of the Cox incident. The woman tells her brother that his son's behavior was quite impudent. Christian realizes that if the head of the clan is going to stand up for Ashid, it will be very problematic for him. Smiling, the young man says that the Marquis of Langham must have a lot of free time if he pays attention to such minor incidents. Mary states that Christian speaks very boldly, but the head of the clan is really not interested in children's showdowns. She directly states that Langham is interested in the hero. The young man imagines a man sitting on a throne, and tries to comprehend the words he has just heard. He realizes that this may be his chance to attract the attention of the head of the clan. Mary gloomily declares that, however, she cannot yet report to her master what is more courageous or reckless in the hero. The woman says that the guy has not yet reached the level of the second star, but at the same time he has already managed to challenge Melon to a duel. Mary asks if it would not have been wiser to refuse this duel. The hero's hand rests on Grunna. Smiling, he states that he appreciates the concern shown about him, but he has a good plan that he thinks can bring victory. Mary says in amazement that she seems to see Grunna at her nephew's. Looking at the guy in front of her, she states that he must have completely lost his mind. According to her, she guessed that Christian was reckless, but could not even imagine that everything was neglected to such an extent. Mary frowns that the young man's father, Leiden, boasted that Christian has finally come to his senses. The count swears that this is indeed the case, and the woman asks why. In this case, the boy is going to use the sacred sword in the duel. Christian, looking at his aunt, asks if there is a rule that forbids him from doing so. He states that if there is no such restriction, then he may well use this weapon. Mary sternly says that Grunna is a weapon that even the head of the clan could not master, and the sacred energy of the sword can burn a young man to ashes. The hero, taking a blade in his hands, says that he does not think so. His relatives warn the guy to be careful. The sword glows in the young man's hand. Mary looks at her nephew in amazement. She assumes that he has a fake in his hands. Christian throws her a blade and asks her to check if it's fake. Mary grabs a sword flying at her. She throws him away in disgust. Christian raises the weapon. The woman asks how he manages to hold this blade. The guy replies that it is a trade secret, and he cannot reveal it. The young man puts the weapon on his shoulder. He declares that he is sure of only one thing, namely that he is a genius who can use a sword that does not obey even the head of the clan. Christian, smiling, looks at his aunt. He declares that nothing else matters. The count looks at his son in shock. Loud laughter is heard next to his relatives. Mary and Leiden look at someone in surprise. The remark is that the young master is always very funny, and it's just delightful. Melon appears from the portal. She states that she could not even imagine that the guy would be able to tame a holy sword. We see the girl's legs, and she says it doesn't matter. Smiling, the deputy commander looks at the young man and says that he is living his last day. Christian frowns back at her. Melon rushes to attack. The hero has to raise a blade above his head to deflect the blow. Christian looks at his opponent appraisingly from under his sword. As he thought, the girl's speed and strength are now incomparable to their previous fight, when restrictions were in place. The young man stands with his weapon in front. He thinks that he will not be able to close this gap. The hero parries another blow. Jets of yellow energy rise up around the blade. Mary and Leiden are watching what is happening. The woman says that the power of the sacred sword has begun to work. The older generation looks at the fighting hero. Leiden states that his son seems to be even stronger than his sister at the same age. Mary, pointing her finger at the boy, states that this is not the only thing. She urges her brother to pay attention to the way the young man moves the hilt of the sacred sword. The young man's hand emits violet energy. Melon misses a powerful blow to the chest. Leiden, standing behind his sister, says that the young man has impressive strength, but he thinks that he is shaking a little. Mary replies that this is not the case at all. The woman says that the guy is tweaking his demonic energy to prevent rejection by the holy sword. Christian raises his weapon above his head. He asks his opponent if she likes this battle. Melon, looking at him, states that maybe she's only imagining it, but she feels like Christian is predicting her movements. The hero, putting the sword on his shoulder, declares that he has a very good eye for such things. We see the figures of two fighting characters. Christian states that in sword fighting, every movement is always preceded by something, and if the girl strikes from above, then she must raise her arms, and before that, the muscles of the shoulders and upper arms must move. He says that such patterns are common for both true masters and inexperienced beginners. Melon looks at the young man in surprise. She abruptly puts her hand out in front of her and asks if the guy was ready for her move. Jets of green energy swirl around the hero. Melon states that the guy could have forgotten that the Black Swamp Knights are swordsman mages. A bright flash occurs. Christian, looking down, states that it was quite dangerous. His opponent guesses that the guy used an artifact of purification. The hero, raising his left hand, thanks his father for being alive. Leiden says in bewilderment that the used item should be in the safe. The son replies that he is a very good thief. Drops of sweat run down the faces of the hero's relatives. Christian runs his hand under the hem of his vest. He says that in real combat, equipment is also part of a fighter's skill. He tosses the ball. The sphere explodes above the girl's head. Smiling, the guy declares that it is useless to dodge. Melon stares at the red sphere in fright. Not far from the young man, a powerful explosion is heard. Christian stands with his left hand raised. He thinks he bought this artifact with the money he took from Grantel, and the item turned out to be surprisingly good. A wall of fire is visible in front of the guy. He shouts that he knows that Melon is still alive and that she should get out of there immediately. A girl's leg appears next to the hero. In front of him is a trace of the blow. Christian stands with his weapons outstretched. His sword stops a projectile launched at him. Debris scatters in front of the hero. Closing his eyes, Leiden tells his sister standing next to him that he was surprised when his son threw the balloon into the air. But now he understands the guy's plan and is once again convinced that he is a real genius. Melon goes ahead. Her body is tilted slightly forward. She calls out to the young master. The girl smiles. Looking at the guy with crazy eyes, Melon shouts that it's all a lot of fun, after which he asks what the next attack will be. Mary, raising her right hand, says that the girl seems to have lost control of herself, so the whole thing needs to be stopped immediately. Black smoke appears next to the hero's face. Christian holds out his fist. The girl's hand flies past his head. We see the young man's leg. Melon cannot believe that he dodged her attack. The hero puts a sword to the neck of his opponent. Smiling, he states that he has won, and asks if she is satisfied with the fight. Melon looks back at his opponent. Leiden clenches her fist happily. Mary covers her mouth with her hand. The girl, laughing, declares that she still cannot recover from what she has experienced. The hero, looking at her, asks for an answer to the offer he made to her earlier. Christian states that he will respect any decision, as he understands that it is impossible to force someone to be true to himself. Melon asks if they will arrange fights in the future if she takes the side of the young master. The hero, smiling, looks at the girl. Giving her his hand, he declares that there will be as many duels as Melon wants. Mary stands in front of a huge window. The woman's face is thoughtful. She realizes that she has seen some kind of transcendent level of control over demonic energy. Someone throws Grunna to the floor, stating that they can't handle it. Mary, standing behind the gray-haired old man, asks if even the head of the family can handle this weapon. He replies that he manages to subdue Grunna for a short time. However, as the woman knows very well, demonic energy constantly changes wavelengths, and it needs to be infinitely adjusted to control this weapon. The sword lies on the floor. The old man declares that no one can do all this during a real battle. The old man, with a red dragon visible above his head, declares that he admits that the demons of Gehenna or the demonic dragon are capable of this. But among humans, only some madman who controls demonic energy as freely as he breathes can do this. Christian, smiling, asks Lady Mary if he is worthy of the highest praise. The woman looks down thoughtfully. With the moon hanging over the magnificent park, Mary thinks that perhaps her father's long-held dream has finally come true. Cooks work in the kitchen. One of them has bright eyes. Strawberries are divided into 2 equal parts. Appetizing berries decorate the cake. The hero says with disgust that he could not even imagine that the strawberry cake that he ate a little earlier was made by the hands of this terrible chef. Marie declares that, despite his formidable appearance, he is a very good cook. The green creature, wiping his hands with a towel, makes croaking noises and asks what brought the young master to his kitchen, who replies that he wants to make cookies. Banshee, looking at his master in bewilderment, asks if he is really going to bake cookies. The guy states that he has to give them to someone. Marie, raising her fist in fist, says that it shouldn't be another woman, and Christian irritably states that everything is not at all as his maid thinks, although he will indeed give the pastry to the woman. The cook, who has a white cap on his head, informs the young man that he is an excellent cook of biscuits. The young man replies that it may be so, but he must bake them himself, as this is the only way to make them special. Christian wants to say that he is a good cook himself, but at this moment a red mass flies into his face. 2 green creatures are pounding strawberries in a mortar. The hero indignantly shouts to his maid that she doesn't seem to be joking when she stated that blood is being added to his strawberry juice. Marie giggles. The hero approaches Mary, who is about to mount her horse, and calls out to her. The woman, looking at the young man, asks what happened. The hero reports that he was told that his aunt was leaving, so he came to see her off. The woman thanks the guy for coming, despite the fact that he must have been very tired after yesterday's duel. Christian hands a relative a box, stating that he is not tired at all and, in addition, has prepared something for her. The woman realizes that she has been presented with delicious cookies. Looking into the box embarrassedly, Mary states that it was unnecessary. Christian replies that he is very happy to see his aunt after a long separation, so he decided to please her with pastries. He asks the woman to take the cookies. Leiden, rubbing his chin thoughtfully, remembers how his son asked if Lady Mary had a favorite food. The man understands why the young man approached him yesterday. It seems to him that the guy knows how to win people's hearts, and this is just wonderful. The woman looks at the biscuits. Christian asks her to try them and reveals that he made them himself. Mary asks in surprise. She tastes the cookies. Judging by the expression on her face, she likes it very much. Putting another bite in his mouth, Mary says that the cookies are delicious, and Christian states that he is very glad that his aunt liked them. The guy, smiling, looks at the woman, who says that since her nephew gave her a gift, she should thank him. Mary asks what the young man wants. He replies that it would be nice if she became his real aunt from now on. The woman looks at the young man in surprise. Holding a box of cookies, she states that they are already blood relatives, after which she says that as Leiden told her, Christian will participate in a sacred dark rite. The hero silently looks at his aunt, who declares that, as far as she understands, the main meaning of the young man's request is that she take his side in the struggle for the place of heir. Sighing heavily, the woman says that she simply cannot agree to this, since the elders of the main house must remain neutral in their attitude towards the heirs. We see a hand holding an hourglass. Mary says it's an iron rule that she can't break. Christian, looking at his aunt, states that his request was sincere, and did not imply anything of the sort. He assures that he just wants to get closer to his aunt. The woman replies that the hero is very brave, after which he asks if there really were no ulterior motives in his request. Raising his hands, the young man declares that, of course, if his aunt helps him, he will not refuse to help. Folding his hands, the guy declares that he simply cannot refuse such a wonderful woman. Christian brings clenched fists to his face. Mary brings the cookie to her mouth and states that the young man's directness does not look repulsive, and since he gives her such a delicious cookie, she may be able to look after the young man. Smiling, Christian thanks her. Leiden wipes away the tears in his eyes. Mary asks if she can ever get the cookies in return. The young man states that it depends on what she does for him. The woman asks in surprise. Winking at her, the young man declares that if his aunt disappoints him, he will not be in the mood, and the cookies are unlikely to turn out as delicious. Mary, smiling, sighs. The hero looks at his aunt. She asks if he wants to join the ranks of the Black Shadow Knights. The woman is still holding the box in her hands. She states that the skills that the young man showed during the duel were truly impressive. Knights are seen above the hero's head. Mary suggests that perhaps Christian has such talent that he can surpass even the head of the clan. She warns that in any case his competitors will be very strong, and expresses fear that the hero may die before he reaches his full potential. The young man states that if he is not able to overcome such obstacles, then he will probably it's better to just die. Mary looks at her nephew in bewilderment. Smiling, the young man declares that he appreciates Mary's care, but it seems to him that he will not lose to anyone. A woman, looking at a young man, thinks that he is incredibly self-confident, while for some reason it seems to her that he can really succeed. Mary holds the reins in her hands. She says that she understands everything, and since she is a mage herself, she simply has no right to prevent the young man from moving along the path he has chosen. Mary jumps on the horse. She says that she wants to give the guy one last piece of advice, just as a precaution. In front of us is the back of the head of a long-haired girl. The aunt tells her nephew to be wary of the first heiress. Leiden approaches her son and asks his sister if she really thinks that the danger is Yulia, and not Ashid, because this girl is the most reserved among all the heirs. Mary states that her brother, when the time comes, will see for himself. Christian thanks his aunt and promises to remember her words. The woman, smiling, looks at the guy over her shoulder. She declares that she will be waiting to meet her nephew. The hero wearily collapses on the bed. He silently looks up. The young man remembers his father and aunt as they were in his previous life. The young man thinks that both the count and his sister were very strong and reached the level of 6 stars. While he heard almost nothing about their exploits during the Great Battle, the young man tries to understand how many strong fighters there are in the Magic Empire. Christian remembers his fallen comrades from his past life. He realizes that the Dark Forces had enough power to crush the Warriors of Light. The guy swears that he will do everything possible to prevent this from happening again. The young man clenches his fist. He thinks that he must gain strength as soon as possible. The hero approaches his father and asks if he called him. It is reported that the case takes place a month later. The man, putting pince-nez to his left eye, says that he must tell his offspring about something. Leiden looks surprised. He says that it seems that Christian has already reached the level of the 2nd star. The hero adjusts the hair on his head. The count looks intently at his son. Christian, raising his hands, declares that the father should not be so surprised, since the man was warned that this is exactly what will happen. Smiling, the guy looks at his father. He asks what he wanted to talk about, calling him at such an hour. A letter can be seen under the count's hand. He reports that he has received news from the main house. His brother is seen in front of the hero. The father informs the guy that he has declared him and turned to participate in the sacred dark ceremony. But approval came only for the youngest son. Sighing sadly, the count says that the young man probably knows the reason. The hero's eyes pop out of their sockets. Leiden informs the guy that he squandered the family wealth, was fond of women, drank a lot, broke valuable items and even stole. And most offensively, all this is true. The hero falls on his back. Leiden looks frightened at his unconscious son. He declares that such an attitude towards his offspring is simply outrageous. Christian, who has a band-aid on his head, asks if the Marquis of Langham personally made this decision. The Earl says that the old man is unlikely to be involved, as he has not much to say after what Ashid did. Father and son shout the name Royan de Baron at the same time. This is the character they are thinking of. The hero knows that he is the direct heir to the main house and the supposed star of the sacred dark ceremony. Above Royan's head, an unusual crown is seen emitting purple jets. It is reported that said ceremony is a ritual during which the pretenders take the pure darkness extracted from the interdimensional shadow. However, since its amount is limited, they engage in deadly battles to determine the best, meaning that the winners end up monopolizing most of the resulting darkness, which in turn is a major factor in choosing a prince, i.e., the heir to the family. The hero thinks that if Royan wins and gets all the darkness, becoming the 6th prince and achieving his goal will be incredibly difficult. The count, leaning on the table, declares that his son should not worry, as he will talk to the representatives of the main family again, and if this does not work, he will turn to Mary for help. Christian assures his father that there is no need to do this, and he will cope with everything himself. The count puts his hand on his son's shoulder and declares that he understands perfectly well that he has talent, and has changed a lot lately. He declares that this time the young man can rely on the help of adults. The guy has an extremely strange expression on his face. He states that he sincerely appreciates the intentions of his parent, but the villains have their own ways of solving problems. Leiden asks if the young man has any plan. Christian asks if anyone from the family of the Count of Tyraman participates in this ceremony. The man replies that the 3rd son of this family is declared for her. Leiden indignantly shouts that this damned bastard, along with Royan, said that Christian is not worthy to participate in the sacred dark ceremony. although he himself is some kind of degraded scoundrel whose only talent is to tame animals, and who should rather perform in the circus than participate in the ceremony. The hero understands that his father cares about him very much. We see a very strange creature. The guy asks his father to calm down and declares that he will shame those who doubt his skills. The young man says that, as far as he remembers, now is the time when Count Tyraman arranges an ebony hunt. Smiling, Christian declares that he will participate in this event as a dry man. Magnificent buildings are visible between the mountains, and the patriarch is informed of his return from a business trip to monitor Christian. The man sitting on the throne asks how the young man has shown himself. The answer is that he cannot be compared with anyone else. A man twirls a cane in his hands. He says that he finds it hard to believe it. A gray-haired old man declares that the guy he knew before was just a brainless idiot who thought he was a genius. Mary, standing in front of him, states that the young man is no longer the same as before. The man asks if Mary really thinks that this guy will be able to fulfill his old dream. The hero's aunt looks at the old man. Before us are parts of a clockwork and a chain. The woman thinks that this dream is to reverse fate itself and overcome death with the help of forbidden magic. She knows that the patriarch still clings to life only because he does not lose hope of fulfilling this dream. The woman says that she is not quite sure, but the guy is definitely the closest to making this dream come true. We see dark spots. The patriarch states that this is very interesting and he will be keeping an eye on this young man. He says that the guy does not seem to be able to take part in the upcoming Sacred Dark ceremony. Mary states that the main family has reached a consensus that Christian should not be allowed to participate in this competition, after which he asks if the patriarch will order otherwise. The hero stands on the edge of a sharp cliff. The man says that he should not interfere in trivial matters, and if the guy really is the beast that he has imagined, he will not be stopped by obstacles of this kind. Mary states that even if it is a beast, it is still very young, and it seems to her that it should be given a chance to blossom by gaining darkness during the upcoming ceremony. The old man, looking menacingly at the woman, cuts off the flow of her speech. Mary lowers her gaze. She thinks that the patriarch has always been like this, and the more expectations he has from someone, the stricter he is with that person. The patriarch, who has a cane in his hand, says that, as far as he can see, the woman likes the young man very much. The old man summons Bloodsucker. In the middle of the room, a red-haired character appears as if out of nowhere. Simon, the head butler of the Dark Mage clan, asks why the patriarch summoned him. The old man, without looking at the young man, states that he must have heard the conversation that took place here. He suggests that the patriarch seems to want him to watch the hero. The man states that the butler guessed his desire and must follow what the young man is doing before the Sacred Dark ceremony. Simon, bowing low, says that he will carry out the order of his master, after which he asks permission to play a prank on the young man. Mary looks at Simon anxiously. The old man, whose eyes are shining maliciously, demands that the butler not allow himself anything superfluous. He happily sticks out his sharp tongue. Simon vanishes into thin air, stating that he understands everything. Mary closes her eyes. She really hopes that her nephew will cope with all the tests. A carriage is driving along a deserted street. The hero looks out the window and thinks that thanks to his talent, he quickly reached the level of 2 stars, but his stamina and mana reserves are proportional to the time spent on training, and he is still very far from the 3rd star. A black sphere is visible above the incredibly strange creature. The hero thinks that this is the reason why he needs ebony, which helps to accumulate magic in a very short period of time, and fortunately, the 3rd son of the Count of Tyraman gave him reason to consider himself an opponent just before his family's planned hunt for ebony. The young man understands that this is real luck, while he realizes that the capture of Karatsu does not mean a guaranteed receipt of ebony. The carriage stops. The hero thinks that he must fulfill a special condition. A frightened Grantel runs up to the guy getting out of the carriage and asks what brought the young master here today. Christian asks how the fat man is doing. The young man looks at the man in bewilderment and asks why he came running empty-handed. Grantel screams in horror that this is not true. In his hands you can see the outlines of a bag. The man says that he simply could not come with anything. The hero brushes it off. Money is scattered on the ground. Grantel looks at the young man in fright, who declares that it is a pathetic parody of a gift, and the fat man does not seem to understand his situation. Raising his hands, Christian says he has been informed that Grantel is engaged in illegal business. The owner of the casino is depicted as a bird. The hero reports that the fat man evades taxes on gambling activities, kidnaps people and beats them, and also steals goods from the merchant guild. Grantel is horrified to ask what the young master wants from him. Christian declares that he will turn a blind eye to all these crimes, but the man must immediately stop this frenzy of activity. Grantel replies that of course he will do it. The young man says that he needs something other than that. Looking into the eyes of the frightened scoundrel, he says that he must get a great pill for him. Grantel trembles. He informs that this item is only available on the black market, and recently the price of it has skyrocketed. The hero asks if this is really the case. Smiling, the guy asks the banshee if she's ready to act. Marie giggles. Showing off her sharp teeth, the girl declares that torture is her main specialty. Grantel screams in horror. Falling to his knees, the fat man promises that he will definitely get a great pill for the young man, who declares that this should have been said from the very beginning. With a wink, Christian says that the casino owner should also get a sharp dagger and some armor for him. Grantel looks at the young man in bewilderment. The carriage drives away. The hero shouts that he doesn't need anything else. Kneeling Grantel, with various bodily fluids flowing over his face, mentally calls the hero a son of a bitch. Marie asks her master if they are going back to the Count's estate now. Christian replies that they should make another stop. The guy, with a sign next to his head, demands that the coachman stop the carriage. The door opens, the hero is greeted. The young man looks around and chooses what he wants to buy. The clerk puts a bottle of pink liquid on the table. Marie asks why the guy needs it, and Marie replies that he might need it. Banshee, covering his mouth, asks why the guy needed an aphrodisiac. Christian, with Marie visible overhead, stands at the counter. Covering her mouth with her hands, the girl asks if her master already needs something like this. The hero angrily says that this is not the case at all. The Banshee, giggling, declares that he understands everything. Blue clouds are visible behind the Banshee's head. Christian tells her that the aphrodisiac is not for him, but for someone else. Marie asks if this other person is the Count. A shadow creeps over the guy's face. He declares that his father is getting old, and he needs to be looked after. The seller looks at his buyer in amazement. Christian points the finger at the merchant and threatens that this information must remain secret, as it can discredit the Count's honor, who replies that he will not say a word. The hero stands in front of his brother and father, addresses the young man. Christian, pointing at him, demands that the boy address him by his title. He immediately corrects himself and calls the hero a noble king emperor. Looking at his brother, says that as far as he has heard, hunting ebony is very dangerous. He asks that Christian be careful not to get hurt. The hero says that seems to be worried about him. The boy states that he is only worried because it will be sad if he is not able to have another duel with the noble king emperor in the future. The father, looking at his eldest son, asks his offspring to stop exchanging barbs. He declares that Christian should severely punish the bastards from Tyramin. Christian, smiling, declares that he will definitely do it and return home with good news. Leiden, looking at his youngest son, asks what kind of king emperor he is, who replies that his father does not need to know. A creature with huge ears, standing in front of the Tyramin manor, once again repeats that passage is prohibited. A young man standing behind the hero says that they were forced to stand at the gate, and now they are being chased away. A green creature that looks like a goblin asks if the doorman knows who is in front of him. We see the hero's face. He hears that he is not allowed inside on the orders of the young Mr. Auros, who said that such scoundrels do not deserve to be treated kindly. Christian, looking down on the big-eared character, states that, in fact, he is suggesting that he himself find a place in the capital where he can stay. The interlocutor replies that the characters state everything correctly. The hero's companion indignantly asks for permission to cut the throat of this bastard. Christian asks who in this case pays for the hotel, where he is not allowed. The answer follows that the guy may believe that it is the Tyramin family. The hero, smiling, asks again. We see a brilliant fountain. Now we have the upper part of the magnificent structure in front of us. Christian and his companions approach him. The goblin, looking up in shock, asks how much a room in this establishment will cost. The hero, putting his finger to his nose, reports that the price is 100,000 rupees, after which he says that the opportunity to spend a fortune does not come every day. There are suitcases on the ground. Christian states that his companions have an hour to sort things out, after which they will go to drink. A blue light is visible in the slightly opened suitcase. The young man asks if his companions heard any unusual sound. Marie, happily throwing up her hand, shouts to the young gentleman that he has chosen just a wonderful apartment. The girl admiringly says that she will be very happy to wait for the hero in this place. Christian indignantly asks what the Banshee is doing here. Raising her hands, Marie states that she broke into the young man's luggage because she is his maid who promised to serve him forever. The girl says that the young man now looks just touching, and, as it seems to her, he has missed communicating with the female sex for a long time. The hero angrily says that all this is not true. Auros, the third son of the Tyramin family, holds up a piece of paper and asks what the Count does here. Christian, smiling, states that he seems to be the star of the upcoming hunt for ebony. He reports that he was told to find a place for himself, which he did, after which he wonders why Auros is so excited. Marie and a goblin are seen next to the hero. The guy states that the nobleman cannot sleep in a cheap hotel, so he had to buy a decent mansion. He says that Auros should not be angry, because some 100,000 rupees will clearly not ruin him. Auros, whose lower face we see, hears that, to be honest, the hero just wanted to teach a lesson to the rough-haired gatekeeper. The guy crushes the Count. A formidable-looking leopard appears in front of him. Auros asks if the young man really decided to die. Christian stares at the young man, realizing that he has witnessed the application of the Tyramin family's management magic. The hero imagines two tamers. He thinks that unlike the taming techniques that are accepted within the Alliance, the magic of the dark side subdues animals through fear and domination, and the demons use formulas that paralyze the mind of the beast and cause it to hallucinate, fear and excitement. A magical formation is visible on the leopard. The young man understands that what he is seeing now is complex, and this is not an art that can be mastered in a short time. The guy thinks that all this does not really matter, and he will just give a good beating to the trainer. Christian tells Marie, who is next to her, that in order to kill this scary cat, they may need a gun. The Banshee giggles mockingly. A shaft appears in the hero's hand. He beckons his opponent with his hand and asks what he is waiting for. The guy suggests that Auros attack him like a demon. Holding out his right hand in front of him, Auros shouts that the bastard shouldn't give orders here, and adds a couple of unflattering epithets. The leopard opens its mouth wide. The animal clings to the shaft exposed by the hero. The leopard's teeth crumble wood. Christian flies far back. Rising to his feet, he squints one eye and declares that it was very good. However, according to him, it is unfair to attack 1 and 2. Christian, pointing his finger at his opponent, states that if he wins, he will join the hunt as a bodyguard rather than as a drive man. He says that he is willing to spend time on it, and calls the opponent a cunning little deceiver. Alrose holds his leopard by the neck. He calls the hero a cheeky bastard. Gritting his teeth with anger, the guy shouts that he will bring the hero to his knees and make him beg for mercy. A leopard with its paw outstretched is visible above the hero's head. Alrose, sitting on his animal, smiles happily. The claws of a wild cat scratch the paving slabs. Alrose asks where his opponent went. In the next second, he receives a powerful blow to the back of the head. The young man shakes his head, trying to come to his senses. The hero, rotating the weapon in front of him, asks if the guy is in pain and if he will cry. He warns that tears will not help the tamer. Alrose, his mouth wide open, angrily demands that Christian shut up. Above the hero's head, a skeleton with glowing eyes is visible. The leopard looks at this creature in horror. The animal rears up under its rider. A trembling leopard is seen next to Alrose. The blonde says that this bastard seems to have actually managed to scare Choco. Christian, smiling, rubs his chin. He says that he only used a pathetic 2-star illusion spell, and now he is sure that the paltry magic of animal control that his opponent has mastered does not pose any danger to him. A glowing formation is visible under Alrose's feet. He demands that the damn bastard shut his stinking mouth. A horse appears from the magic circle. The hero, putting his weapon on his shoulders, asks what Alrose can know about damn scum. He asks in surprise. Christian strikes. Alrose gets hit on the forehead. The young man falls on his back. Smiling, the hero declares that the damn scum are not waiting for the transformation to end or the spell casting time to end. The horse shakes his head. The servant, looking at the hero, asks if he is sure that what he is doing is right. Christian states that they still need to kill time, and so they also have a good rest. There are cards and chips on the table. The servant says that it is difficult to call it rest. The hero turns to Marie, who is standing next to him. He asks the young man what is wrong with the villain behaving like a scoundrel. The banshee, giggling, says that her master is absolutely right, but he should not drink alcohol. Here is a glass of ginger ale. Christian looks very dissatisfied. He wants real alcohol, not what was poured for him. The long-eared shorty and the bear frown at the hero, the first of them wondering why Lord Alrose ordered them to keep an eye on this bastard. Christian turns to the observers and asks if they would like to join him. Winking, the young man raises his index finger. He declares that he beat their master unconscious, and he will not come to his senses until tomorrow. The guy declares that he will not tell anyone if they keep him company. Strange creatures thank the young man and declare that he can continue to have fun in his own company. The hero invites them in this case to sit down somewhere and just enjoy the spectacle. The sun is setting outside the window. Christian says that everyone who is next to him can drink, including his portion. There is a remark that the guy will definitely lose in the next hand. It's already night outside. The bear and the long-eared shorty are staring at someone, their eyes bulging out. The hero and his comrades are lying on the table. One of the creatures assigned to them declares that the scoundrel fully justifies his reputation, and there is no point in watching him anymore. He offers to make a report and go home. On the hero's forehead there is a map. The young man opens his eyes. He sits down on the table. Christian looks out the window. A banshee is visible next to the guy. He realizes that the annoying bastards have finally left him alone. The hero takes something out of his bag. He asks Marie not to follow him where he is going now. The girl looks saddened. She states that there is an aphrodisiac in the things that Christian takes with him. The young man looks at the banshee with displeasure. She says that now she understands that this remedy was not intended for the count. The hero asks again in surprise. Marie imagines her master sitting surrounded by 2 beauties. She declares that she will be upset if she can't serve him before going to bed as usual, but she understands that nocturnal adventures are also necessary for a young master. Marie gives 2 thumbs. The hero angrily asks if there is a limit to the girl's bad imagination. Stars shine over Kython mountain range. Christian, looking around, thinks that he is in the secret domain of the Tyraman family. He feels the oppressive energy of demonic beasts and realizes that the rumors about this place are not lying. The young man lifts a tree branch, thinking that there must be hunting grounds somewhere here. He sees 2 guards standing in front of the fence, and realizes that he has found what he needs. Torches are burning over the heads of the guards. The young man thinks that this object is guarded rather carelessly. Christian turns a blind eye to the guy. The guy is very glad that he learned the magic of invisibility from Marie. The hero recalls his conversation with the banshee and how the girl asked who her master was going to peep on, being invisible. He himself then replied that Marie's head was filled with obscene thoughts. Christian, smiling, walks past the guard. He enters the territory guarded by the fighters. The young man sees an illuminated altar in front of him. He touches the floor, realizing that this is where the final hunting ceremony takes place. The hero realizes that he is in a very creepy place. A big-eared girl with a stick in her hand says that in order to get the darkness, you need to force Karatsu to voluntarily part with his life. She paints a fairly clear picture on the ground and declares that the creature must experience such an unbearable fear that even death will seem the easiest thing to do. We see a bright flash. The girl says that unbearable fear and ecstatic joy are separated by the thinnest line. In front of us is a sphere divided into 2 multicolored parts. The girl reports that in some barely perceptible moment, the useless ashen turns into darkness. Christian looks down thoughtfully. Now he understands why the House of Tyraman, which controls demonic beasts through fear, always turns out to be the most successful in the hunt for darkness. The guy mentally thanks Lena, with whom he just remembered. The young man remembers the leopard. He thinks that, as the girl said, he originally planned to steal the secret technique of the Tyraman house. A closed vial lies in the hero's hand. Christian thinks he will use an aphrodisiac to cloud Karatsu's mind and then take away the darkness. The moon is shining in the sky. The hero understands that he does not have enough time to steal and master the name technique, so he wants to find some other way. The hero is alarmed by something. He looks around in fright, trying to figure out who is next to him. Christian sees a lighted meadow. In front of him is a young man with a bright badge shining on his chest. He goes forward. A bat flies over the forest. Christian stands at the entrance to the cave. He seems a little frightened. The hero goes inside. He covers his mouth with his hand, feeling an exorbitant amount of evil energy. The young man sees a red magic formation. He realizes that there is a high-level barrier of dark magic in front of him. Red circles fill the entire space. A source of sinister energy is visible between the rocks. The young man realizes that it seems to be the rift of Gehenna in front of him. The young man's imagination draws several terrible creatures. The guy understands that Gehenna, that is, the world of demons and devils, is connected to the human world with the help of this gap. Magic formations of various sizes can be seen next to the hero. The young man, covering his face with his fist, looks up. He realizes that he can lure Karatsu here. He remembers that he has a vial of aphrodisiac, which is the perfect bait. Christian smiles, thinking that the hunt will be incredibly interesting. A red bat hangs from the ceiling. She flaps her wing. Simon appears in front of us. He could not even imagine that the hero, a thoroughly spoiled young man, would turn out to be such an interesting character. The guy recalls how the young man beat his opponent. He thinks that Christian not only beat the shit out of the heir to the Tyraman family, but also deceived the observers assigned to him. The hero is standing on the altar. Simon thinks that the guy then entered the forbidden zone and made some cunning plans there. The vampire, smiling, declares that now he wants to arrange an even tougher prank on the guy. The young man is going to break up. He stretches out his hand to it. Blood drips onto magical formations. It immediately evaporates. Simon stretches out his hand. Someone calls him a traitor and asks what he is looking for. In front of us are mountains covered with lush vegetation. A sharp shaft is lowered to the ground. Alros holds a flag in his hands. Christian, smiling, whispers in the boy's ear that he is playing an incredibly cool character even after being beaten up like a puppy. Alros yelling for the young man to shut up. The hero's hand is on the sword. Alros says that he is playing the hero who brought Gruna here, which he cannot even use. Christian states that this sword works even better than the stick with which he beat the young man. The hero asks if Alros wants to test it on his own skin. The guy is shaking with anger. Placing his hand on his belt, he states that the conversations are over, after which he orders the hunters to move out and start luring Karatsu to the altar. They make it clear that they understand the order. Alros also orders the guards and mages to follow him to the altar, where they will wait for their prey. A red bat hangs above the hero's head. Alros, looking angrily at the hero, demands that this bastard answer that he understands the order. Christian confirms the receipt of the order. Young people are standing at the altar. The pointy-eared guy orders the hero to take a place in the corner and not to get in the way under his feet. The young man replies that everything suits him, and the less work the better. But he warns that in this case he will think 100 times before providing help if it is suddenly needed. A hunter with unusual ears tries to rush after the hero, but Alros stops him. He advises his comrade to save energy for hunting. Christian hears that he is called a scoundrel and ordered to guard the flag. The hero declares that the order has been accepted, and he will obediently guard the flag like a very good scoundrel. With his arms folded on his chest, the young man sits under a tree. He thinks that he will still see how the hunters cope with the monster. A dagger and a small ball are seen next to the smiling hero. Christian thinks that everything is going according to his plan, and it is very good that Grantel delivered him the dagger and Whitewood in time. The casino owner calls the guy a cursed demon. Alros and his companion turn their heads. Christian understands that Karatsu is coming. We have a very strange creature in front of us. It is reported that it is a 4th-class Karatsu demon beast. The animal's eyes shine brightly. The hero does not understand why this creature seems so attractive to him. Karatsu tilts his head to the right. Someone asks Alros if he is ready. The pointy-eared young man suggests that the binding ritual begin as soon as possible. Alros puts his right hand forward. A huge bird bows to him. A young man leans towards Karatsu. In front of us is a huge bird's eye. The winged creature abruptly raises its head. Alros looks at him in bewilderment. In the next second, he misses a powerful punch. The big-eared guy leans over his master. He asks if he is okay. White spots are visible around the tail of the Karatsu. Someone shouts that the bird is using venom. The mage, gritting his teeth from the tension, generates streams of blue energy. His comrade orders the rest of the hunters to immediately form a defensive formation. The young people try to restrain the monster. Christian thinks that all this will not help, since Karatsu has already taken an aphrodisiac and literally went crazy. The hunter desperately tries to restrain the bird. Covering his face with his hand, the guy states that he took the antidote in advance. But all of them are in serious danger if the effects of the poison continue for a long time. Covering his face with his hand, he orders his comrades to do everything they can to restrain the bird. Karatsu charges forward, throwing people around. Alros looks after the retreating creature. Someone calls out to the guy. The blonde opens one eye. Amazement appears on his face. Christian, in front of whom a trembling bird stands, states that House Tyramin, despite its enviable reputation, seems to be completely powerless, and that is why the situation had to be saved by an outsider, who was even given the task of guarding the flag. The young man says that if Alrose starts calling him Big Brother, he may get help. Alrose, seething with indignation, calls the hero a psycho and states that he may not expect anything like this from him. Christian reasonably asks what the young man will do in this case. Looking over his shoulder, the young man states that Alrose doesn't seem to have much of a choice. Hunters cover their faces with their hands. The third son of House Tyramin grits his teeth with rage. Standing behind the hero, he asks this bastard to help him. Christian replies that he will do it, but warns that the guy must remember his promise. A bright flash is visible near Karatsu's head. Christian puts his left hand forward. Purple jets wrap around the body of the feathered creature. Alrose is shocked to ask how the young man knows the magic of binding. The hero mockingly wonders if the guy really thinks that he is the only one who can use it. The young man's hand is visible under the bird's beak. He thinks that he is not even using a secret technique, but mid-level binding magic. The hero pulls on the feathers that wrap around Karatsu's torso. We see the guy's clenched fist. Christian sits on the back of the bird. She takes off. Alrose, holding out his left hand, shouts for the young man to wait, and warns that he is moving towards Gehenna. Christian, smiling, looks over his shoulder. The bird, on the back of which the young man is sitting, stops, and begins to make strange sounds. Behind the magical formations in the depths of the cave, a spatial rift is visible. The hero asks Karatsu if this is the first time she has felt the evil that comes from Gehenna, and states that the bird can be afraid as much as it wants. The winged creature raises its head in horror. His eyes turn yellow. Christian grabs his dagger. He strikes. Hunters run up to the bloodied hero. Alrose calls him a scoundrel and asks if he is okay. Raising his left hand, the young man is frightened and declares that this cave is a great danger, and they must get out of here immediately. Christian, next to whom Karatsu is lying on the ground, asks if the young man is scared, and what he is going to do now. The hero demonstrates a glowing ball and declares that it is not black, but ashen. The pointy-eared guy who stands behind Alrose is shocked. He approaches the hero and, cursing, declares that if this idiot had not appeared out of nowhere, then everything would have been fine. Alrose asks his friend to stop swearing and calm down. The young man, rubbing the back of his head, thanks the hero for saving his people. Christian, who is holding an ash ball in his hands, hears that thanks to him, it was possible to avoid casualties. We see the scheme of deception that the young man used. Hearing such words from Alrose, Christian feels very uncomfortable, since he replaced the black ball with an ash one. The hero looks like a real fraud in his own eyes, while he understands that he must continue to play the role of the bad guy. Pointing at Alrose, he states that he should call him Big Brother, as promised. The blonde asks in amazement. Folding his arms on his chest, the hero declares that promises must be kept. Alrose asks when he agreed to something like this, after which he reminds that he is actually 2 years older than the hero. Fright appears on the faces of young people. The hunters, clutching their heads, fall to the ground. Alrose looks up in shock and asks what the hell is going on. A terrifying creature with glowing eyes appears next to the young people. Christian looks frightened to his left. The giant monster declares that he no longer remembers the last time he saw such a toy. Christian realizes that he is in front of the demon of Gehenna. Alrose stands in front of the hero. He declares that this bastard is a stranger here, so he can just get away from here. Christian draws attention to a bat hanging from the ceiling. A small dagger is visible in the guy's bloody hand. The hero throws it at the winged creature. The weapon pierces the bat. The picture Simon saw in front of him disappears. The vampire remembers how he negotiated with the demon, and tries to understand when Christian managed to notice his observer. Simon thinks that he planned to recall the hellish creature after a while, but now that the familiar that provided the teleportation has been destroyed, it will be impossible to do so. The young man's eyes are shining. He thinks that if he is even a little late, not only the young master will die, but also all the hunters who are next to him. Simon soars above the forest. The dagger falls to the floor of the cave. The demon of Gehenna asks what games the young man is playing. Christian, smiling, declares that he hates being spied upon. The monster, laughing, says that for a man who is about to die, the young man has too many unnecessary fears. We see that the monster has 4 upper limbs. The hero thinks that in his past life, in the era of destruction, he would have easily dealt with this demon. Despite the fact that he has at least 5 stars, the guy understands that right now he has very little chance in the battle with this opponent. Christian raises his hand. The hunters lose consciousness. Alrose, looking angrily at the young man, asks what the hell he is doing. He says that they were supposed to work together, and the villain instead puts his allies to sleep. The hero realizes that the third son of the Tyramin family has decent resistance to magic. Christian stabs the young man in the chest and demands that he simply pass out. The blonde falls to the ground. The demon of Gehenna looks at the young man with interest. He asks if he is going to sacrifice these young people to him. The monster says that if the guy does this, he will spare him and even bless him. Christian takes up arms and declares that the monster talks too much. The guy says that he has an iron rule not to enter into negotiations with representatives of his species. The hero points the weapon at his enemy. Demon of Gehenna looks thoughtfully at the guy. He realizes that he has a gruna in his hand and declares that he must pay tribute to the courage of the young man who decided to do such a stupid thing. The monster declares that the sword that the guy is holding in his hand is only good for scrap metal. Demon of Gehenna puts his upper left hand forward. A black spot appears on the hero's weapon. The young man, having received a powerful blow, flies back. Blood is flowing from his mouth. The Demon of Gehenna, waving all his arms, declares that even now he will agree to spare the guy if he sacrifices his comrades to him. Christian spits in the monster's face. The demon, on whose right cheek you can see the saliva of the hero, calls him a worm. The young man asks why the vile creature decided that he could not use the sacred sword against him. The hero strikes and then drops to the ground. A small black ball is visible in front of it. The blade turns yellow. The monster asks in amazement how the demon can use the power of light. Christian, smiling, asks if his opponent has begun to panic. Putting all four hands together, the monster generates energy. He calls the hero a bastard and promises to tear him into small pieces. A huge red sphere is visible above the young man's head. Christian is moving forward. He strikes using his Dead Sea Flash skill. Yellow energy collides with red energy. The Demon of Gehenna says in amazement that this simply cannot be. Yellow energy fills the entire space. The monster falls to the ground in front of the hero. The young man is breathing heavily. The young man's allies are lying on the ground. He thinks that his current body still can't withstand such tension. Christian falls face down. He loses consciousness. A young blonde man asks the hero if he was really able to copy Dead Sea Flash after seeing this skill used just once. The hero raises his sword above his head. He asks if it is necessary to strike. His comrade declares that the guy is simply incredible. A bright flash is visible above the body of water. Evan says that the Dead Sea Flash is a stream of light that cuts through the Dead Sea. The blonde says that he used this sword technique, but was never deemed worthy to bring the light of the Meyer house. Evan, looking at his friend, declares that he can become the light that will save the world. A hand with long nails reaches out to the water, under the surface of which the unconscious hero is visible. In front of us is the lower part of a woman's face. She declares that all this is incredibly interesting, and that her name is Mepina. A pointy-eared young man appears under the red formations. He says that they have found them and must help immediately. The guy orders the potions to be delivered here. Mepina informs that she ranks first in the 7 circles of Gehenna. The hero's eyes are closed. The woman says that she will follow the young man with great interest. In front of us is the estate of the Tyraman family. Christian complains that he has a headache. The young man is sitting on the bed. He cannot believe that 2 days have passed, and he believes that he has wasted a lot of time. The hero feels his body and realizes that everything is fine with him. Christian notices a small pouch on the table. He realizes that the ball of darkness is lying where he left it. Sighing, the guy looks into the pouch. He remembers a demoness named Mepina and thinks that unwanted attention is exactly what he needs now. A blonde man with a bare torso raises his index finger. Christian thinks that demons who demonstrate their talent at an early age sometimes receive the blessing of high-ranking beings, which further helps them grow quickly, while the guy believes that this path of development is intended for losers who themselves are not capable of noticeable progress. Christian looks at the door. He thinks that besides, if Mepina represents 7 circles, then it can't be too strong. Count Tyraman, smiling, calls the guy by name and asks how he feels. The hero, trying to get out of bed, greets the head of the family, who, raising his hand, declares that there is no need to get up in front of him, and asks just to listen to him. Rubbing the top of his head, the young man looks at the man. Blood stains are visible on the magic formation. The Count states that yesterday he sent a squad of scouts to investigate the cave, and they found out that someone had made changes to the magic circle sealing the entrance to the Gehenna. The man says that fortunately, the demon that escaped from there was summoned back before it could fully manifest. Alro stands next to his father. The man states that, nevertheless, even in a short time, the monster could easily destroy everyone who was in the cave. Christian, sitting on the bed, says that he understands everything. While he understands that the Count is convinced that the demon was recalled, the guy understands that no one will believe him anyway if he says that he killed this creature, and besides, he will not be able to explain how he did it. The Count, closing his eyes, declares that, first of all, he must apologize for the fact that, believing the rumors, he treated the guy as a worthless idler. We see a short-haired man who did not let the young man into the mansion. The Count bows to the young man and thanks him for everything he has done, stating that the house of Tyraman is now indebted to him. Raising his right hand, the young man declares that there is no need to thank him, and he, as a member of the Dark Mage clan, should have helped, since all members of this organization are one family. Christian is shown playing thimbles. He recalls cheating arrows with a black sphere, and he is tormented by his conscience. The Count looks down thoughtfully, repeating the hero's words about his family. Raising his left hand, he declares that if the guy needs something from him, he can voice his request, and if it is within reason, it will definitely be fulfilled. We see the lower part of the young man's face, and he states that in this case he wishes for House Tyraman to reconcile with House Khazar. The man looks at the young man in surprise. Heads of families shake hands. The hero says that instead of feuding and sharpening their claws on each other, families can become competitors who become stronger through healthy rivalry in the world. He states that such relationships are much more suitable for families considered blood relatives of each other. Clouds are visible through the window. In front of us is a mustachioed man in glasses. The Count declares that Christian probably knows that bad relations between families are the result of the intrigues of the main family, where they are well aware that if the side branches unite then the top will be in danger, and that is why they are kept on a leash like chained dogs. Folding his hands on his chest, the Count asks the hero if he wants to say that they should rebel against the main family. He replies that this is not what he means at all. The The guy, smiling, declares that he only wants to say that they do not have to be pawns in someone's insidious game. The man declares that Christian thinks far ahead, and his thoughts are very deep. The young man thanks the head of the family for the compliment, and asks if he will agree to fulfill his request. Sighing heavily, the Count declares that it seems that he needs to contact Count Khazar, or rather, a scoundrel named Leiden, with whom he has not communicated for a very long time. Christian smiles. He imagines his hands reaching out to each other, and thinks that if he continues to gather allies in this way, one by one, then when the age of destruction comes, he will have a great force at his disposal that can withstand the blow. The Count hits his son on the back and shouts for him to stop staring at the hero. He reminds him that the young man wanted to give him something. Auro says that his father is absolutely right. He hands the young man a ball and asks him to take this object. The hero understands that he is being given an ash shard. Auro states that when he woke up in the cave, it was just lying on the ground, and since the hero was unconscious, he decided to take it and give it back later. Christian mockingly states that if the guy is really grateful enough to want someone else's thing back, he can safely do it. Auro is furious and calls the young man a little scoundrel. The Count laughs happily. He says that he is also very grateful, so he will give something to the hero. In front of us is an elegant blue pendant. The man says that this is a stone that can summon a 4th-level beast. Christian understands that he is given a very rare thing. Smiling, the head of the Tyraman family states that, in addition, he will send a message approving the boy's participation in the sacred dark ceremony. The Count says that he sincerely hopes that the young man will show a good result in these competitions. Christian, smiling radiantly, thanks father and son for gifts and support. The Tyraman family members move away from the bed. The Count says that the hero must now have a good rest. Christian closes his eyes with satisfaction. Opening them, he declares that whoever is watching him can now come out. Jets of dark energy are visible in the air. Simon, putting his hand to his chest, bows. He states that it means that the fact that Christian discovered his presence in the cave was not a coincidence. The vampire states that even the Count of Tyraman did not notice anything, but the young man saw him despite his disguise. The vampire is reflected in the hero's eyes. Christian states that he felt blood. Looking at the guy, Simon states that it is a great honor for him to finally meet the hero. He introduces himself as Simon, the head butler of the Dark Mage clan. The hero looks thoughtfully at the young man. He knows that the head butler is one of the closest characters to Lord Noga. Then he remembers that he has already heard this name somewhere. The hero clenches his fist. He realizes that he is the head of the Blood Shadow Corps. In the young man's memory, unpleasant characters with masks on their faces pop up. He remembers that the Blood Shadow Corps is a squad of psychopaths that engaged in mass murder and terror against both the forces of light and the squads of darkness. And its leader was an 8-star demon who by the end of the Age of Destruction received the 9th star and became the 10th Demon King. A dark silhouette is visible above the fighter's head. Christian recalls that Simon has brought them to the brink of life and death countless times, and he, on top of that, is the son of Blood Demon King. The hero remembers with horror the horned creature with a sword in his hand. Simon, smiling, states that he could not even imagine that the young master from the House of Khazar would turn out to be such a sophisticated gentleman who is also capable of destroying a very powerful demon. Christian looks at the interlocutor with apprehension, trying to understand how he knows about his victory over the demon of Gehenna. The guy remembers that he destroyed the familiar who was following him, and suggests that Simon could have seen how he himself used Dead Sea Flash. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, the young man declares that he has no idea what the vampire is talking about, who assumes that the young man seems to be pretending a little. Simon, standing on one knee, examines the magical formation. He informs the young man that once in the cave, he found no trace of the demon, which means that the monster was not recalled, but destroyed without a trace. The vampire states that the exquisite work of the young man shook him to the core. A thought comes to the hero's mind. Simon asks if the guy can explain what happened in the cave. Simon, raising his left hand, states that the hero should know that Lord Noga will receive a report on everything he is about to say. The vampire urges to treat this conversation as an assessment exam. Christian asks why, being in his right mind, he should give away his trump cards. Simon, standing in front of the bed on which the hero is sitting, asks in bewilderment. The young man says that if he were Lord Noga, he would hardly prefer a fool who reveals his secrets just because he was politely asked to do so. The young man says that most likely the Lord will prefer someone who hides his claws to the end. Simon looks at the young man in amazement. Folding his arms over his chest, the vampire declares that the young master is a truly amazing character. Christian asks if Simon wants to apologize. We see the participants in the conversation through the window. The vampire asks what he should apologize for. The hero declares that no one can tell the difference between a callback and complete destruction from the traces left on the battlefield, and that is why Count Tyraman assumed that he was dealing with the first of these phenomena. We again see a magical formation stained with blood. The hero asks why Simon is so sure that complete destruction has occurred. Pointing his finger at the vampire, the hero says that the conclusion is obvious, and the head butler himself summoned the demon of Gehenna. Simon looks at his accuser in shock. Christian, smiling, declares that the actions of his interlocutor almost led to the death of members of the noble family. He asks what, in his opinion, Lord Noga will do if he finds out about the antics of his subordinate. Looking down, the young man says that he is ready to be punished. Christian replies that he should not worry about it, since he is not going to tell anyone about this incident. Simon asks again, The young man says that he will nevertheless remember it, and will believe that the vampire owes him a great debt. The butler's feet are in front of us. He asks if this can be considered a deal. Christian says that he agrees to treat their contract as such. Jets of black energy rise up around Simon. He says that he understands everything and will not forget the mercy that the young master showed him. The vampire declares that he was glad to talk to the young man, and is sure that they will meet again soon. Simon says that he will wait for the young man's visit to the estate of the main family. Christian sits thoughtfully on the bed. He looks out the window, realizing that Simon will be one of the key characters of the Age of Destruction, which means that it would be nice to establish a strong bond with him. The guy understands that only such actions can change the future. Suitcases are visible above the head of the hero standing in front of the mirror. Marie tells her master that the preparations for the return are over. The hero praises the girl for her excellent work. Someone grabs the door handle. Alrose looks into the room. Christian recognizes him. The guy asks if the young man is really already leaving. Pointing his finger at the interlocutor, the hero says that he should address him by his title. Alrose asks in surprise. Christian says that yesterday, when his father was with Alrose, he did not pay attention to irreverence. But the guy must still keep his promise. The hero declares that from now on he must call him his older brother. Alrose reminds that he is 2 years older than the hero. There are green chairs next to the window. Christian asks what Alrose wanted to ask him. He replies that he came to warn the hero. Looking down excitedly, the guy says that Christian said during the previous meeting that they are all one family, and after hearing this, he wants to warn the young man. Royan de Baron smiles, folding his arms over his chest. Alrose says that Christian most likely already suspects this, but Lord Royan opposed his participation in the sacred dark ceremony the most. The guy states that both young people have a 2-star level, but the hero must understand that the capabilities of the main house and the side branches are incomparable. Jets of multicolored energy rise above the exquisite glass. Alrose says that the older family can use the best elixirs, the vision of the main line and the blessing of dark magic, and they generally have much more opportunities, so Christian is seen by them more as prey than as a competitor. The hero smiles. Looking at Alrose, he calls him a younger brother and warns him not to participate in this year's sacred dark ceremony. The guy looks shocked at the hero. Alrose is furious. He shouts that after overcoming the difficulties, he came to warn the hero of the danger, and he seems to want to monopolize dark magic. Christian, pointing at himself, states that any opponent he meets at the ceremony will regret it. He asks that Alrose remember it. The third son of the Tyraman family, gritting his teeth in anger, calls the hero a cocky jerk, who calmly turns to his maid and says that they must go. Patting the guy on the shoulder, the hero asks him to think everything over carefully and not regret his decision later. In front of us is the estate of Count Khazar. Tern asks in bewilderment if his brother really wants to go to the training hall immediately after returning. The mustachioed servant replies that Christian is going to train alone until the very beginning of the sacred dark ceremony. He asks the boy to calm down. Tern looks at the back of his brother walking between the white columns. Christian turns around when he hears the boy call him the noble King Emperor. Raising his left hand, Tern reminds the hero of the promise he made, namely that they were supposed to have a duel after the hero returned home. Christian looks at the boy in surprise, realizing that he has grown a lot since their last meeting, and is now somewhere in the middle of the second level. He says that he is very busy now and needs to train. Tern tries to object. Drops of sweat roll down the boy's cheeks. The hero remembers that his brother will also participate in the sacred dark ceremony, and it seems to him that this may be a serious problem. Raising his left hand, Christian asks his brother to wait. He promises that he will arrange a duel with him after he finishes his training. The hero offers the boy to also start training. Tern asks if his brother can make a concession to him. Pointing his finger at the hero, the boy declares that he must be prepared for the fact that next time he will meet with a much stronger opponent. The hero replies that he really hopes so. Tern moves away from his brother, who notes for himself that the boy is very stubborn. The hero remembers a girl with blue hair who asks him to make a promise. The young man, smiling, thinks that Tern is acting exactly like this baby. Christian is sitting on the bed. In front of him lies a black sphere. The young man examines the orb. He realizes that there are 2 weeks left before the sacred dark ceremony. Christian bites off almost half of the dark ball. He covers his mouth with his hands, feeling a very strong energy. The hero is lying on the bed. The young man's hair turns white. He realizes that the pill has turned out to be much more powerful than he expected. A dark sphere emits a light glow. The hero realizes that Ash energy has been added to the darkness. The bird looks up in admiration. Christian realizes that Karatsu experienced ecstasy at the moment of death, and the ball absorbed it. The young man thinks that this is why it is believed that the mind has difficulty absorbing darkness. The young man's hand is on the bed. He thinks it doesn't concern him too much. Energy spreads through the body of a young man. A bright light flashes in his chest. He thinks that now there is only Ash energy left. Christian thinks that demons usually get rid of it with the help of a mentor, but he is not going to throw away such a valuable thing for nothing. We see a bright flash. Energy swirls over the head of the guy who has closed his eyes. He thinks that he will collect it in his core. The hero's eyes glow. The guy lowers his eyelids. A red-haired woman standing on the balcony allows them to enter, and the servant states that he has brought a report on the investigation. The woman reaches out to take the envelope and scroll. The servant states that an incident occurred. A demon was summoned during the hunt for darkness, but the young man managed to survive. The servant reports that this is why the investigation took longer than planned. The woman praises him for his good work. Putting his hand to his chest, the young man says that if his mistress has no more questions, then he will go. In the envelope there is a photo of the hero. A girl with purple eyes carefully examines the scroll handed to her. It is reported that we are looking at Lady Idrine. Turn, knocking on the door, declares that the appointed day has arrived, reportedly 15 days later. The boy hears that he can come in. Christian is getting dressed. Turn looks at him in amazement. The hero, putting on a magnificent costume, declares that his brother came to him early in the morning, after which he asks if he really wants to be beaten to death so badly. Turn's eyes widen in amazement. He realizes that the energy that comes from his brother is incomparable in strength to the one he felt 15 days ago. However, the young man says that Christian is talking some nonsense. Closing his eyes, the hero declares that if his brother wants to be beaten so much, he will grant this wish. The young man warns that if he wins, then Turn will have to refuse to participate in the sacred dark ceremony. The boy looks at his brother in shock. Standing in the doorway, he asks again. The hero declares that, as everyone knows, this event is an almost continuous battle, where weaklings have nothing to do. Turn frowns at his brother. Holding out his sword, he demands that Christian shut up and draw his sword. The hero, taking a weapon from the table, declares that the boy simply does not understand the good intentions of his caring older brother. Smiling, Christian says that it is likely that the child will begin to understand words better when he gets hit on the head. Turn rushes to attack. A beaten boy, whose arm appears to have been broken, is lying on the bed. Leiden, folding his arms over his chest, disgruntled states that Christian seems to have overdone it. He reports that according to the doctor's conclusion, Turn will have to stay in bed for at least 15 days. The man rubs his chin thoughtfully. He says that Turn will be forced to miss the sacred dark ceremony. The boy indignantly calls out to his father. Looking at the count, the hero asks if he can talk to his brother alone. Leiden agrees to leave them alone. Opening the door, he says that Christian should try to settle his relationship with his brother. The hero stands in front of a boy sitting on the bed. Smiling, Christian asks if his brother is upset, after which he says that he looks pathetic, almost like the bastards from the Union. He reminds that it was Turn who started the fight in which he was injured. The boy, looking down sadly, asks if his Christian is really unhappy that his brother can grow in his development. The boy remembers how the hero taunted him. He accuses his brother of ignoring him and mocking the achievements that he has so hard to get, and then he deliberately crippled him to prevent him from taking part in a sacred dark ceremony. Turn recalls his brother, grinning, hitting him on the arm. Christian, putting his hands on his belt, looks at the boy. He realizes that he is about to cry. The guy says that Turn doesn't seem to understand something. The guy says that he only wants his brother to be a good and strong support for him. Turn looks down in surprise. The brothers stand opposite each other with weapons in their hands. Christian states that if Turn meets him during the ceremony, he will lose the opportunity to receive dark energy. He states that in the duel he made the boy feel how dangerous stupid stubbornness can be. The sun shines through the windows. Christian says that, among other things, pure dark energy is not very suitable for his brother. Turn asks again. The hero says that ash energy is much more suitable for the boy. Turn looks to his left. We see characters marked with different colors with stars. Christian thinks that if the intensity of light is divided into different colors, then dark energy is also different. Pure dark energy is considered the highest of all, and immediately after it comes ash energy, which is most suitable for curse magic. Christian, standing in front of the window, asks if it would be easier for his brother to learn curse magic instead of learning martial arts. Turn asks why the young man thinks so. The hero thinks that he cannot tell the boy that he took this knowledge from his past life, so he will have to come up with a relatively plausible explanation. Turn looks down in shock. The hero says that when he fought his brother, the conclusion he voiced now seemed very obvious to him. The guy states that he put his whole soul into the fight and perhaps that's why he felt all this. We see the branches of the tree with different colored stars. Christian says that in any case, if Turn accepts pure dark energy at first, he may have difficulties when he subsequently begins to study ash energy, which is much more suitable for him. The guy says that, of course, his brother will learn something, since dark energy is the highest attribute, but then it will still interfere with him. The hero warns that it can slow down the development process of his brother, who, as far as he knows, seeks to become stronger as soon as possible. The brothers look at each other. Christian says that for this reason, the boy should think carefully before deciding to participate in the ceremony. He states that this is good advice from the older brother, who sincerely wants the boy to become as strong as possible. There is an ash ball on a black pillow. The hero says that this is a gift. Turn, looking at the orb, shocked, asks if it is a healing stone. He wonders why the hero gives him this priceless thing. Closing his eyes, Christian says that this is his younger brother, and he can't have any other reasons, while he thinks that he has recently eaten something much more interesting. Turn tearfully stares at the ash sphere. The boy clenches his fist. He says that he just can't believe that Christian has changed so much. He remembers kneeling in front of his dying mother, and asks why his brother acted like the last scum when their mother was dying. He reminds them that the woman suffered greatly because she had such a good-for-nothing eldest son. Christian silently looks at his brother. He sits down next to him on the bed and declares that he was a real scumbag then, and did not understand anything. In front of the building with high sharp spires there are carriages. The hero gets out of one of them. Complaining that his back hurts, he asks how far they ended up traveling. Looking around in exasperation, Christian asks if it was really impossible to open a portal for fast travel, after which he states that the one who did not do this is just behaving pettily. The guy promises to change everything when he becomes the boss here. Marie flies up to her master and calls out to him. Folding her hands in front of her face, the Banshee enthusiastically declares that the guy went on a romantic trip only with her, and her heart is ready to burst out of her chest. Christian reminds the girl that she has no heart. The coachman, looking at the boy, asks the young master to deal with the villains from the main family. Christian thinks that the organizers of the ceremony limited the number of escorts for the participants to 1, and because of the oath of allegiance that Marie made to him, he was only able to take her with him. The hero draws attention to the young people whispering. Marie, who is hanging behind her master, whispers to him that he seems to have become a very famous person that everyone is talking about. Someone calls out to the hero, after which she declares that she is very glad to see him again. Young people look at someone in amazement. Simon stands in front of the hero. One of the guys recognizes the head butler. The second asks why such an important character communicates with this slacker. The vampire looks at the young man from all sides. He declares that only half a month has passed, but the guy seems to have achieved a lot during this time. The hero asks if the assistant head of the clan really has so much free time. Putting his hand to his chest, Simon states that he actually came here on behalf of Lord Noga. Looking at the hero, the vampire says that Lord Noga wants to meet the young master. Leaning over to the guy, Simon states that he does not seem to be surprised, and asks if the hero really expected this. Christian displeased says that his surprise knows no bounds. The vampire states that the young man seems to be disingenuous again. Clouds are visible outside the window. Simon, who is standing next to the hero, loudly announces that he has brought the young master. The gray-haired old man replies that he has already noticed this. Next to Lord Noga is Mary. He states that he has not seen the hero for a long time. A glowing eye is visible above the hero's head. Lord Noga presses 2 fingers on the head of the tiny hero. Christian thinks that the energy emanating from the old man is so powerful that it is difficult for him to even stand still. His eyes are shining brightly on his black face. The young man thinks that the old man is unleashing so much energy on him, knowing full well that he, with his current level, simply cannot resist it. The hero's hand trembles. Christian tells an old man standing in the distance that he greets the great head of the Dark Mage clan. Lord Noga, looking at the young man, asks if he was surprised by the unexpected summons. The hero declares that just the opposite, he expected him. The old man asks for clarification of these words. Putting his hand to his chest, Christian declares that a new rising star has appeared in the family, which is impossible not to notice. Lord Noga, leaning on his cane, giggles. He declares that Christian is absolutely right, and Simon and Mary are scattered in endless praise of the young man. An evil fire appears in the old man's eyes. He declares that, nevertheless, he is not sure that the young man will live up to the expectations placed on him. Christian stares silently at Lord Noga. Grain sprouts from the ground. The old man declares that no one knows what can grow out of such a promising guy. We see a stunted plant. Lord Noga says that Christian may well be a frail shoot that will dry up as soon as it breaks to the surface. Christian, closing his eyes, declares that his interlocutor is absolutely right, and at the moment he is not yet living up to the expectations of the great head of the family. He asks if the guy wants to say that this situation will change in the future. Under the huge tree, a healthy sprout is visible. The hero says that only time will tell if the seed can turn into a huge tree or even into the very heaven that hangs over the trees, but he will try to do everything in his power not to disappoint the one who pins his hopes on him. Leaning on a cane, Lord Noga stands in front of the hero. Smiling, he declares that he will follow with great interest how the young man is doing. Then the old man says that the hero can leave. Christian bows. Mary, looking at Lord Noga sitting on the throne, asks what impression he has. He states that the guy has exceeded his expectations, but a very cruel fate awaits him due to the fact that he has such an extraordinary talent. In front of us are blue waves. The old man asks Mary if she knows that a bloody storm is brewing over the Mage Empire. The woman is silent. Lord Noga, looking thoughtfully into the distance, declares that today a small sprout of hope has sprouted in his soul. Mary looks at the dark mage in surprise. We see the eyes of an old man and a young man. Lord Noga says that perhaps this child will be able to fulfill his old dream. We see a magnificent hall. It is reported that it takes place on the eve of a sacred dark ceremony. A young man in a suit announces the arrival of Count Khazar's eldest son. A young man enters the hall, and an announcement is made that he is a young gentleman, Christian van Baron Khazar. People behind the young man's back whisper. One of the girls wonders why the patriarch needed to recognize such an unworthy person as Christian. Her interlocutor replies that no one knows, and the guy looks like a typical spoiled idiot from a noble family. The hero looks over his shoulder. He thinks that everyone pays attention to him because he is too handsome. Christian winks at someone. Marie, giggling, declares that the young master is incredibly handsome. The young man pays attention to the waiter carrying glasses. He sees the color of the drink and asks if it is wine. The waiter removes the tray from under the hero's nose and declares that the guy has not reached the age of majority, so he should not drink alcohol. A drink is poured into the young man's glass. The servant says that the guy can drink ginger ale. The hero clutches his head, cursing the all-too-correct demons. He thinks he just hates ginger ale. Christian, holding a glass, hears the announcement of the arrival of the lords and ladies from the main family. The doors of the hall open. Richly dressed young people enter the room. Before us is the second heir of Ashid de Baron. Next is the first princess Yulia de Baron. Now we see a smiling girl. This is the second lady of Jupian de Baron. The last to be presented is the third prince, Mysak de Baron. The heirs of the main family are approaching the hero. A guy with long white hair covering his face with his hand. Christian thinks the crazy first prince doesn't seem to have arrived at the ceremony. The hero stands with his eyes down, trying to understand what Ashid is going to say to the person he was trying to frame. A young man in a white suit, smiling, walks past the hero. The young man looks after him in irritation. He mentally calls the guy a bastard who did not even dare to look into his eyes. Christian understands that for this scoundrel he is indeed an insect unworthy of attention. We see a woman's hand decorated with a flower. The hero looks in amazement at Yulia passing by him. The young man realizes who is in front of him. He remembers his aunt's words that you need to be extremely careful with the first princess. Christian looks after the girl as she leaves. He realizes that he did not feel any threat from her. The hero, who has a glass in his hand, turns away. He thinks that he will find out everything gradually, and today the reconnaissance carried out is enough. Christian understands that now he must go to a place where he can prepare for a sacred dark ceremony. A man with a thin mustache appears behind the hero. He greets the young master, after which he declares that his name is Per, and he is a summoner working for Royan de Baron. The young man looks around in surprise. Looking at the man, he asks what he needs. Christian raises his glass. Per states that he has heard that someone who is not qualified will participate in a sacred dark ceremony, and because of this, unpleasant incidents may occur that will tarnish the family's honor. Christian and Per look at each other. The hero asks if he has just been called an insufficiently qualified character. The man says that if the young man is not satisfied with something, he can refute the opinion. Behind Per on the balcony is a dark figure. Royan, his eyes bulging, looks at what is happening. The hero, looking thoughtfully at the man, scrolls through his words in his head. He puts the glass on the table, thinking that a more serious conversation can be saved for the ceremony itself. After which he says that he can easily show his abilities. Smiling, the guy suggests that Per show him his tricks. He says in surprise that it will be quite problematic to do this without a weapon. Christian states that he doesn't even need a weapon to deal with your interlocutor. Per frowns at the young man. He says that he will regret his words. Christian, smiling, asks if the man is sure of what he is saying, because if anyone will regret it, it is most likely him. Yulia, folding his hands in front of him, looks at the hero. The girl smiles faintly. People are shocked by what is happening. Per is kneeling on the floor, covering his head with his hands. Christian, meanwhile, sits on a ghost and takes grapes from a tray that is holding another spirit. The young officer asked in amazement what he had just seen. He recalls that Per was the first to summon the ghosts, and urged his opponent to try to deal with them. Then, with a slight movement of his hand, the young man turned the spirits against his summoner. Christian tosses some pill and catches it with his mouth. No one can understand how the young man managed to establish control over the ghosts so quickly. The hero, putting his hands in his pockets, asks if the young Master Royan is behind all this, after which he declares that such antics do not make the heir of the dark magician look good. Royan, his eyes bulging, looks at the hero. He, grinning mockingly, asks why the guy doesn't challenge him to a duel in person, if he has some difficult feelings towards him. Royan, standing on the balcony, declares that he has nothing to do with this. Christian declares that even the worst idiot will not believe in this lie, after which he says that he will forgive the young man for this stupid act for the first time. Per, kneeling, looks at his master. The hero leaves, stating that he will meet Royan in a sacred dark ceremony. Christian looks annoyed. He mentally calls the guy a cowardly bastard and promises to teach him good manners. People are standing in front of the red carpet. It is reported that the day of the sacred dark ceremony has come. The hero yawns, his mouth wide open. Turn, looking at his brother in bewilderment, asks if he is not nervous at all after what he arranged yesterday during the reception. The hero wonders why his brother still came here, despite all the warnings and even the beating. Turn calls the guy an idiot and states that he simply could not miss the ritual that is about to begin. Someone is coming down the stairs. It turns out to be Royan. Noticing the hero, he thinks that he will deal with this bastard later. A man appears next to the Khazar family members and asks if everyone is there. A tiny character who holds a staff with a jewel in his hands reveals that his name is Sebastian and he is the assistant butler of the main family's estate. Then he states that he is escorting the competitors to the sacred place where the ceremony will take place. Sebastian slams his staff on the floor. A staircase appears in front of him, leading far down. The young people look down. Turn asks in surprise if they really have to go down to the basement. The hero realizes that he sees an illusion that recreates another space. The steps seem to go to an infinite depth. Sebastian begins to descend. A white glow can be seen around his figure. Young people rush after the shorty. They shout loudly that they need to hurry, otherwise they will lose him. In front of us is a ghostly corridor. The demons are trying to keep up with their guide. They are breathing heavily. The guy, whose face is dripping with streams of sweat, declares that something is wrong here, because they seem to have gone underground, and now they have to climb very steep slopes. Royan, his eyes bulging, looks ahead. Sebastian, smiling, turns around and asks the young people to hurry. He declares that the earth will not hold them forever. Participants of the competition climb a steep cliff. Two of them fly down, emitting loud screams. Two guys look after them, cursing everything in the world. Sebastian, smiling, says that they are behind schedule, so they should hurry up a bit. Shorty noticeably accelerates. A moment later, two more dark figures fly away. Royan, smiling maliciously, thinks that the young men turned out to be weaklings, and, as he thought, they were nothing. The young man sees a completely calm hero next to him. Christian, looking at Royan, smiles. he realizes that the young man is not even sweating. The hero mockingly asks his competitor why he is breathing so heavily. He states that it seems that he has an incapable dummy in front of him. The guy states that Roin must have stocked up on excellent medicines thanks to the fact that he represents the main family, and thanks to this, he should move much faster. Roin, gritting his teeth in anger, looks at the hero. Turn is also exhausted. Christian mentally calls his competitors idiots, whose bodies must suffer due to the impenetrable stupidity of the brain. He knows that moving in an illusory space as it is done in ordinary life is pointless, and is an unacceptable waste of energy. A magic formation can be seen around the guy. He thinks that he does not lose stamina, no matter how fast he moves, and that if he changes the technique he uses just a little, he will become invincible. Sebastian looks back at the young men following him. Shorty realizes that he has a young Mr. Christian in front of him. A lantern hangs on the wall. Next to it you can see graceful columns. The participants of the competition and their guide stand inside the octagon. Turn, looking at his brother in shock, asks why he didn't even get out of breath. The hero says that if the boy hadn't fooled around, training animals all the time, he would also have greatly increased his endurance. We see a shiny crystal. Someone greets young people. Surprise appears on the hero's face, next to whom Roin is visible. The girl, who emits powerful streams of white energy around her, states that, as the young people surely know, they have entered a sacred place where the purest dark mana is erupted. She says that the demons call this energy sacred darkness, and she herself is Li Hu, who rules this place. Li Hu has a brilliant sword in her hands. She says that today, the young masters, like their great predecessors, will obtain dark magic. A white arrow is visible under the foot. Turn looks around in surprise. Li Hu, in front of whom the participants of the ceremony are standing, declares that there is enough dark magic for all of me and, in addition, the beasts inside will test the strength of the young people's combat skills. Turn looks frightened at the arrow going through the doorway. Someone's hand is visible in the air. Smiling, the hero says that as far as he understands, the one who reaches the finish line first will receive the most dark magic. Li Hu states that she did not even doubt the great mental abilities of the young master, whose name is Christian. We see two hostile guys. The hero asks what will happen if some misfortune happens to someone during the ritual. He wonders if this will mean the disqualification of this participant. Li Hu replies that since the young people part ways, they are unlikely to meet with any of their competitors, but if this happens, it will be better to avoid any conflicts. The number 4 is visible above the girl's head. Li Hu states that the more time the members spend, the more dark magic their competitors will get. Christian, whose robe glitters with bright jewelry, smiles. Turn looks carefully at something. Li Hu advises the hero not to think about competitors, but to worry more about his own safety. Above Roin's head, the number 1 is visible. Young people run through different doors. The girl wishes them all good luck. Next to it, a tiny Sebastian is visible. Shorty offers the girl to bet on one of the participants, but she disappears into thin air. Sebastian angrily shouts that Li Hu shouldn't be so cold to him. A lantern hangs on the wall. A young man runs down a wide aisle. He sees yellow eyes in front of him. A fire-breathing monster appears in front of him. The monster is approaching the guy, who is already streaming jets of dark energy over his arm. Roin deals a lot of powerful blows and kills the enemy. Smiling, he thinks that the monsters are quite strong. However, they are only level 2, and for him, with his 2 stars, they are very easy opponents. The guy thinks that Christian, in the meantime, may face difficulties. He imagines a bloody opponent with a sword in his hand. We see a magical formation, as well as the octagon in which the participants of the ceremony used to stand. Roin thinks that the paths of the contenders should be the same in length and difficulty of the tests. However, he bribed the wizard and he placed stronger monsters on the route that Christian is now moving. Roin imagines a huge muscular monster in front of his rival and thinks that his enemy will meet much stronger creatures along the way, so most likely something irreparable will happen to him. A bloody hand lies on the floor. The villain thinks that no one investigates the deaths that occur during the ritual, and this dungeon will become a grave for Christian. There is a door in front of us. Smiling happily, Roin approaches her, realizing that there is sacred ground behind her. The guy has no doubt that he came here first. Christian calmly states that the young man is late. He asks why he was so late. The hero, folding his arms on his chest, declares that he almost died of boredom. Roin, looking at him in amazement, asks how the guy managed to get here so quickly. He replies that he just didn't meet anything special on the way. The villain says that it simply can't be, and the path the hero was taking was much more difficult. Realizing that he has blurted out too much, Roin covers his mouth. Christian smiles. Behind him, dead monsters are visible. He says that now he understands why he came across monsters of too high a level. Roin, looking indignantly at the hero, asks how he dares to accuse him of something like this. Christian states that they will be alone here for a while, so the young man can throw away his manners. Roin, raising his fists, calls his opponent a cocky bastard. He says that during the ceremony, competitors are forbidden to fight, but he will kill the bastard here and now. The young man strikes with his fist. Christian leans back, letting his opponent's right limb pass him. Jets of black energy are visible next to the hero's face. He is trying to understand what exactly he should use to defeat the enemy. Roin, gritting his teeth in anger, looks at his opponent. He lands many punches, which Christian successfully dodges. Continuing to attack, the young man calls his opponent a slippery little bastard. A bright flash is visible next to the hero's hand. Roin stretches out his left arm, The hero thinks that he will break the limb that is closest to him now. Smiling, the guy declares that his opponent is incredibly stupid. He grabs him by the wrist. Christian twists his opponent's arm. Smiling, the young man says that Royan will now feel very severe pain, but he should not cry. The young man opens his mouth wide. A very loud cry is heard. Turn runs down the hallway, thinking he's too late. Next to the hero lie Royan and another guy. The brother asks the hero if he knocked them out. Christian says that the boy is very slow. He asks if Turn wants to pass out quietly and calmly or prefers a brutal beating. Royan looks at the hero in shock. A magical formation is visible in front of the young man. He declares that he will not joke this time, and encourages the hero to attack him. Turn lies unconscious on the floor. Christian says he feels a sense of déjà vu, and if he leaves his brother here, someone will surely come and carry him to safety. In the hero's memories from his past life from the battlefields pop up. He thinks that in 5 years the first war with the Alliance will begin, and by that time he must obtain as much dark energy as possible. Shaking off his hands, the young man declares that he cannot miss a single drop of sacred darkness. Christian puts his left foot on his toes. He thinks that he has dealt with those who could have interfered with him, and it is time to take away the sacred darkness. The hero opens the door. There is a light shining outside the door. The hero thinks that the sacred darkness is the power that gives the demon the ability to become truly transcendent. The guy remembers Lord Noga and the character with red hair and a crown on his head. He thinks that the first one is known for absorbing 80% of the sacred darkness and is now one of the most powerful demon monarchs. While the Dark Destroyer absorbed more than 90% of the pure dark energy and became the Demon King. We see the young man's legs. A huge black ball hangs above his head. Christian thinks that if he can absorb 100% pure dark energy, he will surpass even the Demon Emperor. The hero stretches out his right hand. It acquires a black color. There are demons sitting at the table. One of them says it's just unbelievable. The hero's competitors lie on the floor. The speaker declares that everyone except Christian is out, and this is a real disaster. He declares that the young Mr. Royan is in a very serious condition. A pointy-eared guy with glasses suggests that the hero used a trick, something like forbidden magic or something similar. His neighbor states that everything is probably true, and after investigating, they should punish the scammer. A young man sitting in front of them declares that there is no need for this. Jupian de Baron states that this bastard will not be able to enter the sacred ground anyway. Shrapnel is visible next to the hand. The young man opens his mouth wide. Jupian says that Christian has not been able to leave the place where he found himself for 2 days, which means that he is either still absorbing the sacred darkness in huge quantities, or has already been crushed by this substance and died. We see the chic setting of the room in which the meeting takes place. Jupian states that even Lord Noga hit the ceiling when he absorbed the sacred darkness, and there is almost no doubt that the bastard has already died. Rising from his seat, Jupian declares that most likely, not even the corpse of the scoundrel will remain of anything. The participants of the meeting excitedly look after the girl who is leaving. We have very elegant shoes in front of us. Jupian, frowning ahead, states that if Christian returns alive, she will kill him with her own hands. Jupian thinks that her father died fighting against the Alliance, and she was installed along with Royan by their uncle, Viscount Langham, and for this reason alone, her position within the clan is not particularly strong, and since Royan was unable to obtain the sacred darkness, no one will support his candidacy as heir. Behind the demons talking to each other, a brother and sister stand embracing. Jupian, frowning ahead, thinks that in any case he will repay the hero for the insult inflicted. The maids talk to each other. The young woman asks if the idler has returned. The old woman says that the guy must have already died, and this will be his punishment for being too greedy and does not know his place. Marie looks out the window. One of the maids says that it is the banshee patiently waiting for her master. However, she will most likely meet him when he himself becomes a ghost. Next to the maid's head, a bluish sphere is visible. Marie looms over the servants. She declares that her heart is pounding with excitement in anticipation of the young master. But if these chickens continue to cluck around her, she will turn them into ghosts and possess their souls. The maids look on in horror at Marie's sudden transformation. They run away from her rapidly. The girl looks thoughtfully into the distance. Hovering in front of the window, she begs the hero to come back quickly and says that the man who makes the girl wait behaves like a villain. Christian looks up. The guy is hanging in the middle of an empty space. He feels that the endless darkness has become across his throat and does not allow him to breathe. The young man cannot believe that he has reached only 70%. He thinks that this test is much more difficult than he initially thought. The hero clenches his fist. He is determined to withstand this test at any cost. The guy understands that the real difficulties will begin when the absorption mark reaches 90%. Christian imagines a vase shattering. He thinks that if he takes in too much darkness and exceeds the limit, his core will shatter into many pieces, and he will die here before the war even begins. It seems that the hero comes up with some idea. He realizes that he can use the dragon's heart. A vital organ is visible in the chest of the young man. Christian thinks that dragons have the largest receptacles for the core, and he can imitate such an organ for a few minutes. The heart emits black energy. Cracks appear on its surface. The young man thinks that he must stop, since he has reached his limit. Someone asks him if he needs help. Christian stares at the horned creature in shock. In front of him is Mepina. The young man pronounces the name of this creature in amazement, after which he asks how the demon ended up in this space. The interlocutors hang opposite each other. Mepina informs that it is not difficult for her, since demons are able to communicate with the darkness. She states that at this very moment she can help the guy. Looking down, Mepina says that she does not put forward any conditions. Christian, looking at her, asks why she does this. Mepina, smiling, states that this is her fleeting whim and offers to take her hand. She says that in this case, the hero will be able to accept all of the sacred darkness. A cup is lowered on the table. It is reported that the case takes place a week later. Lord Noga, with Mary standing next to him, states that he will have a hard time convincing anyone that Christian is still alive, as there is still no news from the guy. The woman frowns down. She reproaches her nephew for immense greed and wonders how the guy could do this. Simon, smiling, informs that Viscount Langham agrees with Lord Noga, so he demands that the passage leading to the sacred lands be closed soon. The vampire stands in front of Lord Noga, who is sitting at the table, and asks if the old man will give the appropriate command. The latter, looking angrily at Simon, calls the hero a vile snot and declares that this guy is testing the patience of the old man. A cup is seen in front of the demon's hand. He asks if the bloodsucker thinks that this carefree child is still alive. Simon replies that the probability of this happening is close to zero. Smiling, the vampire says that he is nevertheless an incredibly interesting young master. Lord Noga frowns at the vampire. He states that he only gives 1 day. Simon looks at the old man, who states that the gate should only be open for 1 more day. Mary sighs heavily. Simon says he understands the order. Clouds hang over the magnificent structure. The heart breaks into pieces. Christian clutches his chest. Mepina holds out her hand to him and yells for the guy to grab it quickly. Gritting his teeth, the hero says that he refuses to do this. The demon, pointing her finger at the little youth, says that this is very stupid, because the hero must know that people are not allowed to absorb more dark energy than he has already done. With his mouth wide open, Christian shouts that this is not true, and Mepina forgets something. He reminds her that they are now in a world of concepts. A bright flash occurs. Mepina looks at the hero in bewilderment. Christian is surrounded by a bright glow. The demon says it's just incredible. We see the red eye of the young man. Horns grow on the top of its head. The appearance of the hero changes dramatically. Mepina realizes that there has been demonization. Red wings are visible behind the hero's back. He thinks that demonization is the most powerful technique of the mystical magic clan, a forbidden spell when a mortal temporarily transforms into a demon in order to multiply his abilities. A winged creature hangs in the sky above the young people. Christian thinks that due to its gigantic power, this technique is lethal to the one who uses it, and in his previous life, Lena died after casting this spell. We see a magic formation. Christian thinks that nevertheless, if he removes those parts of the spell that help to amplify the dark energy, then perhaps he will be able to use the laws of this world to form a bowl to collect energy and avoid negative consequences. Between the hands of the young man you can see a bright source of light, and under it a black vortex emitting dark jets. The hero understands that he has succeeded, and with the help of the received container he can overcome the threshold of 90% and completely take possession of the sacred darkness. Mepina is shocked to say that she simply does not believe in what is happening. The hero's eyes resemble those of a snake. The demon claims to see a black crescent moon. She does not believe that a mere mortal, who is no different from an insect, was able to transform his body in such a way. Mepina asks who the hell is in front of him. Smiling, the young man replies that he is just a genius. Floating in the middle of empty space, the guy raises his index finger. The hero has 2 curved horns on his head. He states that Mepina may live here, but it is time for him to leave. The hero distances himself from the demoness. Mepina, smiling faintly, declares that she very much hopes to meet Christian in the near future. The hero dissolves in space. The demon watches in amazement as he disappears. The last to disappear is the hero's hand, showing the middle finger. The demoness hears an offensive phrase corresponding to the gesture demonstrated. Mepina silently watches on and then starts laughing. The hero passes through the portal. He waves his hands indignantly, stating that he doesn't seem to look crazy, so he won't date Mepina. He calls the demoness a very annoying creature. A huge purple ball is visible above the young man's head, and Christian asks how long it has been since he entered the sacred land. The guy covers his mouth with his hand. It seems to him that at least a week has flown by. Christian assumes that real chaos is now happening in the ranks of the main family. The hero is transformed, becoming like himself again. He thinks that it would be nice to arrange a small prank. A young man in a suit addresses Viscount Langham and informs him that Christian has returned. At the head of the table sits a man in glasses. The young people next to him are incredibly surprised. One of them asks if the hero is still alive. The guy who brought the news hesitantly tries to say something else. Langham de Baron, the current head of the Dark Mage clan, demands that the young man gather his thoughts and report everything clearly and understandably. The orderlies carried the hero on a stretcher. Langham learns that the guy survived by some miracle, and is now incredibly emaciated. A pointy-eared blonde examines the hero. The speaker reports that the healers managed to find out that there is pure dark energy inside the guy, but at the moment it is a disorderly seething mess, and apparently, in the future it will be very difficult for the young man to use this substance correctly. The demons sitting at the table look at the speaker in surprise. Christian is lying unconscious on the bed. Someone claims that nothing else was to be expected, and this bastard simply could not absorb more than 80% of the sacred darkness. There is an opinion that due to the greed of this scum, the priceless substance was actually thrown to the wind. The plump young man, leaning on the table, turns to the Viscount and declares that they must make the young man suffer punishment for what he has done. Langham frowns that he has taken into account all the opinions that have been expressed, and the people present may differ. He declares that their meeting is over for the day. Only one young man remains next to the man. Langham taps his fingers on the table and asks Macfield if the message is true. The young man, standing at attention in front of his master, states that he watched the hero when the healer examined him, and it is quite clear to him that the problem was with the core. Langham taps his finger on the table. Macfield looks at him nervously. The Viscount is silent. Drops of sweat drip down the young man's cheeks. Langham pronounces the name of his son, whose name is Royan. Macfield nervously says that he is listening to his master, who states that Royan was supposed to be a lord, a sacrificial lamb, and also the key to the implementation of the plan regarding the Poison Clan. The man's eyes glow. He declares that now the destruction of this organization along with Jupian will have to be postponed. Macfield looks at his master in fear, who states that no one would have thought that his father would show interest in this young scoundrel. Macfield looks to his left. He hears a single fish stopping the flow of the river. Langham bangs on the table again. Macfield looks very tense. The man orders his servant to bring the hero to the Hall of Darkness tomorrow. Langham declares that he will announce the impending exile of the young man in front of his vassals. People sitting at the tables look at the hero standing in front of them. Christian, looking at them, thinks that they are desperately trying to get rid of him. He turns his attention to two young men. Langham asks if Christian is aware of the sins he committed during the sacred dark ceremony. A wavering core can be seen in the boy's chest. He declares that he realizes that he was wrong. The head of the clan asks the guy to report what he thinks he did wrong. Royan is lying unconscious on the bed. Christian states that his competitors were unworthy of becoming members of the Dark Magic clan, and he should have beaten them even harder. But he couldn't. The hero states that he is sorry that these people can still walk on their own feet. Jupian tries to say something to the hero, but she is urged to be silent. Langham, looking at the young man, states that his main sin is that he monopolized the invaluable resource of the Dark Magic clan, but failed to produce a respectable result. Christian, smiling, asks if the man can answer how exactly he measures the quality of the mentioned result. A dark substance splashes in an elegant glass. Langham states that the purity of the darkness should have been at least 70%. The hero calmly asks what punishment he will suffer if it turns out that he could not get to this value. The head of the clan, calmly looking at the guy, declares that he will not be able to inherit dark magic techniques, and in addition, he will be forever forbidden to enter the territory of the main family, and the guy will not be able to become the heir to the house of Count Khazar. Raising his right hand, Christian asks how and who will evaluate his results, because the respected jury is currently unable to fully measure the final result. A hand rises up. Ashit, smiling, states that his dear younger brother can always count on him. The young man happily states that despite the fact that the hero core is now in a state of chaos, Dark Energy Clash will be able to give a rough estimate of the purity of darkness. The young man, looking at the smiling hero, declares that he himself has absorbed 70% of the sacred darkness, and Christian will overpower him. This will mean that the guy has overcome this barrier. The hero, smiling, imagines the clash of two magicians. He thinks that Dark Energy Clash is a battle designed to determine the superiority of the dark energy of one of the two demons. He knows that if the amount of dark energy is the same for both competitors, then the one with the purer energy wins, and in addition, it is basically the perfect way to destroy the core of the loser. Christian thinks that Ashit is much more cunning than he thought. He agrees to the duel offered to him. The hero, looking at the people sitting in front of him, declares that if he shows a result sufficient to be recognized here, the head of the clan will have to support him and allow him to pass the test that allows him to take the place of the young lord. Ashit, standing up from the table, declares that he agrees to the conditions that Christian has put forward. He says that the place that the guy claims can be taken by both a descendant of the main family and a representative of a secondary branch, since in Magic Empire it is customary to identify the strongest, who then rule over the weak. The servants look at Ashit in surprise. A young man approaches the hero and warns him just in case that during the Dark Energy Clash, the hero can damage his core if he fails to control his energy enough. The guy, smiling, says that he will try to take into account the level of his opponent, so he only uses the dark energy of the level of 2 stars. He states that of course he understands that there is a difference in the purity of darkness between them. Opponents put their right hands forward. There is a clash of energies. Christian, smiling, declares that his opponent does not have to bother himself with such things, and he must first of all take care of his own priceless core. Ashit is seen above the head of the hero holding out his hand above him. He states that the guy's audacious words have interested him, and now he can't wait to find out what kind of energy he has. Black spots hang in the air. Christian directs a purple beam at the enemy. Ashit is shocked. He realizes that the hero has dispelled his energy without even concentrating his own. The guy puts his hand forward. He thinks that in this case he is using the dark energy of the peak value of the level of 2 stars. The energy that the hero generates is twisted into a spiral. A young man looks at his opponent. His gaze is concentrated. Clenching his fist, the guy says that everything ended in a big disappointment for him, since Ashit pretended to be a powerful and invincible warrior, but in the end he did not turn out to be one. The young man's opponent looks at him in shock. Black jets swirl above his head. A servant with a gray face shouts that the young master is using 4-star level dark energy. A ghostly monster appears above the hero's head. The servant warns that the young man's core may shatter to pieces. The monster bares its teeth. The jets around it take the form of a huge clawed paw. Ashid looks up in fear. The opponents stand opposite each other, Christian, smiling, just to remind his opponent of his own words that during dark energy clash, if you don't have enough control over dark energy, you can damage your core. He states that Ashid must be very careful. The face of the hero's opponent is almost hidden by jets of black energy. The streams of darkness dissipate. Ashid covers his mouth, which is gushing blood. A servant with a grey face calls out to the young master in fright. Christian looks surprised. He thinks he should have smashed his opponent's core to smithereens, but he seems to have managed to save it. Blood is visible under Ashid's feet. Smiling, the boy admits defeat and states that he estimates that Christian has mined dark energy with at least 90% purity. The opponents are on the red carpet. One of the servants repeats the meaning just heard in surprise. Smiling radiantly, Christian asks if he is now worthy of claiming the young lord's place. Langham is silent. He looks intently at the hero. Langham taps his finger on the table. He sternly declares that, as promised, Christian will be admitted to the trial of the young lord, and that there has never been a case in history of a member of a secondary branch being so honored. Looking at the hero in front of him, Langham states that, as the current head of the clan, he will randomly choose a test for the young man. The hero understands that this actually means that he will be offered tasks that cannot be completed. A glowing crown is visible above Christian's head. Langham states that the hero's qualifications will be tested against 2 criteria. First, he will need to show his talents, and then he will need to perform a feat worthy of the title of a young lord. A luxurious chandelier hangs under the ceiling. Christian asks how exactly he will show his talent. Langham replies that he needs to reach the level of 3 stars in 3 months. The hero lowers his gaze in amazement. Looking at the interlocutor, he asks if this is all. The guy claims that he is a genius, so it will not be difficult for him to complete this task at all. Langham, looking at the young man, states that he will then personally evaluate the guy's achievements over the past 3 months. Langham and Ashid are seated at a table. The man brings a cup of tea to his mouth and declares that he is very disappointed. His son, looking down, admits that he is to blame for underestimating the enemy, and reports that his core was badly damaged as a result. Ashid recalls coughing up blood, saying they need to deal with Christian before he becomes an even bigger threat. Langham puts the cup on the table and asks his son not to worry. He states that Ashid knows perfectly well the reason why they don't absorb more than 70% of pure dark energy. In front of us are 2 glasses. Langham states that the higher the purity of absorbed dark energy, the exponentially difficult it is to then increase its rank. He reports that it is many times more difficult for a character with this indicator to reach the level of 3 stars than everyone else. He asks his son how much Christian will get to this bar if he has absorbed 90% of dark energy. Ashid frowns at his father. The man's face is reflected in the cup. He declares that no matter how genius Christian is, he will not be able to overcome this barrier. There are chicken thighs on the plate. Marie, giggling happily, says that the news of the hero's success has spread throughout the mansion. Pressing her hands to her chest, the banshee says that the hero is just a wonderful and charismatic young man, and her heart is ready to jump out of her chest when she sees him. Christian asks to stop showering him with compliments, as he is very embarrassed. Marie, looking at her master, states that when she was waiting for the guy, she realized what feelings she had for him. Banshee stands in front of the window. She says that the days when she was waiting for a guy seemed to drag on endlessly. Christian looks at his maid. A girl with fox ears, shedding tears, asks if Chris is okay. The beauty with blue hair states that the young man is very dexterous, so he could not have been seriously injured. She approaches the guy and says that she still has to check on the young man, after which she demands to shake her hand. The girl with fox ears states that Rania could just say that she is worried about the young man. The girl indignantly declares that she was not worried at all, and only the weak-willed Evan is really worried. The guy indignantly objects. Christian smiles faintly. He realizes that he has not felt such warmth for a very long time. The guy recalls the moments of his past life, in particular, the fact that after he ran away from his unbearable home, where they wished him only death, he fell into a pitch-black hell, where blood was constantly flowing around him. The young man looks to his right. He remembers his comrades, thinking that nevertheless he met people in this world whose hearts were filled with warmth. A glass hangs in the air in front of Marie. The hero thinks that now he can say words that he did not say then, after which he thanks the girl. Marie looks around in surprise, and not believing her ears, asks again. The guy says that he is sincerely grateful to her for waiting for him. Banshee covers her mouth with her hands. Smiling, she asks if the guy has finally understood her true feelings. Putting her hands to her chest, Marie says that her heart is beating much harder than before. Christian reminding her once again that she has no heart. Hearts are in the air. Marie says that she has no heart because he was kidnapped by a young master. The hero understands that it is useless to answer in this case. Taking a glass in his hand, the guy invites the girl to go for a walk together. Banshee shockingly asks the hero if she misheard. He replies that her hearing is fine. The girl's eyes become round in amazement. The hero tries to shield himself from her with his hands. Christian and Marie walk down the path. Blue flowers are visible next to the banshee. The hero smiles, looking at his maid. Marie happily flutters over the young man's head. Christian thinks that it is very useful to rest from time to time, but he nevertheless needs to reach the level of 3 stars in just 3 months. The guy rubs his chin thoughtfully. He realizes that it will be incredibly difficult for him, and he is unlikely to be able to achieve the desired result even under the guidance of the best mentors of his family, since 90% of the pure dark energy inside him slows down the development process. The hero hears that he seems to continue to create problems for others over and over again. Looking over his shoulder, the young man sees his aunt. After bowing, he greets the woman, who declares that the guy does not seem to have chosen the right time to walk carefree in the garden. She asks if her nephew has found a teacher who will help in teaching. Christian expresses the hope that his aunt will become a mentor. She sharply refuses the hero. The young man complains that his hopes have just been ruthlessly shattered. Mary replies to him that she will not teach him. Christian looks at his relative in surprise. Mary walks away from the young man, offering to follow her. The hero apologizes to Marie, promising that they will meet for dinner. The banshee sadly says that she understands everything. Christian follows his aunt down the stairs. The young man says that he has no idea what kind of teacher Mary will recommend to him, but thanks her for not stopping to care for her nephew. The woman states that she is not at all sure that the guy should thank her for anything. Christian asks in surprise. Looking at the young man, Mary says that he will understand everything when he sees his mentor, and most likely, he may not like the teaching methods that he uses. We see a man in a hood. Mary reports that none of her closest relatives could withstand the lessons of this character. Looking back at the hero, the woman says that it is nevertheless a unique opportunity to be taken advantage of, and requires the guy to make every effort not to disappoint his mentor. We see someone's leg. Christian and Mary approach the blonde child. The hero shockingly tells his aunt that it seems that they have stumbled upon a lost child. The boy, with his arms folded over his chest, calmly looks at the young man. Christian, smiling, looks at the boy and asks where his parents are. The child looks at the hero with very dissatisfied eyes. Christian seems to find out who is in front of him. Mary frowns and asks the hero to greet the child. We see a face divided into two parts. A woman says that the boy is the embodiment of the head of the family. Christian greets a character he knows. The child silently looks at the hero. Smiling, he puts his hand to his chest. The boy whose eye we see understands that the guy has absorbed 90%, or even more, of darkness. In front of us is the upper part of the aisle. Lord Noga declares that Christian has done something truly great. The hero thanks the interlocutor for the high appreciation of his efforts. Raising his index finger, the boy asks if the hero understands that the choice he made is still reckless. Christian confirms this. Gears are visible behind the child's back, and he says that even he himself absorbed only 80% of the dark energy, and after that he faced much more difficult tests than anyone else he knew. We see two characters with their right arm outstretched, Lord Noga saying that even their ancestor could not have become what he became without the blessing of the demon emperor. He states that he has no idea what difficulties the hero will have to face. The boy reaches out and declares that he can take some of the dark mana from the boy and return it to the void. Closing his eyes, the child says that with such a talent, Christian will most likely get by with 80%. He declares that anything above this value is a manifestation of greed. The hero, apologizing, asks if he can ask one question. The child looks at the young man in surprise, who asks why their family has become so weak. Mary, looking indignantly at her nephew, asks what he is getting at. Christian states that once everyone thought that their family's possibilities were limitless, but now they are the weakest among the 12 great families. Lord Noga asks if the hero knows the reason for this. Spreading his arms to the sides, Christian says that the dark family has flourished under the leadership of its head like never before. However, other demons say that it has lost its greatness. The guy states that there is only one reason for this. Looking resolutely at his interlocutor, the guy declares that there are no absolute beings higher than 8 stars in their family. Lord Noga, judging by the look, understands that the young man is saying reasonable things. The hero remembers the horseman. He thinks that when the bloodletting demon king invaded the dark family's domain in his previous life, Lord Noga was already dead, and there were only a few 7-star demons and no 8-star demons. Dead warriors lie on the ground. Christian recalls that 10,000 soldiers came out against bloodletting demon king, but in the end they were defeated and became the aggressor's servants. Christian and Lord Noga look into each other's eyes. The young man thinks that demons of level 8 and above are incredibly important for families, and the old man, who has always been wise, surely realizes this. Mary, frowning, looks to the right of him. The hero says that, of course, he understands the concern of the old man, who is afraid that such a promising demon will break under the pressure of dark energy and stop growing. Christian, whose eye we see, asks if the head of the family is interested in whether gaining this power will be an important step in the restoration of the clan or if it will allow him to overcome all trials and gain unlimited power. We have 2 chess pieces in front of us. The hero raises his horse up. All the other figures lie under his feet. The boy happily declares that the impudent scoundrel speaks very beautifully and convincingly. A purple whirlwind is visible under the feet of the hero. The child wishes the guy that he would not regret his words later. Christian looks at the interlocutor in amazement. He is caught up in a whirlwind. Clouds are visible above the trees. The hero tries to understand where he is. Looking around him, the young man asks why he suddenly found himself in the forest. We see the back of the hero's head. Christian hears that his first task is to inherit dark mana, and asks in amazement. Lord Noga declares that the guy must also survive. Bears are visible behind the young man's back. He looks around frightened, realizing that he is in a very unpleasant scrape. The hero, who is seen inside the ball, stands in front of a 6-legged bear. Mary stands behind the boy. The woman looks at the child with concern. She realizes that he has asked this stupid task again. Mary states that in her opinion, Throwing a guy with 2 stars against a 4-star monster is not very right, Lord Noga asks in surprise. The boy raises his left hand and asks if the woman really thinks that one monster is not enough. A strange creature is seen inside the transparent sphere, and Christian is frightened and asks what kind of thing it is, after which he recognizes Rock Lizard. Mary closes her eyes in despair. She mentally apologizes to her nephew. Lord Noga states with conviction that in the fight for survival, the guy will see the true nature of dark mana. According to him, true understanding comes the fastest and is most firmly anchored when the trainee is on the verge of life and death. We see a young man stretching out his right hand. The boy leaves Mary, who expresses the hope that Christian will not be seriously harmed. Sitting comfortably in a chair, the child asks if Mary herself cook knows what. The woman answers in the affirmative. She hands the boy a box of chocolates. Lord Noga throws the treat into his mouth. Covering his mouth with his hand, the child declares that when he uses magic, for some reason, he always craves sweets. Dark jets of energy are visible above the water. Lord Noga, comfortably seated in his chair, says that watching the projection in the dark is the most enjoyable. Looking at the glowing orb in front of him, he states that they are now going to watch his grandson train. In front of the hero are a bear and a lizard. The monsters grin angrily. Mary thinks that even one blow from these creatures is enough to break all the bones of her nephew. Rock Lizard spits green liquid. She hits a tree behind the hero. Seeing how the poison eats away at the wood, the guy cries out in surprise. He understands that one mistake can cost him his life. He does not believe that this is just training. The young man calls the head of the family and asks if he hears him. Lord Noga eats another candy with an indifferent look. The boy licks his fingers. The hero says that the head of the family could not give him an impossible task. Mary thinks that, nevertheless, this task is most likely really impossible. The woman's chin is hidden by a high collar. The hero asks Lord Noga if he wants him to find a way to defeat monsters that are much stronger than him. Mary thinks that the old man actually wants these creatures to devour her nephew. Christian, rolling up his sleeves, declares that he is satisfied with everything. Raising his fists, the guy promises to find a way out of this situation. The bear receives a powerful blow. The hero crouches a little. He thinks that his opponent has incredible strength and speed. Jets of black energy can be seen above the guy's head. He thinks that there must still be some way to resist this beast. Lord Noga sees a hero and his 2-headed opponent inside the ball. He declares that this young man definitely has talent. Putting his foot on the chair, the boy declares that the hero's movements are very original. Mary, with a serious expression on her face, says that she is still a child nonetheless. Christian walks over the corpse of a dead bear. Mary and Lord Noga look on in surprise at what happens. The hero looks up. The mentor asks him how he managed to destroy this monster. Continuing to stand on top of the bear, Christian states that this monster had great strength and good defenses, but the reaction and resistance of magic were very weak, so he chose to target these vulnerabilities. Christian recalls striking the monster on the back. Concentric purple circles are visible under his hand. The young man explains that in one quick movement he poured dark mana directly into the bear's heart. Mary, in front of whom a glowing orb is visible, recognizes this technique. Simon appears out of nowhere and declares that it was a dark deathblow skill. He recalls that this technique is often used by Lord Noga. The boy props his chin with his hand. A huge lizard rushes at the hero. Christian, raising his head, says that he has completely forgotten that he had 2 opponents. The lizard opens its mouth wide. The hero looks at her, raising his left hand. The monster spits green liquid. The young man dodges the stream, and it rushes next to his head. The guy frowns at the monster. We see 3 spots on the monster's torso. Christian thinks that Rock Lizard has 3 stone hearts, and if you don't stop them all at the same time, the monster will regenerate all the time. The young man realizes that he needs to take a different approach. A purple vortex appears in his palm. Above the lizard sticking out its tongue, you can see crossed dark lines. Gritting his teeth, the hero raises his fists. One of the hearts seems to be shattered into pieces. We see large dark fragments. Simon, looking shocked at the glowing orb, says that it seems to have been a modified version of Dark Deathblow. Lord Noga demands that the young man move away as he can't see anything. Raising his index finger, the boy asks the woman if she taught her nephew this. Mary rejects this suggestion. Large rocks are visible inside the ball. Lord Noga states that most likely no one taught the guy, as it is impossible to just learn it. Simon shouts in delight that if things continue like this, Christian may not need to be trained in dark magic. Lord Noga states that he has seen more than enough, and that the ordeal is over. Birds are visible against the blue sky. Christian emerges from a purple circle, Lord Noga telling the guy that he is much more capable than he thought. Closing his eyes, the young man declares that the head of the family taught him a great lesson, and thanks to this, he was able to understand the principles of using dark mana on his own. Simon and Mary look at each other. The boy disgruntledly tells the hero not to be conceited. He informs that now they will begin a full-fledged training in dark magic. Lord Noga states that Mary and Simon can leave. The woman and the young man bow. The vampire declares that he understands everything. The hero's aunt looks back at her nephew with concern. We see graceful columns. Lord Noga asks the hero to answer what, in his opinion, dark magic is. The hero, who noticeably towers over the child, suggests that we are talking about dominating the enemy through absolute darkness. The boy asks what is considered absolute darkness then. Christian is silent. His mentor asks to look very carefully. The child has a slightly strange expression on his face. A bright flash occurs. Lord Noga gives the order to remove the seal. Christian looks up in fear. The guy opens his mouth. Under it you can see a hand with a raised index finger. The mentor declares that all the darkness is in front of the young man. He must walk for a long time, and then go up a huge staircase and get to the 12 abysses that are waiting for him. A shadow of his own fingers can be seen on the boy's face. Lord Noga asks the raven, who seeks wisdom, to accept the gift and give praise, and then devour the Lord surrounded by darkness. The boy puts his right hand forward. The energy emanating from his hand resembles a sword in its shape. The child makes a swift movement with a ghostly weapon. Behind the hero's back, the space seems to split. Christian stares at something with his eyes wide open. He clutches at his throat, realizing that it is as if he has just been stabbed here with a sword. Lord Noga, surrounded by jets of dark energy, states that his blade only cuts what it is supposed to cut. The boy explains that it is a black sword forged by the power of dark magic. The energy dissolves in the air. The child, standing with his back to the hero, reports that he gives him 1 month. Lord Noga walks away from the young man, stating that he must master the art of wielding a black sword, which has just been demonstrated. Christian stands next to the column. He moves away from her. The hero looks forward in shock. The hero runs, drops of sweat running down his cheeks. He does push-ups on one hand. Christian opens his shirt. The young man imagines himself as a real athlete, and understands that he needs to pump up a little more. The guy sits in the lotus position, thinking that there is no time to feel sorry for himself now, and he must train. Christian stretches out his hand with his fingers outstretched. Jets of violet energy rise above it. The young man looks up, sighing heavily. The hero looks at his hand. He had no doubt that it would be hard, but he cannot understand how many more attempts are needed to achieve his goal. A dense dark ball of energy appears above his arm, which immediately disappears into thin air. Christian thinks that he manages to summon the sword, but it exists for no more than 10 seconds. The young man remembers the sword he saw in the hand of the head of the family, and realizes that his weapon does not look like a black sword at all. Christian stretches out his hand again. He thinks that Lord Noga's sword is much more powerful and filled with primordial darkness. The appearance of the young man becomes black and white. He remembers the words of his mentor about the ladder, the 12 abysses and the raven that seeks wisdom. The guy realizes that there must be some hidden meaning in this spell. A lantern is on. The boy, behind whom Mary is walking, goes down the stairs. It is reported that the case takes place a month later. Looking at his companion, Lord Noga states that by this point, Christian should have realized that he was not succeeding, and realized the limits of his capabilities. The woman is silent. The boy asks her if Mary is really so worried. The hero's aunt asks if there is a faster way. She reminds that there are only about 2 months left before the test for the right to become an heir. Closing his eyes, the child states that given the purity of the dark energy that Christian has absorbed, rapid growth is still impossible, and if the boy forces progress, he will simply hit an insurmountable wall. Lord Noga states that it is therefore better if the young man is firmly on the basics and does not participate in the test at all. Christian notices the characters entering the room and states that he has already been waiting for the head of the family. Lord Noga looks at the guy in shock. The hero stands with a ghostly sword in his hand. He declares that the time is up, and he has been waiting for the arrival of his mentor. The boy and Mary look at the hero in surprise, who thanks the head of the family. Smiling, the young man states that thanks to the elder's lessons, he reached a level of 3 stars faster than he thought. The sword disappears from his hand. The young man, opening his mouth, looks at his hand. He admits that so far he has only been able to imitate a black sword, and reports that it took him a week to learn how to summon this weapon. The child silently looks at the hero, who says that he understands perfectly well that he is working only with a shell. Christian recalls the moment when Lord Noga was leaving him. He asks if the spell that mentions the 12 abysses meant that the black sword should contain all the attributes of mana. A drop of sweat runs down Lord Noga's face. He mentally calls the hero a daring boy and realizes that he has understood the true nature of the black sword. Raising his right hand, the young man excitedly declares that he can summon the sword again, albeit not for a long time. The head of the family thinks that this young man has not only exceeded all his expectations, but also fully understood the meaning of the task he received. The black sword reappears in the hero's hand. Lord Noga thinks that it takes a year for an ordinary demon to learn how to summon a black sword, and even a whole life is not enough to understand the 12 types of mana and awaken the true nature of this weapon, and the guy coped with this task in just a month. The hero, smiling, holds a black sword in his hand. The weapon disappears from the hero's hand again. The boy standing in front of him thinks that Christian may really be the only hope left on the cursed demonic path. A smile appears on the child's face. Mary looks at the boy in fright, who says that the hero must be ready to start real training tomorrow, and the tasks will be very difficult. Christian is radiant with happiness. Lord Noga and Mary leave. The young man shouts that he is ready for anything and trusts the head of the family, who is his mentor. The guy happily clenches his fists. Stars fly around him. He says that now that the first obstacle has been overcome, he can have a few drinks. There are bottles on the shelves. The hero seems to be in complete ecstasy. He happily examines the bottle, declaring that he can rest and drink something that he could not even dream of before. A door is visible in front of the hero. He thinks that it is better to drink where Marie will not see him. The guy turns around in fright when he hears someone calling out to him. A disgruntled girl with blue hair declares that the hero, as always, drinks in the middle of the day, and nothing else could be expected from him. Christian tries to understand who it is in front of him. The young man thoughtfully examines the beauty. He realizes that a 3-star demon is in front of him, and by the color of her eyes, you can conclude that she is not a member of a dark family. The guy asks how the girl knows him. Amazement appears on her face. Furiously, she asks the hero to repeat his words. The girl trembles with anger and cannot find words to express her indignation. Finally, she calls the hero a bastard and stabs him in the head. Christian flies far back. The maid suggests that the princess leave. She declares that they should not waste their time on such garbage. Sebastian runs up to the hero sitting on the floor. The young man, holding his cheek, asks the man who took the bottle of rum from him who she is and why she is so rude to him. Sebastian replies that she is Princess Marissa of the Venom clan. The hero holds his cheek in amazement. He remembers a torn sheet of paper. Marissa looks very annoyed. The hero says that it seems to have been his fiancée. Sebastian clarifies that it is his ex-fiancée. Christian, rubbing the back of his head, says he has a small problem. Marissa walks down the hallway with a young man. The girl is very angry. Ants run on the grass. 8-year-old Marissa is looking at insects. She is very bored. The girl sees people talking. She thinks that all the attention of others will go to her brother, and does not understand why her father brought her with him to visit a dark family. Marissa, sitting on her lap, looking down, she hears one of the adults asking if the girl is an illegitimate daughter. The answer is that Duke Wham must have gone crazy. The baby looks down sadly. Someone says that the Duke's son is of no use and most likely, the man just wants to gain useful connections by marrying his daughter. The girl notices someone's legs. She looks up in surprise. The hero asks the baby what she is doing here completely alone. Marissa looks at the boy with huge eyes. Looking decisively at her interlocutor, she declares that she should not be called a baby. But Marissa, Christian declares that he understands everything, and will take this into account for the future. Crouching down in front of the girl, the boy says that his name is Christian. Marissa asks again in surprise, after which she wonders if his father is Count Khazar. The hero, carelessly looking at the girl, advises her not to pay attention to what the adults say, and declares that she can take revenge on them when she grows up. Marissa looks at the hero in surprise, who asks if she understood him. The girl, hugging the doll, resolutely says that she will do so. She promises to become the strongest demon and crush everyone who looks askance at her. Christian, smiling radiantly, declares that Marissa is quite ambitious, and this is what the true heiress of the dark demon family should be. The girl looks at the hero with huge eyes. Putting his fist to his mouth, the guy declares that if Marissa is the strongest, then he will join her to be next to the winner. Holding out his hand to the little girl, Christian says that in this case, the future strongest demon should honor him with showing her the estate. Marissa, still on her knees, looks at the hero who has extended his hand to her. The girl has just huge eyes. She stretches out her hand to the boy and says that she agrees to take a walk with him. Marissa shakes her head. A young man is standing next to her. She thinks that all this is in the past. Marissa lies in bed with a doll in her arms. We see a torn paper sheet with a photo of the hero. Marissa cries bitterly. She thinks that even if her marriage was arranged only to keep the peace between the two families, the future she once dreamed of and because of which she did not sleep at night is gone, since she is no longer the stupid girl she used to be. A guard with a spear bows to the girl. Marissa opens the door. Langham, looking at a piece of paper, greets the princess. The girl, standing in front of his table, declares that she and the Marquis have not seen each other for a long time. The man asks what brought her to him. A bright light shines from the wooden chest. Marissa says that as the Marquis surely knows, a relic has appeared in the neutral zone between the territories of the two families. Langham replies that he's heard about it, and asks what the Venom clan is going to do about it. Reminds them that the Venom clan took the relic last time, and wonders if they're going to give it up this time. Smiling, Marissa states that this is not part of her plans, and the Dark family would not voluntarily part with this artifact if they were in the place of the Venom clan. Smiling, the man asks if this means that he is being offered a fair competition. The girl offers to form teams and send them in search of the relic. She states that whoever finds it first will take it, and each team must have a maximum of 10 demons up to 3 stars. In front of us is a map of the area. Langham says that this decision will prevent conflict between their families. Marissa, who has a dark castle behind her, states that this is what it was all for, as if their families suffer heavy losses, it will only benefit their enemies, which will be especially dangerous given the current instability in Four Kings Dominion. Langham taps his fingers on the table. He says he agrees and accepts the terms. Marissa looks at him in surprise. The girl, looking suspiciously at her interlocutor, tries to understand why he agreed so easily. The Marquis declares that he has one additional condition. Looking at the girl, he says that if the Venom clan breaks the agreement, they will give up both the current relic and the one the clan received last time. Marissa asks what Langham means by breaking the agreement. There is a chessboard on the table. The Marquis declares that his opponents should not use dastardly tricks to thwart the demons of his family. He reminds them that traps and ambushes are signature techniques of the Venom clan. Marissa frowns at her interlocutor. She declares that she accepts the additional conditions, and dirty tricks will not be used. Looking closely at the girl, Langham asks if the princess will personally lead her clan's squad. Standing in front of him on the red carpet, Marissa states that, according to the plan, she is the commander. The man says that in this case, he will look forward to how the famous young 10,000 Venoms performs. Closing her eyes, Marissa says that in this case, her party will be waiting for rivals from the Dark family on the appointed day of the expedition. Langham sits in an armchair with his head in his hand. He gets up from his seat. The man walks forward. He walks over to the chessboard. The Marquis takes the Black King in his hand. He knocks over the White Queen and pronounces the name of his interlocutor. The next to capsize is a black horse. The man pronounces the name Jupian. Langham puts the king on a black square. Taking his hand away from him, the man says that it will be a beautiful scene filled with the loudest screams. Autumn trees are visible not far from the castle. It is reported that 2 months have passed, and if Christian trained hard, then the others did not stand still either. Christian and Lord Noga fight with black swords. Marissa looks into the doll's eyes. She will offend her lost love. Royan is sitting by the window. He lost the competition and faded into the background. Ashit, gritting his teeth, holds a sword in his hand. In front of us is a girl whose head is covered with a hood. She looks warily over her shoulder, and has already begun to act to bring the future closer. Before us is a complex mechanical device. Langham, accompanied by several people, stands in front of the hero. He declares that the time has come when the hero must show himself. The young man puts his right hand forward. Ashit looks at the guy in shock, realizing that he has a black sword in his hand. Christian, looking up at the son of the head of the family, thinks that the expression on his face is simply priceless. The hero, smiling, remembers the advice that the teacher gave him, namely that he should not show the true black sword. Since Langham in this case can entrust him with a more difficult task, the mentor urges the young man not to behave arrogantly just because he considers himself a genius. Christian thinks that today he restrained himself, but will look forward to when he sees a real shock on Ashid's face. Langham, looking at the hero in surprise, says that he recognizes his progress, so he will give him a second task. He informs him that the demon expedition will soon go in search of the relic that appeared in the neutral zone. The hero stands with his hand raised. Langham declares that the Venom clan is also participating in this expedition, and if the hero shows his best side during this mission, he will be recognized as the heir. Christian looks at the man a little surprised. The task he received seems easy to him. The guy asks if he will go on this expedition alone. Langham replies that a squad will go there, which will be led by the second Princess Jupian. In front of us are concentrated members of the expedition. Folding his hands in front of him, the Marquis declares that Royan was originally supposed to go on this mission. According to him, the hero had a unique opportunity, so he should treat it as a great honor. The hero, looking at the man, declares that he understands everything. He leaves on the red carpet, accompanied by several people. Ashid, looking at his father with concern, says that Christian can do it this time again. Showing his best side, Langham assures the offspring that he should not worry. Ashid looks at his parent in surprise, who states that everything is going according to plan. A dark figure is reflected in the man's eyes. He says that his son must be ready to act when the right moment comes. Autumn trees are illuminated by sunlight. The hero expected to be sent on a deadly mission. He passes by the servants who are tidying up the monument. Christian thinks that he still has a very bad feeling about what is happening. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, the hero remembers the words of the Marquis that Royan was originally supposed to go on this expedition. The young man tries to remember what happened to the named young man in his past life. A golden wreath is put on the young man's head. The hero recalls that it was not Christian who was appointed heir, but Royan. But during the Great War, nothing was heard about this young man. We see someone's legs. The question is whether the hero wants to know everything. Guy stroking a fluffy animal. The fox, closing his eyes with pleasure, says that the young man must continue to caress her, and if he stops, he will not know anything. A young man combs the tail of an animal. The fox, squinting, informs him of the incident with the demon amulet. She says that there was a conflict between the Dark family and the Venom clan over the relic. Corpses lie on the ground. The animal says that almost nothing is known about this incident in the outside world, although the squad of the Dark family was destroyed. The two figures stand with their backs to each other. The fox reports that the Venom clan has also suffered losses, but for some reason, both sides have decided not to publicize this incident. A red crystal hangs above his palm. The fox says that it was this incident that became the seed of the disaster that broke out afterwards. Chris, worried, asks how this could have happened. A bloody corpse lies on the ground. The fox reports that Lord Noga died at the hands of his son, the Marquis of Langham. The killer's face is spattered with blood. The animal says that if it hadn't happened, the bloodletting demon king would not have been able to win so easily. That is, in fact, the incident with the amulet brought the era of destruction closer. Christian stares thoughtfully into the distance. In front of us are Royan and Jupian. A dagger sticks out of the young man's back. Blood gushing out of his mouth. The hero thinks that if the squad of the Dark family was destroyed, it means that now instead of Royan, he himself is on the death list. Before us is Langham. The hero thinks that as he thought, this test will not be easy. He understands that the Marquis of Langham is trying to carry out a very insidious plan. The young man rubs his chin thoughtfully. He thinks that without ironclad evidence of malice it will be impossible to expose the Marquis. Christian understands that now he has only 3 stars, and it is unlikely that he will be able to somehow prevent what is planned. The hero turns. He thinks that in any case he needs to be ready for anything, and right now he just needs to leave here. Someone asks the young man to wait. Looking over his shoulder, Christian sees a girl who looks very much like a boy. Jupian, folding his arms over his chest, calls the guy a moron and asks where he is going. The hero, looking at the interlocutor, asks if it makes any difference where he is going now. Jupian states that, as far as she knows, he was included in the expedition. She says that she really does not like this idea, and the guy takes the place where Royan was supposed to be. Christian, smiling, says that if this is a joint hike, then he will not have to do everything alone. The guy states that Roin is still an idiot and could hardly help his comrades in any way. Jupian looks at the hero angrily. She makes a sharp throw. A cold weapon flies at the hero. His blade glows. We see the eyes of the young man. A white trace is visible next to his face. Jupian looks at the hero in shock. Christian turns to the dagger above his head and declares that this exchange of pleasantries is enough to greet him. The young man's hand is visible next to the dagger. He says that since he and Jupian can't stand each other, it would be better if they didn't see each other before the expedition began. Smiling, the young man raises his right hand. He declares that he needs to do some business and wishes the girl good luck in preparing for the hike. Jupian draws a dagger from the stone. The girl recalls how the blade flew at the hero. The hilt of the weapon is visible next to the guy's eye. Jupian realizes that Christian was following the blade and did not even try to dodge, as he was well aware that she threw him past him. Next to the girl, an ugly creature that recently wiped the monument is sobbing. Jupian thinks that Christian may be much more dangerous than she thought. Christian walks through a market in a border village. He drinks from a wooden mug. Someone grabs him by the face. A blue card is visible above the hero's hand. Having picked up a barbecue, the young man goes forward under envious glances. He says that he has not had such a good rest for a long time, and could have been idling all his life with great pleasure. A young man chews meat. He thinks that the store he is looking for must be somewhere nearby. Christian notices a dark figure around the corner. He realizes that he must first shake off the trail of the guys who are following him. The hero has several kebab sticks in his hand. He thinks that the Marquis of Langham's men are following him. Someone's hand covers the hero's mouth. Christian tries to say something, but it doesn't work. The girl whispers in the young man's ear so that he does not make noise. The hero sees a rather cute face and tries to understand who it is in front of him. A black-haired guy lies on the ground. The girl states that the hero was followed, but her people took care of this person, so the hero does not have to worry. Dusting off his clothes, the guy says that the girl gagged him and brought him here. He asks how he cannot worry here, after which he asks who is in front of him. The girl replies that she serves 4 kings. Christian looks at his interlocutor in surprise. Putting her hand to her chest, she states that she is trying to prevent the riots spreading across the territory ruled by her masters. The girl says that they should go to some quiet place and asks if the young man will go with her. Christian, looking at her, hesitantly tells her to show the way. The entrance to a narrow alley is littered with wooden boxes. Christian asks in surprise how long it will take them to go. People with torches can be seen above the girl's head. She states that demons have been disappearing without a trace in 4 Kings' Dominion lately, and even safe zones in the city disappear one by one every day. A map is visible above the skeleton's head. The girl says that, as the guy knows very well, Dominion is now torn apart by the conflict of 3 families and has turned into a place where fear reigns, and the heads of families do not care about the lives of ordinary demons. Tied up people pass in front of the prison bars. The girl states that she has come to the conclusion that the fight against crime will require the help of many families. Then she says that she cannot ask for assistance without offering anything in return. Christian looks at the girl in surprise. She declares that she will provide the guy with information that can disperse the storm raging over the Dark family. On the feet of the beauty are magnificent shoes. Looking at the young man, the girl says that the Marquis of Langham has colluded with a high-ranking member of the Venom clan, and their goal is to kill Princess Marissa. Christian looks at his interlocutor in shock. He imagines a girl in shackles, and realizes that they want to kill not only himself, but also his ex-fiancée. The young man does not understand why someone needs this. Corpses are visible under the torn banners. The girl informs that if both families lose their key figures, the troublemakers in Dominion will become even more brazen, and in the end, the balance between the 12 demon clans will collapse, leading to a gigantic tragedy. The girl, lifting her hood, says that this is why she wants the guy to carefully prepare for the expedition to find the relic. Looking at the hero, she declares that, in addition, she hopes that Christian will become the heir and stand in the way of those who threaten peace and tranquility. A drop of sweat runs down the hero's cheek. He understands that his interlocutor knows that this expedition can make him the heir, and this means that she has excellent sources of information, while the young man still doubts that his new acquaintance can be dealt with. Raising his right hand, he asks why he should trust a girl who has no proof. He states that if she wants to cooperate with him, she must offer something in return. Putting her hands forward, the girl says that the young man wants too much. Waving her off, Christian declares that in this case he is not interested in cooperation. The girl asks the guy to wait. She reaches under the sleeve of her robes. The beauty stretches out her fist to the hero and tells him to take what she gives him. Christian looks shocked at the object offered to him. Waving his hand, he moves away from the girl. She looks after him. A shadow is visible behind the beauty's back. Jets of black energy rise up. The girl sadly asks why she can't show the hero her true appearance. The ghostly monster looming over her states that it's all just for her own well-being. He says that if Christian is in danger and drops her name, the situation will get much worse. The girl agrees that this is true. The ghostly creature advises her to temporarily observe everything from the sidelines. It calls the beauty by name, Idrine. Putting the hood on her head again, the girl says that she understands everything. Christian is walking down the street. A wide smile appears on his face. The hero has a VIP card in his hands. He thinks that he is incredibly lucky. A green bird sits in the cage, reportedly taking place in the dark auction house, a secret market where smuggled relics and rare creatures can be purchased. Christian knows that only nobles and very wealthy buyers can get entrance tickets to this place. The young man remembers events from his past life and thinks that then none of his squad had a pass, and getting inside turned out to be an incredibly troublesome task. The hero sees the inscription on the VIP card and realizes that he has never heard the name Ria de Wolfman. Christian remembers the girl's face and her words that the Marquis of Langham colluded with a high-ranking representative of the Venom clan. The young man shakes his head. He thinks that he still does not know who he was talking to, so it is too early to trust the girl. We see a sign with a sealed envelope. Christian looks to his left, thinking that he should be better prepared. The hero tells the postal employee that he wants to send the bird. He declares that, of course, it can be done, and invites the guy to write his message. Christian writes on a small sheet of paper. A postal worker attaches a note to the owl's leg. The bird takes off. Christian, smiling, thinks he's got one thing out of the way, and now it's time to pay a visit to someone he knows. In front of us is a man who is holding a glass in his hands. Christian approaches the luxurious structure. The doorman standing at the entrance says that the guy is not allowed to enter, and he must leave immediately. Christian shows him a VIP card and asks if he won't be allowed to pass even with that. The doorman looks shocked at the pass presented to him. Two servants at once kindly invite the hero to go inside and apologize. Once inside, Christian examines the audience. The guy, who has a mask on his face, looks to the right of him. A man in a suit looks at the guy in amazement, and asks if it is really Lady Ria de Wolfman in front of him. Christian, smiling, declares that he will be Ria de Wolfman, since he has such a whim today, after which he asks if such eccentricity is acceptable. The employee of the establishment looks at the hero doubtfully, but declares that everything is fine. Christian asks if the man can call the manager of this branch. He asks again in amazement. Showing the VIP card, the young man asks if his interlocutor hears him, after which he repeats that he needs a branch manager, and immediately, Christian is sitting on a luxurious sofa. The man, looking at him in fright, promises to bring the manager immediately. Comfortably lounging on the sofa, the hero examines the luxurious chandeliers and other furnishings. He thinks that everything here is done to the highest class and nothing else could be expected from the Rudolph Merchant Guild. Under the emblem of the organization, jewels, a map, and even a peacock are visible. The hero knows that the Rudolph Merchant Guild is a giant guild that can rival the Deer Guild representing the Union. It is so powerful that it controls almost the entire black market and controls many trade routes in the Dark Empire. It is believed that if the Rudolph Merchant Guild can't get something, then no one else can. A young man in glasses appears in the doorway. Smiling, he thanks the hero for waiting and introduces himself as Rubid, the manager of the auction house's branch and the head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild. Sitting down on the sofa, the feminine young man says that the hero seems to have been looking for him, after which he asks what the guy needs, who demands to bring Rena to him. The young man looks shocked at the unusual visitor. He asks again in surprise. The hero wonders if he really does not know who Rena is. The answer is that he is the head of the Deer Guild. On the wall hangs a picture in an expensive frame. Rubid states that of course he can't bring a guild leader representing the Union here. Squinting slyly, Christian says that his interlocutor's words cannot be true, and Rena, as it seems to him, is right in front of him. The young man looks at the young man in shock. The interlocutors are shown from under the ceiling of the room. Rubid asks what the hero is talking about. He suggests that he is dealing with the action of a relic. The shock does not disappear from the face of the young man. Christian declares that from now on they will meet quite often, so it is possible to stop this useless performance. Rubid grits his teeth. Jets of blue energy rise around him. A blue-eyed girl holds a mask in her hands. She asks how the hero recognized her. Christian smiles. He thinks that he had a rather specific relationship with this beauty in his past life. The young man remembers how she ran away from him with a bag of gold on her shoulders. Then he himself hides from her with a box filled with expensive items. The hero remembers that he himself also made a fool of her several times. Rena looks at the hero in amazement, who asks if the head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild is ashamed to use such a lousy relic. He states that the disguise provided by this artifact is clearly unsatisfactory. Rena looks at the mask in amazement. She does not understand how the young man recognized it. He, smiling, thinks that, of course, he is bluffing, and it is almost impossible to destroy the effect of a real relic. He suggests that the girl's face is too large and the mask does not completely cover it. Rena, who is clearly offended, says this is not true. Raising her hands, the girl states that this is not Ria de Wolfman either. Then she says that the guy seems to have gained a pretty decent reputation in the Dark Empire lately. Rena angrily says that the guy has gained power and status, but behaves like an ill-mannered boor, and no one will judge her if she kicks out a villain who used stolen personal data to get into a place intended only for selected people, which might start a rumor that a Union spy was quietly operating in a Dark Empire. Rena, trembling with anger, looks at the interlocutor. She asks what he wants from her. The hero smiles. Shiny jewelry is visible around his neck, and his bag is stuffed with elegant bottles. He lifts a bag of money above his head. Christian, who has diamonds in his ears, recalls Rena agreeing to give him everything he demanded, and states that he got a good result for a small altercation. Rena, who is visible behind the young man, indignantly shouts that it was not an altercation, but the most brazen blackmail. The hero reasonably notes that he is doing everything to prevent the end of the world, so the whole world should be grateful to him. Above Langham's head are familiar characters. The young man thinks that, of course, what he has received will not be able to significantly increase the strength of his squad. However, it seems to him that now he is quite capable of thwarting a couple of the Marquis' insidious plans. young fighters are training. Christian, throwing his suit over his arm, walks forward. He is called up by Jupian, who asks why the guy is wandering around. The hero calmly stands in front of the members of his squad. Jupian informs him that they are going on an expedition the day after tomorrow, and it would be nice if the hero joined the training. Scratching his cheek, the young man states that he has been having a lot of fun lately and is very tired. He says with an impudent look that he is going to be as useless as Roin, so he does not want to bother himself with any activities. Mockingly throwing up his hand, the hero says that he completely trusts his future comrades. The guy with red hair calls him a complete idiot. Jupian tells the young man not to pay attention to this character. He tries to object. The girl says that Christian is not worthy of the opportunity that is given to him, so it is better not to touch him. Jupian frowns after the departing hero. She thinks that if he does not prove himself during the mission, then he will be worse off. Rubbing the back of her head, she tries to understand why Christian is acting so stupid. Clouds are floating outside the window. Christian, next to whom Rebirth stands, declares that he did a good job. The head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild asks what the young man is going to do with all this. He replies that it does not concern the interlocutor. A suitcase is lowered to the floor. Rebirth says that the young man asked for this too. Rebirth, opening the suitcase, declares that it all looks very strange. The hero replies that now there is not much to choose. The head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild, opening the door, declares that he has no idea what Christian is going to do, but asks for a promise that he will not tell anyone who is hiding under the guise of Rebirth. The hero says that, of course, he is not going to do this, and offers to meet in the near future. The answer is that it would be nice if this did not happen. Christian, smiling, asks what he should now call his interlocutor, Rebirth or Rina, after which he informs that war may break out very soon. The head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild looks at the guy in fear. In front of us is a map of the area. Christian reports that Rina is moving between the Alliance and the Dark Empire, and should know how unstable the situation on the continent is now. He states that if the war really begins, the routes of movement will be closed and the girl will have to choose where to stay in the Union or in the Empire, which means that her income will be reduced by exactly half. Rina, in the guise of Rebirth, looks at the young man. She asks if he is exaggerating, confidently speaking about the imminent outbreak of war. The head of the guild says that war is very serious, and it is better not to joke with such talk. The guy states that if you remember what rumors are now coming from Dominion, all this does not look like some kind of exaggeration. Rina looks at her interlocutor anxiously. She looks at the papers. The girl thinks that the atmosphere around her lately is really not the best, and many families are in favor of starting a war with the Union. One of the sheets shows a guild report stating that the situation in Four Kings Dominion is very volatile, and then lists the alarming actions of various parties. Rina, looking at the hero, asks why he is telling her all this, since he does not really expect that some merchant will prevent the war. There is a fire burning in the furnace. Christian declares that of course she will not be able to do it. Smiling, the guy declares that the head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild can become his sponsor, and he will make sure that the war does not happen in the future. Rina anxiously asks if the hero is capable of this, and how he is going to fulfill his promise. The map depicts mountains and castles. Christian informs that in order for Dominion to start a war, his troops must pass through the Southern Magic Nation, which is ruled by a dark family, and if he makes the necessary preparations as an heir, the worst may be avoided, and this is the only way that the girl will avoid reducing her income by half. Smiling, the hero holds out his hand and asks if the head of the Rudolph Merchant Guild will cooperate with him. She looks at the guy a little frightened. She pays attention to the young man's eyes and realizes that he does not seem to be deceiving her. The girl's gaze is very serious. She understands that investments in this young man are likely to pay off with interest. Christian and Rina shake hands. The girl, looking into the eyes of the hero, says that if he betrays her trust again, then she will never deal with him again. The hero replies that he always keeps his word, while he himself thinks that he has enough reasons to continue to exploit his old acquaintance. Waving goodbye, the young man advises that the money-hungry merchant take care of herself. Green powder is visible in the mortar. Christian wearily wipes the sweat from his forehead. With his hands on his belt, he thinks that if a high-ranking member of the Venom clan is involved, he needs to take care of the antidote beforehand. There is a kettle next to the guy on the brazier. The young man thinks that he has not been preparing such potions for a very long time, and hopes that he has not yet lost his skills. Steam rises from the spout of the kettle. In front of us is the entrance to the noble house of medicine. Someone calls the hero a little brat. Chris is sitting next to the kettle with a fan in his hands. He hears that the fire is too weak. A pretty girl advises the hero to wave his fan harder. Ella, the 26th chapter of Noble House of Medicine, reminds the hero that some plants show their properties only when exposed to high temperatures. Chris, looking at the girl with concern, asks her to stop giving him obvious advice and lie down to rest. The hero remembers that the first time he met her on the battlefield was during the First Great War. The ground is strewn with corpses. Ella bandages the young man's wound. He remembers that the girl was young, however, she had no other choice and participated in the fights because the bloodletting Demon King destroyed her entire clan. With people standing behind Ella, the hero thinks that since the Noble House of Medicine was the best among the 7 great healing houses of the Union, the Demon King treated it as a serious threat. Ella covers her face with her hands. Blood splatters fly upwards. The hero remembers that this girl also failed to escape the sword of the Demon King. Steam rises above the kettle. Chris is waving his fan. The girl, smiling faintly, looks at him. She says that no matter how she looks at the young man, he seems very strange to her. if only because, for example, he managed to recreate the elixirs of her clan after not the most intelligible explanation. Chris continues to wave his fan. Ella declares that she is very sorry that she did not meet him sooner. Behind the hero's back you can see a girl lying on the bed. The guy says that he does not understand why the noble house of medicine is called a saint, even if its head can barely stand on his feet. Ella, raising her left hand, declares that she is still alive after what the Demon King did to her, only thanks to her knowledge of medicine. The girl is bleeding from her mouth. She says that she can't just lie in bed, as hell is happening around, in which everyone writhes and screams in pain. Ella states that if the noble house of medicine disappears, it will be a real tragedy. Chris looks back at the girl. Turning back to the fire, he states that clinging to the past is the most useless thing, so Ella must focus on her healing. The girl looks down sadly. She touches the stack of books and asks the guy to take a look at her. Standing behind the hero, Ella says that these books contain the invaluable knowledge of her clan, and only a small part of them were able to survive the war. The girl asks Chris to take them. Ella coughs. The hero approaches her and asks her to rest. Clinging to the hero's hand, Ella declares that she wants to ask him something. Looking at the young man, she asks that Chris save the suffering instead of her, because if she knows that her work continues, she can die in peace. The girl asks if the hero can give her such a promise. Chris looks at her excitedly. Leaning over to Ella, he asks if he can call her his mentor from now on. The girl smiles. She says that she has chosen a very good student if he is ready to call someone who cannot fully teach him a mentor. Chris scatters seeds in a flowering meadow. The hero sadly lowers his gaze. He hears that from this moment Chris has become the 27th chapter of Noble House of Medicine. As he cares for a wounded man, he recalls that due to a large part of the library being destroyed, he was unable to fully master the clan's secret technique, medicinal chi arts. But he kept the promise he made to the girl on the battlefields. A fire is visible around the young man. He thinks that thanks to this he began to be considered a saint. Christian examines a tiny dark ball. He imagines a smiling Ella and, mentally addressing her as a mentor, declares that she is most likely now in a better world, and he, having been reborn, will continue to fulfill the promise he made to her. An owl flies over a magnificent building with spires. On an iron tray there is a message. Someone informs the gentleman that Christian has sent a message. Leiden happily exclaims that he has been waiting for him. The count unfolds the message, and he says that, as Mary told him, his son has safely obtained the dark core. Leiden looks at the unfolded note. The man frowns. He turns to a servant standing behind him, who says that he is listening to his master. Smiling, the count says that it looks like he will have to prepare something for his offspring. The squad is located in the Biskin Mountains, on the border between the Dark Clan and the Venom Clan. Jupian states that solo movement is prohibited, and everyone must move in squads of at least 2 people. Her subordinates confirm that they have received the order. Christian, raising his hand, declares that he will go alone. Jupian looks at him in surprise. The guy says that it will be much more convenient for him. We see a hole in the ground. The hero declares that if you move at a snail's speed, it will take a very long time to find the relic, and the Venom Clan will probably do it faster. Jupian warns the boy that there are demon beasts of level 4 and above in this area. She says that the guy should not hope to be rescued if he gets into trouble. Putting his hands behind his back, the young man declares that the girl herself should try not to get into trouble. He hands her a vial filled with pills and asks her to take an antidote that can resist the poisons used by the Venom Clan. 2 dark balls fall into the hand. The hero says that his remedy is very effective, so he asks to accept it, even if someone thinks he is bluffing. Christian swallows the pills and suggests that his teammates do the same. Jupian looks at his ally in displeasure. Marissa, with members of her squad visible behind her, states that her opponents seem to be starting to ferment internally. Jupian, folding his arms over his chest, states that the Venom Clan team is late. The hero's ex-fiancée frowns that she arrived just in time and it was her competitors who were too impatient. She states that she should probably thank them for not breaking the rules and starting to scout the area in advance. The girl asks if Jupian knows the rules by which this competition will be held. The commander of the Dark Guild team, looking at her rival, declares that it is forbidden to set traps and set ambushes. Marissa asks why the girl speaks so aggressively. Jupian reminds them that they are now enemies, and then asks if Marissa wants her to change her tone to an official one. The princess, whose leg we see, declares that there is no need for this. She looks into the eyes of her opponent. Jupian, turning to his fighters, gives the order to advance. Marissa, in turn, declares that her team is beginning to explore the area, and orders to check the communication equipment. Christian throws something on the ground. He declares that he will go forward first. Jupian looks at the guy in amazement. 2 flasks are visible behind the back of the fleeing hero. The squad leader cannot understand what the young man who has just got rid of the communicator is thinking about. A monster is visible in front of the hero. Christian strikes. He thinks that in his past life he has walked the length and breadth of the demon lands, so he knows perfectly well where the monsters live. As the hero sheathes his sword, he thinks that the level 4 monsters must be found much further. The young man remembers the face of the girl who said that he shouldn't expect to be helped, and realizes that Jupian may have been worried about him. Christian shakes his head. It seems to him that this cannot be, since the girl's icy heart is incapable of such feelings. The hero turns his head. He thinks that the dastardly plans of the Marquis of Langham must already be carried out, but he does not see the assassins hiding behind the trees. Looking up, Christian thinks he has to find the relic first. He is being watched by Marissa. The hero notices his former fiancée and calls her by name. For a while, the guy and the girl look at each other in silence. Christian raises his left hand. He realizes that he somehow ended up on the route of the Venom Clan team, apologizes to the girl and says that he must have lost his way, and will leave here immediately. Marissa, frowning at the guy, tells him to be careful. The hero turns away from the girl. Judging by the expression in his eyes, he remembers something. He imagines a girl lying on the ground and realizes that she was the target of the villains. It seems to him that in the Venom Clan someone wants to sacrifice the princess. The guy says that he wants to ask one question. Marissa looks at the guy intently. She asks what exactly Christian wanted to say. He wonders if she is really illegitimate. Marissa looks at her ex-fiancé in shock. He asks if she is hated within her clan. The girl's face is distorted with disgust. She calls the hero a disgusting scum. Memories from his past life pop up in the young man's memory. He understands that, without implying anything bad, he said stupid things. Christian apologizes for his words and says that he did not want to offend anyone. A green line is visible next to his face. The tree behind the young man is smoking. Marissa, angrily looking at the hero, demands that he apologize right now. Christian stares at her, frightened. The young people are standing opposite each other. The hero thinks that, judging by the reaction, the girl does not feel hostile attitude towards herself within the family, and now it is necessary to find out the real motives of those people who wanted to destroy her, while the young man understands that Marissa will pose a danger to him. The girl stands with her index finger in the direction of the hero. Christian thinks that even if she returns to her comrades, it is completely unclear whether she will survive or not. A man in a robe is seen next to the young man. Christian thinks that he must stall for time until reinforcements arrive. He asks if the girl has just broken the rules. Marissa looks angrily at her ex-fiancé. Indignantly clenching her fists, she asks the guy to repeat his words, who, pointing his finger at the tree, states that there is evidence on this plant that Marissa attacked first. Smoke rises from a black crack, and Christian asks if this means that the Dark Clan should get the relic. The girl reaches into her bag and declares that the hero is mistaken. 3 flasks appear in her hand. She says that after the insult to her family, and the shame she had to endure after the breakdown of the engagement, all this will be considered self-defense. Marissa looks at the hero with hatred. She launches all 3 bottles at the guy. Christian stares at her, frightened. The guy overlaps with the block. He drops to his knees and begins to cough. Christian holds his chest. Marissa asks if he liked Blue Bloom. We see the girl's fingers. She declares that if she snaps them, there will be an explosion and the poison will begin to spread through the hero's veins, so he must apologize immediately. Then she corrects herself and demands that he beg her not to kill him. In the left hand of the beauty, 3 more flasks are visible. She launches them at the guy too. The dark figure of the young man is barely visible in a cloud of green smoke. Streams of green energy curl around the hand. Christian looks into the girl's eyes. He tells her that unfortunately he can't do what she asks. Thin blue lines are visible on the hero's neck and face. Christian and Marissa touch their foreheads. The hero says that now he understands why the girl was nicknamed the Little Poisonous Witch. Marissa looks at the guy in shock, who declares that this poison causes terrible torment until it leaves the body. Beauty snatches her hand from the young man's hand and declares that she does not believe what is happening, since only she has the antidote to this poison. Christian asks the princess if she has ever heard of the Divine Healer Clan. He states that he found inspiration from this organization and prepared something on his own. In front of us is a jar with dark balls. The young man says that what he has made can be called the universal antidote. Marissa angrily asks what the hero is talking about. The girl misses the punch. Her eyes close. Christian picks up his ex-fiancée. Looking at her, he asks her to rest for a while and promises to save her. The eyes of the beauty are closed. Marissa is tied to a tree. Christian examines a ball with a chain. A blue projection appears above the bright sphere. Circles and triangles are visible on it. 2 young men look at their own spheres in surprise, one of them saying that Lady Marissa sent a message. The guy carefully examines the projection. We see plants. The guy says that the commander ordered reconnaissance in the rocks. He does not understand why it is necessary to go in a completely different direction. The young man happily throws up his hands. He says that now they don't have to meet the bastards from the Venom Clan. You can see the light between the trees. The hero rushes forward, making long jumps. There is a red chest on the pedestal. The hero thinks that constellations, that is, objects endowed with the power of demons, are either hidden forever or fall from the sky, as if tempting pathetic earthly creatures to find a use for them. A chest hanging in the sky emits a bright light. We see a delicate pendant. The young man thinks that the relic that fell this time will most likely be the Twilight Amulet. Christian remembers a fox. He thinks that Rania, the chatterbox of darkness, informed him that this relic had been lying unattended for a long time until the Marquis of Langham figured out, after 2 years of research, how to use it. A murdered old man lies on the floor. The young man remembers that this is how Lord Noga died. The guy looks thoughtfully into the distance. He understands that in order to delay the destruction of the world at least a little, it is necessary to prevent the death of this old man. The hero notices something to his right. He jumps down to the ground. Christian sees a damaged green leaf. The young man examines it. Footprints are visible in front of him. Christian thinks that in this deserted area they simply should not exist. The hero puts his fingers to his eyes. He thinks that the relics have no legs, and they cannot walk, which means that someone is ahead of him. Not far from the young man, a group of people is visible. One of them asks if there are any bastards from the Dark Clan yet. The answer is negative. In front of the dark-haired guy there are demons in hoods. The young man asks how much longer to wait, after which he calls the members of the squad that the hero enters the inhibited snails. Christian stares at the people standing nearby, and from the energy emanating from them, he realizes that they are representatives of the Venom clan, and one of them is a 4-star demon, and the woman may have already grown to the 5th star. The attackers look at each other. Eyes glow under the hood. Christian senses that one of these characters is not emitting the energy of the Venom clan. The young man cannot understand who he is, but he sees that the core of this demon is incredibly cloudy. The brunette, who has a mask on his face, declares that all the trouble is because of the cursed witch named Marissa. He admits that he would not mind if this bastard died. The woman puts her hand to her chest and bows to the guy. The hero thinks that, judging by the words of this villain, he is the direct heir of the Venom clan, and most likely, what is happening is related to the struggle for the inheritance. A tall demon with glowing eyes declares that they will destroy all pests anyway. A red chest is visible under the young man's feet. The villain declares that they agreed to hand over the relic. An emerald shines on the lid of the chest. One of the scoundrels asks what the relic is inside. The answer is that it doesn't matter at all, and Langham will take care of it after they deal with Marissa. The guy orders to find the bastards they are waiting for. The demons, whose heads are covered by hoods, bow, indicating that the order has been accepted. They immediately set off. The brunette sits down next to a bush. The hero thinks that only the dumbest character is left, and he will probably be able to deal with this villain, since he has no more than 4 stars. Then Christian realizes that he may not get involved in the fight. The hero, watching the guy from behind the tree, thinks that there must be another, calmer way to take the relic. The young man hears hooting sounds above his head. Looking up, he notices 3 monkeys. Christian smiles. He seems to have thought of something. The brunette yawns, his mouth wide open. Some unpleasant substance drips onto his head. The villain, raising his head, sees the monkeys. He asks what kind of shit it is, and then realizes that the voice substance is literally on his head. Monkeys happily jump on branches, emitting loud cries. The young man waves his hands. He indignantly asks how these damn monkeys dare to defecate on him, and promises to take revenge on them in the most cruel way. The brunette raises his right hand. He demands that the animals come down to him for a serious conversation. Christian touches the red chest with his hand. The guy smiles. He plans to arrange a small prank. A magnificent blue pendant appears in the hero's hand. Christian hangs it around his neck. He could not even think that he would ever use it in this way. The young man thinks that no one forbade him to use this object not only to catch animals. He remembers a character who said that this stone can summon creatures up to level 4. The pendant glows. A white flash occurs above the young man's head. Christian launches his hand into the spatial gap. He retrieves the red chest, intending to swap the relic container with the one Marina gave him. The hero, sitting down on one knee, smiles. He swaps one chest for another, thinking that now everyone will be hunting for a fake. The container lies on the ground. Christian declares that the mission is accomplished. He opens the chest, stating that now that everything is ready, all that remains is to see what happens. Amazement appears on the young man's face. He looks at the object in the container, and realizes that it is not a twilight amulet. In front of us is a forest. Marissa, looking at her tied hands, asks what the hell is going on. She remembers how the hero took her by the hand and called her a little poisonous witch. The girl with tears in her eyes calls her ex-fiancé a vile coward. Marissa tries to free her hands. She angrily shouts that the villain did not even apologize, and now he has tied her to a tree. The beauty does not understand how he could do something like this to her. Marissa looks at someone in amazement. There is a remark that the princess has finally been found. A smiling girl asks if this is Marissa from the Venom clan. Beauty, whose hands are still tied, looks at her and asks who is in front of her. Members of the detachment conduct reconnaissance of the area. Jupian holds a vial of pills in his hands. A young man standing next to her asks why it was necessary to take another antidote. The girl, looking down thoughtfully, thinks that this was a very good question. She does not understand why she even trusted the words of the scoundrel, which she considers the hero. One of the fighters, putting his hand to his mouth, shouts that there is nothing next to him. Jupian asks if there are any results from the far side. The answer is that the area is still being combed. The girl's deputy asks if everything will be all right with the young Mr. Christian, who went looking for him on his own. Jupian, who in her imagination sees how the hero is grabbed by a huge bird, does not answer. The girl puts her hand to her face. She understands that the hero himself decided to leave them. She does not understand what she could have done in this situation. Jupian realizes that even if something happens to the guy, only he will be to blame for it. A guy appears next to the princess. He shouts that the relic has been found. Jupian, smiling, walks over to the red chest. She accepts it from the hands of her subordinate, who says that the search took longer than expected, but the fact that they were ahead of the Venom clan is already remarkable. Jupian, standing in front of the guy on his knees in front of her, declares that the mission is accomplished and orders to inform the rest of the squad that they should all gather at Lanka's Canyon. The young man confirms the receipt of the order. Another fighter shouts loudly that everyone heard the princess, and they return. Members of the Dark Guild squad walk past the gloomy cliffs. Someone says that everything went well, and they discovered the relic first. The question arises if this means that they won the victory over the Venom clan. The young man calls out to the princess, and she looks around. Jupian recalls the hero who, raising his hand, declared that he would go forward first. The deputy tells the girl that Christian is most likely already dead. Jupian stops. She is called out. Raising her index finger, she orders the first and second squads to stay and look for Christian. The young man standing next to her asks again, after which he says that he does not understand why it is necessary to search for this careless bastard. The sun is shining behind the rocks. Jupian says that Christian is causing a lot of trouble, but he still belongs to the main family, albeit to its side branch. The princess states that even if the guy died, they should find his corpse and take it out of here. Her subordinate says with obvious dissatisfaction that he understands everything. Jupian, looking back, states that all other members of the squad should follow her. The rocks behind the expedition members collapse. Stones fly down. One of the girls asks in fright what the hell is going on. The narrow passage is littered with huge boulders. One of the fighters reports that the exit is blocked. Jets of green energy are visible above the rocks. Jupian, raising his left hand, shouts that they are under attack and orders everyone to be extremely careful. Young people cover their faces. They are shrouded in a poisonous cloud. At the top of the rock, 3 figures are visible. Looking down at the bent members of the Dark Guild squad, someone says that it's over. The demons lie on the ground, shrouded in blue smoke. One of the ambushers reports that blue flower is the most powerful poison Marissa possesses, and it was stolen directly from her laboratory, so now the princess will be blamed for everything. The masked woman lands at the bottom of the gorge. She thinks that ambushing near the post of the Dark Clan is very risky, but this is the best way to destroy everyone at once. The demon looks up. She thinks that now all that remains is to take the relic to the laboratory owned by Marissa. The hand holds the dagger. The weapon flies at the woman who set up the ambush. The demon brings her hand to her face and declares that she has no choice and will personally kill Jupian. The princess stands with her sword outstretched. The assassin in front of her declares that the girl is too weak to put up a decent resistance. Jupian demands that the bastard shut up. The girl looks at her opponent in fear. She realizes that, judging by the energy, there is at least a 5-star demon in front of her. Jupian cannot believe that Marissa stabbed her in the back like this. A woman whose face is hidden by a mask promises to end everything quickly and painlessly. She rushes to attack. Thin blades are visible in the air. They fall into the ground right in front of the demoness. Jupian looks up. Marissa fixes her hair, and Jupian recognizes both her and Melon. The demon looks up in fear, trying to understand how Marissa could have ended up here. The princess jumps to the bottom of the gorge. Her opponent thinks that she ordered her spy to take the princess out of the canyon, and she does not understand why he failed. In addition, the bastard recognizes the deputy commander of the Black Swamp Knight squad. Melon, smiling, says that the princess is very fast as always. Marissa is displeased to demand that the girl not act like they are close friends. Looking angrily at the demoness, Marissa states that she dared to use blue flower to frame her. She demands that the bastard reveal who she is and who she works for. The demon, smiling, states that Marissa still doesn't seem to understand her place. She covers her face with her hand. The woman raises her left hand. Marissa, who has vials of poison in her hand, states that her opponent does not seem to be alone. Melon, smiling happily, reveals that they are opposed by 3 3-star demons and 1 5-star, and their enemies have a clear advantage. Jupian sadly says that whoever organized this ambush was well aware that the expedition lacked high-level fighters, and now they would most likely be killed like some kind of dogs. A dark figure appears at the top of the cliff, the owner of which declares that it is funny for him to see all those who are concentrated below. He says that it is unlikely that all this looks like a crazy coincidence. 2 princesses, opening their mouths, look up. They recognize the hero. He smiles happily. Christian, propping his head on his hand, says that from what he sees, he should have been missed here. Jupian angrily says that this is not the case at all. Marissa promises to have a serious talk with him later. The demon, next to whom a high rock is visible, states that these conversations look very emotional and cute, but everyone she sees now is doomed. She asks if anyone thinks that another weakling who appears can change the balance of power. Marissa frowns at her opponent. She really does not want to admit it, but, as far as she understands, the bastard is right. There are smoking pieces on the chessboard. Marissa thinks that after the demon becomes 5-star, it changes completely, and even the 4 of them are unlikely to be able to defeat the demon of this level opposing them. The hero states that the demon behaves arrogantly only because of the number of stars she has. He reminds her that she does not have 8 or 10 of them. The demon looks up angrily. She asks again, surprised. A spatial gap appears next to the hero's hand. The young man says that it is not at all surprising that the idiot showed up here with a completely ill-conceived plan, after which he shouts for his allies below to catch what he is about to drop them. Jupian and Marissa look up in surprise. The girls are holding artifacts in their hands. They are trying to understand what it is all about. Marissa looks at the golden frog in amazement. The hero informs the girls that he has dropped relics that increase power by 1 level. The princess from the Venom clan looks up in displeasure. Christian asks if she doesn't like something. The girl replies that no one will be happy with some frog. Jupian, happily looking down at her hands, states that she is now overflowing with mana. Wavy jets of energy rise up. Jupian says in amazement that she has the impression that her level has jumped to 6 stars. The hero thinks that he did not seem to have dropped anything so powerful. He says that he does not know what it is, and even begins to be afraid. Melon has a necklace with large emeralds hanging around her neck. The girl says that she is a little confused by the trigger that activates the artifact she received. She recalls her interaction with Leiden, who claims that Christian gave her a message. In the note that Melon reads, it is written that the expedition will be ambushed, and Christian has prepared a relic for her. The guy asks for help from the princess from the Venom clan and her team. Then the activation method is reported. The girl asks where the guy could have found such things in the first place. The hero's hands are on his knees. He declares that he has deceived one idiot, and that he already needs to run. Melon, standing downstairs, shouts that the young master promised her to have a duel after it was over, Christian confirming that the duel would take place. Raising his hand above his head, the young man shouts for the girl to try to live to see that moment. Marissa indignantly asks if her ex-fiancé is going to fight with them. It turns out that the hero is no longer on the rock. The princess calls the guy a bastard. She says that the questions asked need to be answered. Jupian, smiling, states that the guy seems to have some kind of plan. Marissa looks suspiciously at the second princess. She does not understand why she suddenly began to defend the hero, and why she looks at her ex-fiancé with such eyes. The demon, raising her right hand, laughs. She asks if anyone thinks that a few toys will help save someone. Streams of green energy rise around it. The three girls look at their opponent. Jupian realizes that she is using black steel chi. Marissa senses a destructive power that only 5-star owners can have. In front of us is the toe of someone's shoes. Melon, smiling, puts her sword forward and declares that the young master warned her that the number of stars does not affect the outcome of the battle. The girl recalls how the hero put a sword to her neck. She says that the reason for defeat is most often self-confidence. Jupian, smiling, states that she always wanted to rudely trample on arrogant bastards who look down on people. Melon, smiling, asks the princesses if they are ready for battle. Jupian happily says that she is completely ready. Marissa continues to look at the golden toad. The statuette ends up on her head. Taking out another portion of vials of poison, she shouts that it's time to start. Jupian offers to make a bet on who will destroy the enemy first. Melon shouts that he will take on the scoundrel with the black spear. The demoness, smiling, calls her opponents brainless fools. She launches something at them and shouts that they are going to die. Near Melon, a greenish impact mark is visible. She jumps into the air. The girl looks over her shoulder. Behind her, a demon is visible. Iron claws cut into the exposed sword. A green liquid spreads over the gland. The demoness, holding out her right hand, declares that Melon is very good. A white footprint is visible under her feet. She strikes a blow that falls on the girl's left hand. Jets of green energy swirl around the demoness. She declares that despite her skill, Melon is just a small bug and the Black Swamp Knights, as far as it is now understood, are nothing special. Melon, smiling, asks if her opponent is sure she has 5 stars. The girl says that she barely felt the hit. The demon raises her hand to attack again, and asks how her opponent dares to mock her. Melon stares at the enemy. She realizes that she must act now. The girl grabs the demoness by the face. Jets of dark energy rise from the woman's head. The demon trembles. She wonders why the 4-star curse suddenly affected her. Grinning mockingly, Melon says that the relic she obtained does not increase the power of the curse, but the power of the curse, and with the help of her own blood. A bloody necklace is visible on the girl's neck. The demon looks at the girl standing in front of her in amazement, and realizes that she seems to have missed the blow on purpose. Melon raises a sword above her head. She asks if her enemy liked this cunning trick. Blood gushes from the demoness' mouth. The bastard, missing the blow, flies back. One of her comrades tries to shout out to her. A dark point is visible next to the guy's face. He is ordered to look into the eyes. Jupian declares that their battle is not over yet. White clouds float over the forest. Someone asks how long this game of hide-and-seek will last. Christian, raising his fist, says that the one he is looking for did not show up on the rock, and apparently was planning a surprise attack. He asks if this bastard is really so afraid of losing. Behind the hero's back appears an opponent, whom he, apparently, was looking for. Under the hood, red eyes glow maliciously. Christian, smiling, declares that he has finally found the one he was looking for. The hero stands in front of his opponent. He states that he cannot understand why he has such a murky core. Christian says that the demon does not even seem to belong to the Venom clan, and it is completely unclear why he took the side of this organization. A young man with a mask on his face silently looks at the hero. He picks up a pebble from the ground and declares that the guy can decide for himself whether to answer him or not. Christian puts the stone between his fingers. He launches this projectile. He flies next to the opponent's head. Bright white rays are visible next to the 3 figures. The stone flies up to the demon's face. He hits him in the eye. Christian says that when the guy tenses, his right shoulder rises, and when he is distracted, his field of vision narrows. Smiling, the young man says that this is a disgusting habit, and Ashid's brother should get rid of it. The mask on the guy's face is torn. He puts his hand on his face. A deep scratch is visible on the right side of his face. Langham, sitting at the table, tells his son that the Venom clan will deal with Jupian and Marissa. However, if Christian slips away like a slippery eel again, Ashid will have to personally track him down. The man says that there should be no survivors on this expedition. The young man frowns up and mentally curses everything in the world. 3 figures can be seen between the rocks. Ashid thinks that everything did not go according to plan. The squad from the Venom clan was not destroyed, and the opponents were joined by Melon, and because of this, the destruction of the expedition no longer looks as foregone as before. We see dead people. Ashid thinks that if he kills the hero under such circumstances, outsiders may have doubts, and perhaps someone will decide to start an investigation. The guy imagines himself being pointed at. He realizes that since he is not at the estate now, he will not be able to avoid suspicion, and this means that Langham will be drawn into a very unpleasant story. Christian, folding his arms over his chest, asks why his relative hasn't said a word yet. The guy asks what Ashid is afraid of. An object emitting black jets appears in his hand. The villain thinks that he must first kill the hero, and only then think about what to do next. Jets of black energy swirl over the Ashid. Christian, smiling, declares that he likes it much better. A purple sword appears in his hand. In front of the hero you can see a trace of a blow. Christian looks over his shoulder. Ghostly figures approach him. Smiling, the young man says that Ashid seems to create clones from demonic energy, and that the young man did not become a young lord by accident. Christian parries the blows that the ghosts inflict on him. The young man blocks the sword of one of the opponents. Another enemy is approaching him. Christian, smiling, thinks that Ashid is using an illusion to attack from behind. He says that he expected something like this. The hero rushes to the enemy, who has covered his face with his hand. Christian strikes. He only cuts through a black veil. Ashid flies up behind him with a sword raised above his head. The young man realizes that this was also an illusion. His relative angrily shouts that the hero must die. He strikes a powerful blow. Ashid lands on the ground. In front of him, a deep mark from a blow is visible in the ground. The young man says that Christian is just a useless insect. The hero immediately asks him to repeat his words. Ashid is very surprised. We see the right side of his face. He says it just can't be. In front of us is a dark silhouette. The sword emits jets of purple energy. Ashid looks at what is happening in shock. He realizes that he is looking at a true black sword. Christian, smiling, asks if the guy liked this surprise. He lands a punch that trails directly toward Ashid, flying backwards. The young man covers his head with his hand. White cracks are visible above it. In front of us is a vague figure. Christian stands in front of an opponent lying on the ground, resting his fist on the ground. Ashid asks why he is being bullied by some pathetic spawn from a side family branch. Ashid recalls looking at Christian when he was very young. The hero, raising his right hand, invites his relative to just calmly accept defeat. He promises that in this case he will not tell anyone about what happened. Christian says that in this case the Marquis of Langham will not suffer either, and a war between the families will be avoided. Ashid looks at the young man with his mouth open. The guy thinks intensely, trying to understand if the hero knew about all the details of the plan from the very beginning, and if so, from where. He realizes that if everything is so, then he must kill the hero to avoid all problems in the future. However, this is impossible now, and since there is no other choice, he must wait for another opportunity. On one knee in front of the hero, Ashid thanks him for saving his reputation. Christian declares that there is nothing to thank him for, and a true demon should be proud of such actions. Smiling, Ashid states that the guy is absolutely right. The hero, squeezing the young man's hand, asks if he really hoped to hear something like this. Looking at Ashid predatorily, the young man uses the Clash of Demonic Energy skill. Ashid looks at the young man with his mouth open, and mentally calls him a bastard. A black stream pierces the body of the villain. Ashid has blood gushing out of her mouth. He falls to the ground in front of a smiling hero. Christian calls his brother a naive idiot, and says that he fell for the trick. Christian runs, he curses, thinking that he spent more time than he planned. The hero's mouth is open. He really hopes that his comrades fought as they should. Someone calls out to him. Christian looks at the girls approaching him in amazement. He holds out his hands in front of him, begging him not to come closer, as he feels incredible pressure from them. Marissa angrily shouts that it's all about the artifact the guy gave her. Melon, smiling, says that the mission is accomplished. Christian asks what happened to the girls' opponents. The answer is that they turned to ashes immediately after they died. Next to Melon holding a sword, jets of black energy are visible. The girl says that most likely someone made sure that no traces are left. Christian states that he understands everything, and praises his comrades for their good work. Marissa looks at the guy strangely. Jupian, looking at the young man, asks where he came from. Christian, hesitating, replies that he was just exploring the area. The hero beats his chest and says that nobles like him shouldn't participate in battles. Marissa asks why in this case he looks like someone beat him up for a very long time and heavily. The girl, looking at the hero, asks if he has met other traitors from the Venom clan. Christian looks at the girl in surprise. Raising his right hand, he wearily says that nothing of the kind happened, and suggests that we leave this place. The hero looks thoughtfully in front of him. He thinks that he deliberately dealt with Ashid away from here and without witnesses, and by this point in time, the guy has either already come to his senses and run away, or his subordinates have come for him. Ashid pulls the hood over his head. Christian thinks he must keep it a secret. As if there is an uproar, the Marquis of Langham will be forced to take some further action. We see a trophy of the hero and the characters we know. Christian thinks that he got the insignia of constellations and saved the lives of 3 people, and that's more than enough. Christian is sitting at the table. It is reported that the case is taking place a week later. The guy thinks that the incident agitated both families. The Venom clan was in the role of the culprit, but everything was settled as part of a compensation agreement. There are papers on the table. The hero reaches for food with a fork. He thinks that the Dark Clan so easily went to end the conflict due to the fact that its head is well aware that Christian knows what role he and his son played in these events. It seems to the hero that in the end everything turned out much better than in his previous life, where everyone died. We see the box changing hands. Christian thinks that Duke Wham did not have to hand over the demon amulet to the Marquis of Langham. The hero's ex-fiancée looks displeased. The hero thinks that Melon has returned to her duties after leaving the canyon, and Marissa has promised to keep quiet about the involvement of the Black Swamp Knight's deputy commander in these events. Marie, smiling happily, pours wine into a glass. She says that the young master should eat better, even if he has no appetite. The guy states that his whole body hurts, and he does not understand where he should have the desire to fill his stomach. Marie complains that these words break her heart. Christian replies that the girl has nothing to break. Banshee imitates a heart with her fingers. She continues to claim that her heart is beating wildly, but this time from the cruel words that the young man utters. While she assures that she still sincerely loves the young master, Christian demands that she stop saying strange things and once again reminds that the girl's heart stopped beating a long time ago. She screams offended that it just can't be, and it just bursts out of her chest every time. When she looks at the hero, Marie looks at the young man with a strange look, who orders her to stop pretending to tremble on purpose. There is a piece of food in the spoon. The Banshee asks the hero to open his mouth. Christian, looking at the food with disgust, declares that his hands are in place, and he can put it in his mouth himself. Marie, looking at the guy with loving eyes, says that he is modest, but she likes this side of the young man incredibly much. Banshee shoves a spoon into the hero's mouth. She declares that the guy should eat a balanced diet so that he has strength for the night. The hero tries to stop the flow of his maid's speech. Jupian calmly watches all this obscenity. Marie asks if the hero likes the taste of a special soup. He replies that it was not cooked by a banshee. The girl replies that it is filled with her love. Marie hangs over her master's head. Christian asks Jupian, who is sitting opposite him, how long she will be here. Because she has not even fully recovered yet, the girl states that she will observe his condition for a while and then leave. The princess sadly says that it was she who was appointed in charge. Christian, grinning, thinks that whoever Jupian is watching will get himself indigestion. Marie, who is seen next to the hero, is simply horrified. It seems to her that the princess is flirting with her master, and she really does not like it. Folding her hands in front of her face, the Banshee asks Jupian if the lady will drink anything. She states that she can bring her some bloody juice. The girl calmly replies that she can't stand this drink and prefers scallion juice. The Banshee looks at her with a very strange look and states that there is no such item on the local menu. Christian sits at the table with a sad look, thinking that Jupian has unexpectedly turned out to be quite a strong opponent. Looking at her, the young man asks if the girl wants to say something. She replies that she hates the hero and will crush him one day. Sighing heavily, Christian says that Jupian may try to do so. Scratching her cheek, the princess states that, nevertheless, this time she is grateful to the hero. The young man looks at her in surprise. Putting his hand to his ear, he mockingly asks the girl to repeat, since he allegedly did not hear. The room is lined with a huge number of flowers. Jupian states that the guy's hearing is fine, and he heard everything. She asks him not to take everything wrong, and states that she is just acknowledging what the hero has done for her. He replies that if the princess understands everything, she can continue to treat him as her savior. Jupian looks at him sternly and declares that this is the last time he sees an idiotic smile on the young man's face. She informs him that if the Marquis has made a promise, then the guy will be officially appointed one of the heirs. The hero is wearing a costume with epaulets. Jupian says that after the guy gets a new status, everything will change for him, so he better prepare in advance. Christian looks at his interlocutor, thinking that, of course, it will no longer be the same as before. The young man looks thoughtfully into the distance. He thinks that until this moment he was considered a small bug and did not pay attention to him. But now that he has become an equal opponent, everyone will try to crush him. Behind the young man's back, his competitors are visible. He thinks that as soon as Ashid recovers his core, he will raise his head, and intrigues should be expected from the first Princess Yulia, who is hiding some secrets. And do not underestimate the third son of the Marquis, Mysak, and the mad first prince, whose name is Shirad. Jupian touches his cheek with his hand. The hero tries to understand whether to expect some trouble from her too. The princess, looking at the guy in surprise, asks why he looks at her like that. She wonders if she really seems so beautiful to him. A purple vortex is visible in front of the girl. She uses the unbridgeable 4D wall skill. Jupian barely gets up from her seat. She asks not to look at her like that, and declares that she is already leaving. The girl waves goodbye. Christian picks up a knife and fork. Sighing with relief, he says that the princess is finally gone, having sucked all the energy out of him, so he needs to recharge for a while. The guy has a strange smile on his face. Closing his eyes, he looks at the girl standing next to him and asks why she didn't leave if she promised. Amazement appears on the hero's face. Marissa stands in front of him. Christian looks at the girl in surprise. Marissa asks if the young man is okay. The hero, smiling, says that everything seems to be fine with him. Christian and Marie do not take their eyes off the princess. The guy cannot understand why she came, and really hopes that she will not reproach him for tying her hands. Surprise appears on the hero's face when he hears that the girl's father wants to see him. He imagines a man with an emblem over his head. The young man thinks that Duke Wham is the head of the Venom clan and an 8-star demon lord. The young man has a thoughtful expression on his face. He tries to understand why such a person would meet him. Christian and Marissa walk next to each other. The girl, lowering her eyes, asks how the guy knew about the ambush that was set up on them during the expedition. Christian remembers the green-eyed girl and states that he has an informant. Marissa silently looks down. She recalls her conversation with Melon, who, posing as the deputy commander of the Black Swamp Knights squad from the Dark Clan, reported that she had infiltrated the expedition zone on the orders of the young Mr. Christian. Marissa, whose hands are tied, asks again in surprise, after which she says that this is an admission that Christian broke the rules. Then she asks if anyone is really hunting the members of the expedition. Melon says that the young master asked the beautiful lady, the head of the Venom clan, to fight back against the ambushers. The girl asks again, shocked. Clouds float outside the magnificent window. Marissa asks why Christian, knowing about the ambush, tied her up instead of just warning her. The hero replies that at that moment it seemed to him that the girl might be in danger. Marissa looks thoughtfully at her ex-fiancé, who states that if the ambush was organized by members of the Venom clan, then the girl would become the main target as the heiress, because there is also a fierce struggle for this place within this organization. Christian looks at his interlocutor, who says that it means that the young man did not suspect her of any bad plans, after which she declares that she is indebted to the hero. He looks at her in shock. Looking at the boy, Marissa thanks him for saving her squad. Putting his hands in his pockets, Christian says that the girl is very important to him. She asks in amazement. Blushing, Marissa clutches her face. She does not understand why all this should happen again. If this is a long past stage, the hero invites her to become a political ally from now on. Marissa is amazed. Raising his hands, the hero asks what she thinks about this and calls his proposal very good. Seeing the girl's reaction, he asks if she is worried about their former relationship. Smiling, the guy says that Marissa should not worry about this. Marissa closes her eyes, and Christian declares that she is not proposing to get engaged again. Putting his hand to his chest, he swears that now they are complete strangers to each other, and asks to believe him. Two figures are visible on the red carpet. Christian looks at Marissa in surprise, trying to understand why she doesn't answer. An evil fire lights up in the girl's eyes. Smiling strangely, she declares that she accepts the young man's offer for the benefit of both their families. Christian looks in amazement at the back of the beauty walking away from him. He tries to understand that it has just happened and if he really said something offensive. Marissa, meanwhile, turns to the patriarch and informs him that she has brought Christian Van Baron Khazar to him. A man is standing at the window. Duke Wham, smiling, thanks his daughter and praises her for her good work. Raising his right hand, he asks in bewilderment why she suddenly called him patriarch, since he repeatedly asked her to call him just father. The girl, closing her eyes, declares that they have a guest now, and asks her father to restrain his emotions. He admits that he was a little wrong. The man invites the girl to have dinner together and declares that her favorite venison dish has already been prepared for her. Marissa agrees. Bowing low, she declares that she needs to leave. Christian, looking at her, thinks that father and daughter have a great relationship. The man smiles. The hero still cannot believe that this is really the Duke of Wham, as he could not even imagine that this is such a loving father. Marissa, looking around, sighs. Christian bows to the man and greets him, who says that the guy looks quite mature and therefore, the rumors that are circulating about him do not lie. Smiling, Wham states that, naturally, when he remembers how the guy broke off his relationship with the princess, he wants to tear off all the limbs of this villain. However, he will turn a blind eye to this, because if it were not for Christian, Marissa could even have died. Looking up, the hero asks why Duke Wham summoned him, who asks what the hero has to do with the medical clan. The young man looks at the Duke in surprise. Wham, looking at the guy, states that according to the report, Christian said that he bought medical supplies at auction. However, the Venom clan always tracks the movement of medicinal ingredients in black market auctions, and there have been no such funds at all recently. He asks how the hero can explain this. On the table there are written sheets of paper. Christian, looking at his interlocutor, declares that he prepared the medicine himself. Pointing at himself with his thumb, he declares that he is a genius, so it is not difficult for him. Wham angrily asks if the guy really thinks that he will be believed, because in order to prepare an antidote, you need to be well versed in poisons. Raising his clenched fist, Christian says that a genius can easily learn anything just by reading books. Wham rubs his chin thoughtfully. Giggling, he declares that the hero does not seem to have committed any crimes, so he cannot interrogate him. Christian sighs with relief, realizing that he has been swept away once again. The sun shines through the window. The hero asks if this conversation is over, if the misunderstandings are cleared. Wham replies that he wanted to discuss another issue. He asks if the hero will agree to become a member of the Venom clan. Rubbing the back of his head, the hero looks at the man in surprise. There is an armchair in front of the desk. Marquise Frisia, nicknamed Scarlet Snowflake, enters the door. She walks up to the table and asks the Marquis what happened. The woman says that she was just informed that Prince Ashid's core suddenly shattered into pieces. She assumes that Christian did it. Langham, frowning down, asks Frisia to speak quietly. Folding her arms over her chest, the woman irritably asks if this savage will really be the heir. She states that it will be an indelible stain on the honor of the Dark Clan and asks if Langham will really allow this to happen. The man is silent. Frisia, standing in front of the table, says that maybe that's even for the best, since both Ashid and Langham failed anyway. Rubbing her chin thoughtfully, Frisia says that she will deal with this savage herself. She asks the Marquis not to forget that the first heir should be their son Mysak. Langham frowns at the woman. Chess pieces are visible in front of the interlocutors. The man says that Frisia is free in her actions and he will not interfere. On the board lies an overturned white horse.